Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to our discussion on economic survey of the year 2023, where essentially we'll be discussing all the economic survey chapters of the year 2022 to 2023. Now, before starting our discussion on the economic survey, let us first get some clarity regarding the basics of economic survey. So what essentially is economic survey? And there's no better way of understanding economic survey than by comparing it with budget. So we already know what budget is from our core lectures, especially the lectures of the chapter Budget and Finance Commission. We already know the basics of budget. So let's see what economic survey is and how it differs from the budget. And then we'll try to understand the economic survey. Now, there are two most important crucial documents which are released by the government every year. Government of India every year. One is economic survey and another is budget. So let's understand what economic survey is. Now at conceptual level, economic survey tells us about all the economic and non-economic events that have happened in the past 1 year, or near about 1 year, the challenges they have posed, and how government has responded to those challenges. So that essentially is the work of economic survey to tell us about all the economic and non-economic events which have happened in the economy in the last 1 year and which have impacted the economy and the challenges they have posed and how government has responded to those challenges. Apart from this, economic survey brings us with data, facts, trends, and figures. So there is a story plus these things. So this is what essentially economic survey is. So it is discussing the past 1 year. So in that sense, it can be said to be a retrospective document. Retrospective document because it is discussing those things which have already happened. The story which has already unfolded. Whereas if you look at the budget, what budget is? Budget is telling us about the estimated receipts and expenditure of the coming year, of the ensuing year. So in that way, budget is a prospective document. It is telling us about the story which is going to get unfolded. So budget is a prospective document and economic survey is a retrospective document. So at conceptual level, we are very clear what is economic survey and how it differs from the budget. Now, if this is the first difference between the economic survey and budget, then let's look into the second difference. And second difference stems from timing. So timing of economic survey and budget. Now, economic survey is laid in the parliament a day before the budget is laid. Or in another way, budget is laid a day after the economic survey. That is the difference with respect to timing between economic survey and budget. But this was not something which was always there. In fact, we started releasing economic survey from 1951. Until 1964, we were having budget and economic survey laid in the parliament on the same day. It was only after 1964 that we started following this convention of laying budget a day after economic survey, a day before budget. Okay, so that is the second difference. Now, let's look into the third difference. Now, what's the third difference between economic survey and budget? Third difference is with respect to the obligation. So, for example, there's an article 112 of the Constitution which talks about annual financial statement. And annual financial statement is nothing but a constitutional word for budget. A budget is nothing but a popular word for annual financial statement. So, there's a constitutional obligation on the part of the government to present budget every year in the parliament. Whereas there is no such constitutional statutory obligation on the part of the government to bring economic survey. Economic survey is brought by the government only to get the idea of how the economy is performing, how we can improvise upon that performance. That's the only purpose. Or apart from that, they can do one more purpose of just as a tool of public outreach. Means telling the people, let's see how the economy is performing and what all steps you are taking for improving the performance of the economy. So that is the third difference between the budget and the economic survey. Now, after getting these basics about the economic survey and budget, now let's look into the importance of reading these documents. And essentially, we'll be dealing with only economic survey. What's the importance of studying or reading economic survey? So the importance for us is very clear. Any document or anything is important for us as long as it is important for the examination. So economic survey is very important for the examination on all the three stages, and especially if you see prelims and mains. Okay, so both in prelims and mains, questions are coming directly from the economic survey. In prelims, mainly trend-based question will be there, or some conceptual question arranged in the form of MCQs will be there. In mains, mainly analytical questions will be there, and directly they are coming from the economic survey. So from the examination point of view, this document is very important for us. Okay, so that is the importance of this document. Now, if you look at this year economic survey, 2023 economic survey, which essentially tells us about the events of 2022 to 2023, it is arranged in 12 chapters. The first chapter is state of the economy. If you see, if the economic survey tells you about the survey of the economy or story about the economy, then state of the economy, chapter 1, tells you about the story of the economic survey. So it's a snapshot of the whole economic survey. It will tell you what all is there in the following chapters of the economic survey. So state of the economy is the first chapter, then medium term growth outlook is the second chapter. Then chapters are arranged like fiscal performance of the government, monetary management of the central bank of the country, that is RBI. Then various sectors have been discussed in various chapters like agriculture sector, industrial sector, services sector, trade or external trade or international trade of India, that is being discussed. But what is the novelty in this year economic survey? What is the newness in this year economic survey? That is the infrastructure is given a major importance. A major emphasis is there in infrastructure in this year economic survey. In fact, if you look at this word infrastructure, is being given a major emphasis in the last 2-3 years budget also. And this year economic survey has 2 chapters dedicated on infrastructure. One chapter is named as social infrastructure, social infra and employment, and another as infrastructure where physical and digital infrastructure both are discussed. So this is the newness in this year economic survey. And I think that both of these chapters, social infrastructure, physical and digital infrastructure, which are discussed in this chapter of infrastructure, both are very important for the main examination. Of course, they are important for the police examination. Of course, all the chapters are also important, and we'll be discussing all the chapters. But if you ask me to zero in on one topic, then I would say that this is the most important theme in this year economic survey. Of course, also because if you look at the government major push is for capital expenditure, that is capex, and government is very much invested in increasing the infrastructure spending. So definitely this becomes very much important for the examination also. So there are 12 chapters. We'll be discussing them one by one. So how I'll be taking forward this discussion? I'll be discussing the first chapter first, then we'll be discussing the major themes that have been discussed in the various chapters within the first chapter only, and then we'll be proceeding to the second, third, fourth, fifth, like that. Apart from that, we'll be also discussing some of the questions both from the prelims and from the mains perspective wherever they are required to be discussed. Okay, so that is how we have planned to deal with the economic survey of 2022-2023. So let's start with the chapter 1, that is the state of the economy. I've already told you, just like economic survey tells you about the story of the economy, the state of the economy is a chapter which usually in economic survey is there, and it tells you about the story of the economic survey. It's a snapshot of the major themes or major ideas that are being discussed in the economic survey. Now, how this first chapter is being arranged? See, first chapter tells us that there are certain challenges, or there were certain challenges in the last 1 year which were haunting the world economy. There were also certain challenges which were haunting the domestic Indian economy. But Indian economy was able to perform better even in those challenges because we had certain advantages. So firstly, we'll be discussing the challenges to the world economy, then we'll be discussing the challenges to the Indian economy, then we'll be discussing those kind of advantages which were there in the Indian economy because of which we were able to perform better even in this difficult situation. And then we'll discuss that how not only we were able to recover completely, because if you look at the major assertion that is being given in this economic survey, and in this chapter of the economic survey, it is telling us that we are no more in the crisis mode. Rather, we have already recovered. So recovery is complete. So we are nowhere seeing this V-shape, W-shape, bathtub shape recovery. We are not seeing these things. We have already recovered, and now we have to move forward to the growth phase. So that is the major assertion that is being given here in this chapter and in this year's economic survey. So they are saying recovery is complete, and recovery is not only complete, but we have ensured that recovery is completed with inclusive growth. So there are challenges to the world economy. There are challenges to the Indian economy. We were having some inherent advantages because of which we have completely recovered, and that recovery has come with the inclusive growth. Okay, that is the major broad architecture of the first chapter of the economic survey. So let's discuss what it is telling us about the challenges in the world economy first. We already know there are two most important challenges that are currently running in the world economy. One is COVID and its after effects. So COVID was there, COVID pandemic was there for 2-3 years. It has completely devastated the world economy, even domestic economy also. And then on top of that, there is Russian-Ukraine war. So COVID-19 pandemic and Russian-Ukraine war were two most important challenges in the past 1 year. And in fact, COVID is again resurging. Russian-Ukraine war is still there. So these will be the challenges for the future also, for both the world economy and even to India. So COVID-19 pandemic, Russian-Ukraine war are the major challenges to the world economy, because of which our government responded to the COVID. So see, there are two important policy tools: contractionary and expansionary. So there are contractionary tool and expansionary tool. Now, this contractionary tool can be monetary and fiscal. Even this expansionary can be monetary and fiscal. So whenever they say crisis, what government usually do, whenever the economic growth is down, they will go for expansionary fiscal policy, and central banks will go for expansionary monetary policy. Means more and more money will be provided by the central bank to the economy. Liquidity will be increased in the economy so that interest rates go down and investments becomes profitable. Or investment increases. Okay. Similarly, government will also go for fiscal expansionary policy. Means government will increase G. We have seen and we know from the national income chapter that income is equal to consumption C plus investment I plus government expenditure G plus net exports. So if investment increases, income increases. If government expenditure increases, then also income can increase, or growth will be there in the economy. So investment can increase by following expansionary monetary policy, because of expansionary monetary policy, interest rate will go down, and interest is a cost to the people of the business sector. They will increase their investment, so I will increase. And also, if the government will go for expansionary fiscal policy, G will increase, and also income thereby will increase. So what was happening during the COVID time and even during the Russian-Ukraine war in the initial phases? Government and the central banks both were going for expansionary policy, and this expansionary policy was leading to the excess liquidity in the economy across the world. Excess liquidity in the economy. But later on, when the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic subdued, means they were listening. So what they decided, central banks decided, now we should remove this excess liquidity, excess money from the economy, because we know because of excess money there will always be inflation. Too much of money will be there, chasing too few goods. So there will always be inflation whenever there will be excess money and the supply is not there compensating that excess money. So inflation was there, and that's why to deal with the inflation, central banks across the world decided that we will go for contractionary monetary policy now. Okay, and contractionary monetary policy is nothing but monetary tightening. And what happens in contractionary monetary policy? They will start increasing interest rate or start reducing money supply in the economy. Money supply in the economy. But what will happen? If all across the world central banks started increasing interest rate, this has happened in India, this has happened in the US, that central banks across the world were raising interest rate. Now, if central banks across the world are raising interest rate, see, if there are two countries A and B, or two countries, you can say this developed world, and this is developing world. Suppose this is US, developed world, country's example, and this is India. Now we know money is coming from US to India. Why money is coming from US to India? Because India has high interest rates. If interest rates are cost to the person who is investing in any infrastructure project or in any project, they are also return to the person who is investing. Okay, so interest rate is a cost also and return also. So a person who is in US and getting just 2% interest rate here, whereas in India, if the person is getting 6% interest rate here, definitely that person will think that let's invest in India. That's why money was flowing into India, FDI was coming into India. But if Federal Reserve, that is the central bank of the US, starts raising the interest rate, and suppose it has raised the interest rate to 6%, then this person will have no incentive to park their money in India. Then definitely there will be reverse flow. They will remove their money from India and park it in their home country or in the market, which is actually a hub of financial market of the world, in the US. So people will always prefer US over India or over any developing country if the interest rates are same. So monetary tightening was there, contractionary monetary policy was there, and that's why interest rates were rising in the US especially, because they were also facing the brunt of inflation, and we know if you have to control inflation, you have to raise interest rates. So they were raising interest rates at a much higher speed than across the world, and people were taking their money out of the developing world to the US, and this was leading to the problem of depreciation of rupee or depreciation of other currencies, especially in developing world. You know that when foreign exchange or dollar moves out, currency depreciate. So this was something which was happening. So there was monetary tightening also, and this monetary tightening was leading to these kinds of challenges across the world. Monetary tightening is there. Monetary tightening is raising the interest rate. Monetary tightening is nothing but contractionary monetary policy. It was raising interest rate. People were taking their money out of the developing world to the developed world because there was foreign exchange outflows from the developing world. That's why the developing world currencies were under pressure and were depreciating. That was another challenge that was coming out of monetary tightening. Also, because growth was already low, at a lower pace, at a snail's pace, so countries were turning protectionist. You will always see these kinds of events happening. Whenever growth is low, whenever there is crisis in the world economy, countries will first try to protect their own country. US, India will first try to protect their own country, their own turf, and they turn in the process protectionist. Protectionist means they will increase the tariffs and non-tariff barrier. And that will act as a major blow to the world trade. So these kinds of things will always be there. Even during Great Depression, it was something which was happening. Tariffs were increased. Countries were turning protectionist. So they were turning inward. Even during the 2008 financial crisis, this was something which was seen. So this was another challenge. The another challenge to the world economy, where the Chinese economy was a cause of concern. And why Chinese economy was a cause of concern? If you look at the Chinese economy, it doesn't matter whether you like China or not. But the fact is, China is 5 times of India's economy, just like India is 5 times of, almost 5 times of Pakistan economy. And China is contributing 20% to the world economy. And if any economy is contributing 20% or 1/5 to the world economy, which is the second largest world economy, and if it is going slow, or if there is some growth slowdown in that economy, then definitely that will be a challenge to the world economy. Okay, so that is another source of concern, because China is slowing down, and that may also slow down the growth of the world. Concern that is there amongst the specialists who are dealing with the economy. Now, apart from this, it's caused from the pandemic having long-term growth impacts. So there was pandemic, there was disruption in the supply chain, there was disruption in the economic activity, but it does not mean that if pandemic is gone, the after effects of pandemics will be evaporated. They will be there, and that is why it's been discussed that the scars from the pandemics are still there. Supply chain has still not been reconstituted. Supply chain has still not been started performing very well as they were performing before pandemic. So challenges from the pandemic are still there, and they will be having long-term growth impacts. So these are the challenges to the world economy. Now let's look into the challenges to the Indian economy. What are the challenges to the Indian economy? So again, Indian economy had the same challenge which was there in the world economy. Firstly, pandemic. Pandemic was there in multiple ways, and that has disrupted the whole Indian economy, whole Indian economic fabric. Second was the high inflation, and this was both due to domestic and global factors in the last 1 year. If you look at high inflation, the reason is very clear. Governments going for expansionary fiscal policies, so demand is increasing, G is increasing that equation. Then central banks are also going for expansionary monetary policy, money supply is increasing. So money supply, whenever increase or liquidity increases, it will always lead to inflation. This is what something we have read from a money banking model. So increase in the money supply will lead to inflation. So high inflation was a cause of concern, and this was both due to domestic because money supply has increased, so RBI has followed expansionary monetary policy, and also due to global factor. What was the global factor? There was Russia-Ukraine war, and Russia-Ukraine war we know has impacted commodity prices. We as a country, India as a country, is dependent on many crucial commodities from the outside world. So for example, oil, and oil not only crude oil, petrol, diesel, but also edible oil. So oil, fertilizer, cement, steel, all these commodity prices were impacted due to Russia-Ukraine war, and this has also led to inflation of fuel oil, sparked inflation in the domestic economy. The depreciating INR, depreciating rupee, and we've already seen the logic because monetary tightening was there across the world, and more so seen in the Western bloc and even the Western bloc in the US. So money or foreign exchange was flowing out from all the developing economies, especially India also. For us, we are discussing the domestic challenges of India. So from India also there was an outflow, and this put pressure on Indian currency when depreciating. Okay, so depreciating INR was another challenge. Now another challenge is widening current account deficit. So already I told you that there was protectionist tendencies across the world. Exports are going down, and imports are already increasing in case of India because India's imports are something which are inelastic. We cannot sacrifice on our imports. We have to import because imports are like crude oil, which is a major import of India. So we cannot sacrifice on that. So exports are going down while imports are still there or rather increasing. So definitely we will witness something called widening current account deficit, and that was something which was seen last year also. And that is what the economic survey is telling is a major challenge. Or was a major challenge to the Indian economy last year. And then plateauing exports were not increasing because across the world countries were turning inward, countries were turning protectionist, and in case of India, supply chain was disrupted. Okay, so plateauing exports and then monetary tightening by the RBI, that has also posed challenges to the domestic economy. We have already seen how monetary tightening can impact the economy because it can increase interest rate, and if interest rate is decreasing and it is aiding to investments, then increasing interest rate is acting opposite. It is leading to decrease in investments. So though monetary tightening is done to tackle or tame inflation or to contain inflation by the RBI or by any other central bank because there was already excess liquidity, excess money supply in the economy, so they have to increase interest rate somehow to tame the inflation. But that has the negative impact of reducing the investment, and that is what the challenge which is being posed to the domestic economy. So we have seen the challenge to the world economy and the challenge to the domestic economy. Now, but the economic survey says that Indian economy bounced back and is now already recovered. So I have already told you that the major assertion that economic survey is making, and this chapter is making, that Indian economy has fully recovered, or recovery is complete. Okay, that is what the economic survey says. It says Indian economy is one of the fastest growing major economies in the world, and there's no doubt in that. Indian economy is one of the fastest major economies across the world, and it is expected to grow 6.5%. So lower band is 6%, higher is 6.8%, is depending on the economic situation of that particular time. It can be somewhere between 6 to 6.8%, but on average we will grow by 6.5%. That is what economic survey is telling us for the 2023-2024 period. Okay, so we have seen the challenges to the world economy, we have seen the challenges to the domestic economy. Economic survey says that despite challenges, we will be growing at a higher pace of 6% or 6.5%. Okay, so that is what the economic survey says. But what are the reasons that despite challenges, we are going to grow at such a higher rate of 6.5%? So it discusses some of the economic resilience and growth drivers of the Indian economy. And the first one is strong domestic consumption. It says we have some inherent advantages. And one of that is that we have strong domestic consumption. Again, I'll go and hark back to the same equation. So we have seen in the national income chapter, there are different ways to calculate national income: product method, income method, expenditure method. So we are taking that expenditure method only, which I discussed in the first slide. That is income is equal to consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus net export. Net export means export minus import. X means export, M means import, C consumption, I investment, G government expenditure. Okay, so income is sum of all these things. Consumption means private final consumption expenditure. Investment means gross fixed capital formation plus residential investment. Gross fixed capital formation will include both business investment and government investment or public investment. It will include government expenditure, mainly government consumption, and then export minus import. Okay, so income is all these things. Now, Indian economy is structured in such a way, or we have such kind of economy that major portion of our income comes from this C, consumption, and this consumption is mainly domestic consumption. Domestic consumption. In fact, more than 50% of our income is generated from domestic consumption if we see income from the lens of expenditure method, not product or income method, from expenditure method. So total GDP, income is total GDP. Total GDP, gross domestic product of the country, is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX, and more than 50% is domestic consumption. That is what is being asserted here, that is strong domestic consumption, and despite the challenges across the world, we were able to have a respectable growth rate, and we will be able to have a respectable growth rate of 6.5% because we have a strong domestic consumption. We are not dependent on the growth on other markets. We have a strong domestic markets led by strong domestic consumption. That is the idea of this first one. Second is high capital expenditure and contained revenue expenditure. If you look at this kind of undercurrent is going on in the present government, especially in the recent year, that they're somewhere trying to increase capex, capital expenditure, and decrease revenue expenditure or REVEX. Now, if you look at capex and REVEX, both are qualitatively very different. Capex is something which is an investment. Means if you are investing in infrastructure, that will be categorized as capex, capital expenditure. If you are investing in day-to-day expenses, or if you are spending money on day-to-day expenses like salaries, allowances, like running expenses, that will be revenue expenditure. And always capital expenditure is preferred over revenue expenditure. If 100 rupees is there, then always any sane policymaker will always prefer that more and more money should go for capital expenditure because that will lay the foundation of long-term economic growth. And that is what the government is doing, and rightfully so, that they are trying to increase the allocation of capital expenditure, allocation of infrastructure funding and reduce the revenue expenditure, or at least contain the revenue expenditure. And because we have higher capital expenditure and contain revenue expenditure, that has also led to increased growth in the economy. That is another resilient factor of Indian economy, growth driver of the Indian economy. The higher manufacturing and investment activities, though they were down right at the peak of the COVID, but they are again rebounding. Then pick up in the private investment is also there, and you'll see, I'll show you both this high capital expenditure and contained revenue expenditure and pick up in private investment. I'll show you with the help of chart, with the help of data, how they are performing. Then there is contained inflation. Now, inflation is an interesting story in case of India. If you look at the last 1 year, with which this economic survey relates, it's true. So in the last 1 year, inflation for most of the time was more than 6%. And we know there is something called monetary policy framework agreement that we have read in monetary policy banking module. Within that, we have monetary policy committee that has been provided, and monetary policy committee has been given a target of targeting inflation in India at 4 plus minus 2%. Okay, so at maximum, inflation can be 6%. So that 6% is something, the maximum, which is maximum range that has been given to the monetary policy committee to target the inflation. But for most of the time, inflation was beyond 6%. So in one way, we failed in containing inflation. But still, this point is saying that we had contained inflation, because here we are seeing the performance of the Indian economy or monetary policy committee to contain inflation with respect to what is happening across the world. So here we are seeing the relative performance. If you look at the US, inflation is at 40 years high. And even in other developed world or developing countries, inflation was very high, means it broke all the records. But India, you are still having an inflation maximum of 7 to 7.5%. 6% was provided by law, but you are having only 7 to 7.5%. So divergence of only 1 to 1.5%. That is something which is still respectable. At least you are not in a double digit inflation, because Indian economy has seen the face of double digit inflation also. So that's why they are saying contained inflation. Respectable performance was there, even in terms of inflation. Economics cannot say anything other than that. They will have to say that it is a respectable performance, but no doubt it was a respectable performance even in terms of inflation. Now, I was telling you that I'll be giving you information regarding, I'll show you some charts regarding how capital expenditure has performed in case of India, how it is increasing in case of India. So let's see this. This is extracted from the economics survey only. It shows that capital expenditure grew at an average rate of 13% during financial year 12 to financial year 2022 in India. It shows the capital expenditure both the center and the states. So if you look at in y-axis, rupees in lakh crore is given, in x-axis years are given, and orange one shows the capital expenditure, the portion of the capital expenditure of the total capital expenditure of the center. Blue one shows that of states. Okay, you will see that from less than 4 lakh crore in financial year 12, how it has been consistently increasing, or if not consistently increasing, but at least increased, and then spiked later on, and in financial year 2022, how it is much higher. One interesting fact from this, you will see that capital expenditure, the proportion of the capital expenditure that is coming from the states is higher. The states capex as a total, all the states capex is higher than the center capex, center capital expenditure. So what it tells us, it tells the same thing. India is a federal country. If India has to grow, the state have to grow, because if you look at the state's capital expenditure, also state capital expenditure is much higher than the center, and we are mainly focused. And most of the time we discuss about the center capital expenditure without going to the data and nitty-gritties that in fact it's the state which are contributing more to the capital expenditure. Most of the time, states are accused of being careless and giving more money for the revenue expenditure and not for the capital expenditure. But the data shows us a different story. It tells us that it is the state which are contributing more to the capital expenditure. So the key takeaway from this chart is capital expenditure in India has grown at an average rate of 13% during financial year 12 to 22, and states contribute more to the capital expenditure than the center. Now let's look at the next chart. It tells us the capex doubled in the past 5 years. Now we are talking only of the center capital expenditure. Center government's contribution to the capital expenditure. We are talking about only that. It tells us in the past 5 years it has doubled. So from 1.8 lakh crore in financial year 18, it has grown to 4.5 lakh crore in financial year 23. That is something the current financial year. Okay, so capital expenditure at the center level has more than doubled. Whereas I was also telling you that private investment is also picking up in case of India. So that is a proof with respect to that. So private investment was 2.8 lakh crore in India in 20, and then it has increased to 3.3 lakh crore in 23. So it is also picking up, though it remained a bit lower in 21 to 2.2 lakh crore, but it's now again picked up. Now let's look into the other economic resilient factors and the growth drivers in the economy. Okay, so another factor which is very much important for the long-term economic growth of the country and has been discussed in this economic survey, in this state of the economy chapter 1, is that improvement in the balance sheet of the corporates and the banks. So recently we have seen and witnessed that both the corporates and the banks' balance sheets are going green. Green in the sense they are improving. Earlier we were having something called TBS, twin balance sheet challenge to the Indian economy. Now what was this twin balance sheet challenge to the Indian economy? It was, so there are banks which are nothing but financial intermediary. Banks are financial intermediary, means they are savers and they are investors. Banks take money from the savers, give them some return, and then give that money to investors and take some amount of interest rate or interest cost from investors, and in between they make money. That is the role of banks. So there are banks and there are corporates who are mainly these kinds of investors. Mainly these investors are corporates. So earlier we were seeing that because after 2008 financial crisis, there was bloodbath, almost a bloodbath in the corporates' balance sheet, and even banks were being saddled with high NPAs. So banks were suffering with the problem of NPAs, and because corporates were not performing well, or their balance sheets were impaired with too much losses. So both banks' balance sheets and corporates' balance sheets were suffering. So if banks' balance sheet will suffer, they will not be able to give loans to the corporates. If corporates' balance sheets will suffer, they will also not be able to return those loans to the banks. Okay, so in a way they have a symbiotic relationship. So both of them should perform well. Then only economy will perform well. Then only investment will increase, and then only economic growth will increase. But this was something which was not happening. Both of them were suffering, and that was something called twin balance sheet challenge or twin balance sheet problem in case of Indian economy. But what the economic survey right now tells us that there is improvement in the balance sheets of corporates and banks. Banks are able to contain their NPA. In fact, if you look at the data that has been presented by the RBI recently, it actually says that banks' performance in terms of NPA has improved, and right now NPAs are only around 5%. And this is something which is very good news for the economy. And what this economic survey also tells us that corporates are also performing well. So we can see a long-term potential for the economic growth. Okay, that is what the meaning of this point is. Then near universal vaccination, that is also being stressed again and again in this chapter. And this is something is having economic connection, because if you look at the time of the COVID, what happened in the COVID pandemic? There was a lockdown, technical lockdown. Technical lockdown is something which is being imposed. Okay, so there was a lockdown, and because of the lockdown, see there are two kinds of activity. Contact-based sectors are there, and then there are contactless sector. Contactless sector. From economic perspective, I'm talking about. Okay, so contact-based sector and contactless sector. So contact-based sector are like cinema hall, etc. These are content-based sector. Means if you have to enjoy these things, you have to go outside. Okay, means I'm assuming that we are not ordering food from Zomato Swiggy. So if you have to go to the restaurant, you have to move outside of the house. But during the time of COVID, you were not allowed to move. Or even if you are allowed to move, you were not willing to move. Okay, that's why during the time of the COVID, most of the activities which suffered were these contact-based sector. But the contact-based sector like IT sector, BPO, BPO, they didn't suffer much. In fact, their profitability increased during the time of COVID. So there are two kinds of sector: contact-based sector, contactless sector. But as the impact of COVID receded, as the fear of COVID receded, we were able to see a huge jump in the profit or profitability of these contact-based sector also. Contact-based sector already working well, but we were also seeing huge spike in the profits of the contact-based sector also, because now they were able to regenerate, now they were able to recover of the after effects of the COVID. So that's why this economics say that in the recovery of this contact-based sector, near universal vaccination has played a major role. So that's why this point says that near universal vaccination has a major role in the performance of this contact-based sector, and because of the performance of the contact-based sector, economy is also improving. So that is the meaning of this point, near universal vaccination. That is how it is related to the economy, because there was near universal vaccination. COVID receded, people were already vaccinated, they could go out, they could enjoy all these things, and all these sectors started performing well. And because now these sectors have started performing well, that's why this is also acting as one of the resilient factor and the growth driver of the Indian economy. Apart from that, better performance of banks, NPA and credit growth, especially to MSMEs, has been increasing in India, and government is focusing on micro, small, and medium enterprises very much in the last 5 to 6 years. The last 5 to 6 years, there are many initiatives that government has taken for MSMEs. Then urban unemployment has also gone down, and rather labor force participation rate has increased in case of India. And this will also act, because urban unemployment was a major problem the last 2 3 years, and urban unemployment was a major problem. But right now we are witnessing that this problem is somehow being receded. In fact, urban unemployment was around 20% during the peak of COVID, but now it's just around 7%. Okay, so it has receded, and this will also act as a major resilience or the growth driver of the Indian economy. Apart from that, Indian government, or the government of India, or the Indian state, has provided various social security measures during the time of COVID that help not only in tiding the problems of the COVID or the effects of the COVID, but also are helping people currently. So, for example, there was Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. That was something which was initiated by the government during the time of COVID, so as to ensure nutritional security of the poor, and that has helped the poor in tiding the problem of nutritional security or food security. So these are the well-intended social security measures. This is one example of the social security measures that has been taken by the government of India. But this has also acted as a growth driver of the economy. So the chapter says that the world outlook is still uncertain. Definitely it's uncertain. COVID is again surging. Russia, Ukraine war is still continuing, and that may pose some risk. However, the above factors which we have discussed, problems are there in the world, and the world problem will also affect us somewhere. But still, our economy has some inherent resilient factors, and that will help us in tiding with those challenges. That is what this chapter is saying. Now, the same thing which I told you, that the chapter is saying that Indian economy has not only recovered, but it has recovered with inclusive growth. And the same point, this one, of well-intended social security measure, it has helped in ensuring inclusive growth in the Indian economy. So how? Because better performance MSMEs, we know in MSMEs, mainly small business entrepreneurs are somewhere related. So if they get benefited, growth will be inclusive. What is inclusive growth? Inclusive growth means when growth and its fruits are diversified or distributed. Means inclusive growth in a sense, it means there is growth, but its benefits are being accrued by everyone, or at least most of the population. That is what inclusive growth means. Everyone is included in the growth process. So if only big corporates are included in the growth process, if only big corporates are able to ensure their profitability, that will not be inclusive. But because government has taken many steps to the MSME, and MSMEs are performing better, that is one of the examples of the inclusive growth, and that is what the economic survey, this chapter of the economic survey tells us. So role of NGNREGA. NGNREGA is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, is a wage employment scheme where the government is ensuring, rather legally ensuring, that 100 days of wage employment will be given to you if you demand it. 100 days unskilled wage employment will be given to you if you demand it. So it's a demand-based scheme. Now, this was very helpful during the time of COVID. And in fact, government increased the allocation to more than 1 lakh crore rupees, 1 lakh crore during the time of COVID. And this was a historic high under NGNREGA. So historic budget was provided to NGNREGA. NGNREGA was an important scheme to tackle the economic insecurity that was arising during the time of COVID, because most of the people lost their jobs, especially in rural areas, and also the poor from the urban area were migrating back to the rural area. So definitely they needed some kind of economic help from the state, from the government. So government increased the allocation under NGNREGA. Okay, it acted as a social umbrella to provide help to the people, especially poor people in the rural areas. Okay, so it helped in the creation of assets besides generating daily wage employment, and thereby acted as one of the tools of ensuring inclusive growth. Now, also there were social security benefits under a scheme like PM Kisan, PM Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. You have already seen what is PM Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. PM Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana especially was providing free food grains to beneficiaries of NFSA, National Food Security Act 2013, which provide rice, wheat, and coarse cereals at the price of ₹3, ₹2, and ₹1 per kg respectively. So in addition to that subsidized food grain, there was also free food grain. So government in a way doubled the allocation of people, so that nutritional security is also being ensured, not only economic security but also nutritional security. Then there was PM Kisan scheme that was launched. Though PM Kisan scheme was launched in 2019, but it helped the farmers in getting an additional income, so in augmenting their income. What is PM Kisan is Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Okay, Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, in which amount of ₹6,000 is provided to eligible farmers in installment of ₹2,000. In installment of ₹2,000. Okay, and in fact under PM Kisan, government front loaded the money. Government provided the installment in advance so that they could tackle the economic challenges they are facing through COVID, or through the other challenges that were being faced by the economy and by the people in the economy, and thereby it helps in ensuring inclusive growth. Finally, another factor which substantiates this assertion that we had inclusive growth in the last some of the years, is that improved health and welfare indicator in rural India. In fact, economic survey presents us the data. It tells us that if you compare National Family Health Survey 4 and National Family Health Survey 5 data, then proportion of children who are stunted, who are wasted, and who are undernourished have gone down. So what is stunted? Stunted means when you have low height for your age, means commensurate to your age, your height is not increasing, then you will be categorized in the stunted category. What is wasted? Wasted means commensurate to your height, your weight is not increasing, then you will be categorized as wasted. And third one is undernourished, if you do not have that much of nutrition in your daily dietary needs. So what economic survey tells us, with data, it tells us that if you compare National Family Health Survey 4 and National Family Health Survey 5 data, then the proportion of children who are stunted, wasted, and undernourished have gone down. And that is another example of showing that India is witnessing something called inclusive growth. So that was the discussion with respect to chapter 1. That is the state of the economy. If you look at these broad themes, will be discussed now sectorally in all the chapters. So agriculture will be discussing industry services, in MSME will be discussing industry. Then again, this monetary policy kind of things, fiscal policy kind of thing will be discussing fiscal policy, monetary policy chapter respectively. Okay, so all of these, this was a broad discussion with respect to economic survey. These topics only you will be discussing in details in the coming chapters. So this was the discussion with respect to chapter 1, the state of the economy.
Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Preparers. Welcome back to a discussion on Economic Survey of the year 2023. Now let's start with a discussion with chapter 2 of this year Economic Survey. Now let's first see how this chapter is titled. Now this chapter is titled as India's Medium Term Growth Outlook.
Now before starting, or before diving into the discussion with this particular chapter, let me first tell you how this chapter is created or architecture as. Now this chapter starts with discussing some of the important economic events that have taken place in India's recent or contemporary economic history, especially 1921 economic reforms. Then also discuss some of the reforms that have taken place in the time period of 1998 to 2002. Now this particular time period is important in the sense that in most of the economic literature which is related to Indian economy, this particular time period is missing. Especially the reforms that have taken place in this particular time period are either missing or they don't attribute it to this particular time period. Okay, so this is a kind of novelty that has been added by this year economic survey in this particular chapter. After discussing the reforms in this particular time period, then they try to tell us or tell readers that the benefits of the reforms of this particular time period were accrued in the time period of 2003 to 2008. And this is the most successful time period in India's economic past. Because in this particular time period, we have witnessed an average growth of more than 7%. That is historical high in India's economic history post-independence. Okay, so they say that because of the benefits of these particular reforms which were done in the time period 1998 to 2002, we were able to witness high growth years in 2003 to 2008 time period. Then they go in discussing the reforms after 2014. 2014 is a special year because they say after this we are entering into an era of new India. This is what economic survey tells us. Okay, so they discuss the reforms which have taken place in new India. And then in the penultimate section, in the penultimate subsection of this particular chapter only, what it tells us, they try to compare the time period of 2014 to 22 and 1998 to 2002 and try to draw some parallels or similarities that are there between these two particular time periods. And finally ends with growth magnets. That is discussing some of the basic things like why India's long-term growth will be sustainable and why we will be witnessing a long-term growth. Okay, so this is how this chapter is created. Now let's start discussing this chapter. Now let's see first section of this chapter. So it starts with 3 decades of product and capital market reforms. And the first point is 1991 economic reforms, liberalization of trade and investment. If you read the economy, you will know that 1991 was a watershed moment in India's economic history. Because in 1991 we comprehensively reformed, though under compulsion. 1991 reforms were not the reforms of choice, rather they were reforms under compulsion. We were in the midst of the crisis, we were in the midst of the balance of payment crisis, and we had to reform to come out of that particular crisis. So that's why 1991 economic reforms were conducted or took place in India. If you look at 1991 economic reforms, largely they are product and capital market reforms. Capital market reforms. That is what the economic survey tells us. And that is true also. Product market reforms means the reforms in the product market, various industries were reformed, the industrial policies were reformed, whereas capital market reforms, it was very slightly a capital market reforms and not fully a capital market. So largely a product market reforms and slightly a capital market reforms, because if you look at the capital market or financial sector, these are still being reformed. Means the story of the financial sector capital market reforms is still not over, and neither they were overarching as compared to the product market in 1991. That is why I'm telling you that mostly it was product market reforms and slightly it was capital market reforms. So the economic survey also tells us the same thing, that it's a 3 decades of product market capital reforms, and the 1991 economic reforms were largely product or capital market reforms. So let's take an opposite example. So for example, in 1991 we never witnessed and we never studied that labor market was reformed. Okay, so labor market was completely left untouched. Even today, when we have various labor codes, code on wage, code on occupational safety and health and working condition, code on social security, we have various codes, labor codes, and they have been passed in the parliament, they have been notified. Still, we do not have the political will to implement those reforms. Okay, so labor market reforms are something which were left untouched in 1991 and even are left untouched even today, despite the fact that we have passed and notified these codes. Okay, so these are tough no-go areas from the political perspective, and that's why they were left untouched in 1991 also, and even today they are not implemented. So 1991 economic reforms are largely product and capital market reforms, and we saw liberalization of trade and investment. Apart from that, we have liberalization, privatization, and globalization that we witnessed and that we studied in 1991 economic reforms. In fact, when we were in the midst of the crisis in 1991, so the reforms that took place were largely of two kinds, or two kinds of reforms were there. One was macroeconomic stabilization measures that were taken. Second was structural reforms which were planned. Okay, so two major plans of 1991 economic reforms. One, macroeconomic stabilization measures, and second is structural reforms. Now what's the difference between macroeconomic stabilization measures and structural reforms? Macroeconomic stabilization measures are those kind of measures which can give you quick results. So for example, changing the exchange rate, for example, changing the interest rate, for example, interest rate deregulation or controlling inflation. All these are those kinds of measures which can give you a quick result. Quickly they can stabilize the economy. Whereas structural reforms are those kind of economic reforms which are long-term in nature, means and long-term results will come or results will accrue. So for example, trade policy reforms or investment reforms or industrial policy reforms. All these are structural reforms. They will take time to give results. So two kinds of reforms, macroeconomic stabilization reforms and structural reforms were there which were witnessed in 1991. Secondly, they discussed the reforms of 1998 to 2000. And this is a novel criteria, novel time period they have added. That's what I was saying, that largely 1998 to 2002 time period is not something which is discussed in the economic literature, especially with the lens of reforms. They have never been or largely been avoided. That discussion is largely been avoided. But they say there were many important economic reforms that took place in this particular time period, and the benefits of these reforms were coming in the year of 2003 to 2008 time period. Okay, and what are the kinds of reforms that took place in this particular time period? Particularly the liberalization of telecom sector say the national telecom policy was particularly, which was whose foundation was laid in this particular time period only. There is structural reforms like FRBM Act. Now, what is FRBM? Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act. But actually, is the idea of this act is that fiscal deficit or deficit of the government, central or state, cannot exceed a particular comfortable level. Okay, so what was targeted? Only 3% of GDP should be targeted as fiscal deficit of the general government means central and the state government. So it should be targeted 3% of GDP. Now, this was a structural reform. Definitely was a structural reform. And seeds were sown in this particular time period only. Okay, and if you look at this particular reform, was a milestone in the sense that the result of these were evident immediately. In fact, in the time period of 2003 to 2008, when we were witnessing high growth in the Indian economy, we were also able to control the fiscal deficit at a sustainable level. In fact, very much within or near about this 3% of GDP level. Okay. Now, another thing we are discussing about SARFAESI Act. SARFAESI Act is an act which is a mother of all private ARC, Asset Reconstruction Company. That is the tool which is used to resolve the stress asset in the economy. Later on, we saw that even SARFAESI Act was not able to perform very well, and we had to bring in something called Insolvency in Bankruptcy Code post 2014 in New India. Okay. Now, let's see the other points. It also tells us that there were various domestic and global economic shocks which India was witnessing in this particular time period of 1998-2002. And because of these particular both domestic and the global economic shocks, we were not able to get the fruits of these particular reforms. And these fruits of the reforms were delayed and came in only in the time period of 2003 to 2008. That is what the economic survey tells. So domestic and global economic shocks, what were those domestic and global economic shocks? Like international sanctions, which were imposed on India because India conducted nuclear tests. Then successive droughts in India, they were impacting or impairing economic growth. If you look at India, it is still a agrarian economy. From the livelihood perspective, we are still an agrarian economy because more than 40% or close to 50% of people and their livelihood are depending on agriculture. So even if agriculture is contributing just 20% of the share in the GDP, from the livelihood perspective, close to 40 to 50% of total India is dependent on agriculture. So if there is any disturbance in the agriculture sector, or if there is any impact in the agriculture either because of any reason, so if there is any disturbance in the agriculture sector, any economic shock to the agriculture sector, India's economic growth is going to get a hit. Okay, that is true, and that will remain for the next 50 years also. The underperforming financial corporate sector that was also impacting the economy at that particular time period. So economic boom was witnessed only in 2003 to 2008, and the fruits of the economic reforms that were conducted in the 1998 to 2002 time period were delayed to this time period because of these many domestic and the global economic shocks. Okay, so we also saw in this particular time period of 2003 to 2008, not only economic growth was very high, because we'll see that average economic growth was around 7% in this particular time period. In fact, it was a historical high in case of India. In this particular time period, we had strong capital inflows, and largely due to encouraging global liquidity condition, because global condition or global economy was flush with excess liquidity, excess money, and that money was coming to India to get the higher interest rate benefit or to get a higher profit. That's why these people who were having access money, especially in the developed world, they were parking their money as a form of FDI or FII, foreign domestic investment or foreign institutional investment, to India and earning higher profits. Favorable domestic and external factors were there, which were also aiding economic growth of India and sustaining momentum in domestic economic activities, either manufacturing, industrial services, all were working very well in this particular time period. That's why this particular time period is a time period of economic boom. In fact, agriculture sector also performed very well during this particular time period. So everything was going well. Then came the crisis of 2008, and then because this crisis, though it erupted in the Western world, but crisis in this world because of these interconnections we have with different countries, because it's a globalized world, these have high contagion effects. And though it arose in the Western world, in the US, it soon came to India also. India's economic growth also got dampened. Okay, now let's look into the reforms for New India. Now, what are the reforms that are brought in New India, especially reforms post 2040? Because that is the time period which somewhere divides old India from New India as per the economic survey. So it reflects the paradigm shift in the growth and the development strategy of the government. So government has completely changed the levers and the gears in this post 2040 time period, and they started targeting a new section of people. So, for example, poor were given benefits through many social welfare measures. Private sector was made equal development partner, in this post 2040 period. Infrastructure was emphasized upon. So all these changes were being seen in post 2014 period. An emphasis was building partnership amongst various stakeholders in the development process. Weaker marginalized sections were supported through various social welfare schemes, especially those social welfare schemes which were directly giving the benefit to them through direct benefit transfer. So direct money was transferred to their bank account. In fact, it was so good that they used Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity and reduced all leakages and corruption. Or most of the leakages and corruption in these social welfare measures. So who were being benefited not only through more welfare schemes, but also through more targeted welfare schemes, which were surgically reaching to them on them only. Okay, and we were following something. We still are following something called Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, partnership of all and progress of all. That is the literal meaning of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So let's look into the broad principles of the reform post 2014. 4 broad principles are there: creating public goods, both physical and digital. Public goods means goods which are for the public, for general common good. Economically, let's see what is public good. Public goods are those which are non-rival and non-exclusionary. Means you can exclude a particular person from enjoying the benefits of that particular good, and if one person is enjoying the benefit of that particular good, then the other person's benefit is not subject to compromise. Okay, that is the public good. So for example, defense. That is pure public good. Defense is pure public good. Means if army is defending our borders, so me, you, everyone is being protected. No one can be excluded from that kind of protection, and all are equally enjoying it. Okay, so non-rival and non-exclusionary example defense. So what they're telling that the first principle of the reform of post 2014 time period, or the reforms in New India, the first principle was of creating public goods, both physical public goods, means physical infrastructure, and digital public goods. We'll see one example of this physical and digital public goods. Then adapting trust-based governance, that is trusting your own people and not treating them as someone who is complicit of some wrongdoing. Third, co-partnering with the private sector for development, that is giving equal role and respectable role to the private sector also in the development progress of India. Then improving agricultural productivity. Now this is particularly important because if you not improve the agricultural productivity, or if you not increase the returns of the people who are involved in agriculture, then definitely your growth will be hollow, because most of the people are involved and their livelihood is dependent on agriculture. So this should be a crucial pillar of any economic reform that is taking place in India. So these are the 4 broad principles: creating public goods for long-term sustainable economic growth progress of the country, adapting trust-based governance, co-partnering the private sector for development and improving agricultural productivity. Let's see them in a figure. So underlying framework of reforms for New India, what the New India is trying to do is to increase the ease of doing business and ease of living. In fact, by the same name, there are two index: ease of doing business, that is internationally released by World Bank, and nationally in India for states is released by NITI Aayog for different states. And ease of living index is released in India by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. So ease of doing business and ease of living, they are trying to stress on through creating public goods, agricultural productivity, trust-based governance, and private sector participation. This will lead to efficient resource allocation and will increase the productive potential of the economy for long-term growth. Now, this is mainly emphasized in this particular chapter of the economic survey and the whole economic survey, that whatever reforms that are taking place will be having returns in the long term. So these reforms are something which will give us fruits in the long term, and they are not something which are of seeking quicker returns. Okay, so these are difficult tasks and will give return only in the long term. So let's see them one by one. Let's see the four broad principles or the framework of reforms in New India one by one. Number one, creating public goods to enhance opportunities, efficiencies, and ease of living. So two particular things have been stressed here: physical infrastructure and public digital infrastructure. You have seen that many reforms or many initiatives were started by the government post 2014 for these two particular things, for building up or making more robust the physical infrastructure of the country, and also strengthening the digital public infrastructure. So physical infrastructure example, Bharatmala for roadways and highways, Sagarmala for coastal area development, for port development, Udan for aviation sector infrastructure. Udan means Pune Desh ka aam nagrik. In fact, there was a scheme, National Civil Aviation Policy NCAP 2016, which mainly targeted that we should increase the regional connectivity of India, RCS, regional connectivity of India. So to implement this particular provision of this policy only, Udan scheme of subsidized regional connectivity was started. So it led to the development of the aviation sector and aviation infrastructure in case of India, especially the regional aviation sector. So Udan, Sagarmala, Bharatmala, the national infrastructure pipeline, where many infrastructure projects were identified, that is more than 100 lakh crore of infrastructure projects were identified, that these are the particular infrastructure projects we will be taking up in the next 5 years, from 2019 to 2024-25, and it was said that we are doing all these things to make India a $5 trillion economy. But these plans were not very much successful because in the meantime we had something called COVID pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. All of these things somewhere have disturbed our economic plans. The National Monetization Pipeline 2021, under which we were going for asset monetization. Monetization. Now what usually happens in asset monetization, we have something called existing assets. Now this asset is already there. Suppose this particular asset, for example, roadways. What we'll do, we'll sell this road to a private partner, and whatever money we will get, we means government, whatever money we will get, we'll deploy that particular money to create new assets. So again, this new asset will become existing asset, then again we will sell it to some private partner, then again money will be coming, and then we create new assets. Now this process is called asset recycling. Now this was the underlying philosophy under national monetization pipeline. We already have asset. No one means asset is a part of the country's resource. Means it's already there. We have just sell it to a private partner. Okay, so we can still enjoy that particular asset. It's just that ownership will be transferred to the private partner. So asset is there, money is coming, and we are creating new assets. So through asset recycling, we were implementing this national monetization pipeline, which was of somewhere around 6 lakh crore. So we targeted somewhere around 6 lakh crore public sector assets will be sold through asset monetization through this national monetization pipeline program, and new assets will be created through that money that will be coming and that will be realized through the selling of these particular assets. Apart from the physical infrastructure, government also targeted public digital infrastructure and heavily targeted public digital infrastructure. For example, JAM Trinity, Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity. Now this JAM Trinity was used for direct benefit transfer and to reduce leakages in the welfare scheme. Apart from this, DigiLocker, where you can convert your physical documents into a digital form and can access them from anywhere. So there will be lifelong safety of your physical document. Then eKYC, know your customer. You don't have to visit the bank branch to verify your credentials. You can just do it through electronic form. Then unified payment interface, ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce, GST network, eShram for unorganized worker. eShram is essentially database for unorganized worker, and through this database, government is trying to provide them all the welfare schemes in a hassle-free manner. All those unorganized workers like rickshaw puller, or street vendors, all of them which are not working in organized sector, they will have their database under eShram portal, and government will be targeting this eShram portal and providing the welfare scheme through this eShram portal to them. Okay, then PM Gati Shakti. PM Gati Shakti is also nothing but a platform where all different ministries are coordinating, especially ministries which are dealing with the infrastructure. All of them are coordinating, and then in a seamless manner, they are implementing the infrastructure projects of the country. Then Umang App, unified digital interface. All of these are examples of digital infrastructure which is being built up by the government in the post 2014 time period. Okay, that's why we are saying it has resulted in creating public goods and will be helping in enhancing opportunities, efficiency, and ease of living to the public. Now let's look at the second pillar of the post 2014 economic reforms, that is economic reforms for New India. So government is trying to build trust between the government and citizens of business community, that is between government citizens or government or business community, through reforms like IBC for resolution of stress assets, real estate and regulatory authority, by removing the problems or doing away with the problems of real estate sector, because of which people were suffering because they were not getting their flats or their property on time through the builders which were involved in the real estate sector. So government has brought in a real estate regulation act, which has set up real estate regulatory authority, which is now bringing all of these real estate people under some sort of formal setup. Then decriminalization of offences under Companies Act 2013 and introduction of civil liabilities has also built up trust between the government and the business community. Also, removal of policy uncertainty, like simplifying processes or doing away with unnecessary compliance. For example, self-attestation is a simple example of how government is trying to trust people and increase this trust between the government and the people. Repealing RT laws, in fact more than 1,000 RT laws has been repealed by the government. Abolition of angel tax, which has given a kind of relief to the startup sector. Though angel tax is still there, only a segment of the startup sector has got this relief, but still this shows the government resolve to increase trust between the startup sector or the corporates and the government. And also tax reforms like GST, reduction in corporate income tax, removing dividend distribution tax, all of them has again increased the trust between the government and the citizen or the government and the corporate sector. Now if you look at the GST, see how GST as a reform has given the fruits to the economy. So let's look at the average monthly gross GST collection. Now this is very important if any question is there with respect to GST, and if you have to quote some data with respect to how GST is performing well, because in 2022 GST has completed 5 years, so it can be a question on analysis of the performance of the GST. In fact, in March 2023 also, the monthly collection of GST was 1.6 lakh crore. So GST is performing very well in the case of India. Now everyone knows the advantages of GST, but the question can be what are the problems with respect to GST, and that can be a very difficult question to tackle. Okay, so now let's look at the average monthly collection. In financial year 18, it was 0.9 lakh crore, that is 90,000 crore average monthly collection. 0.98, then 1.02, a dip in 21 mainly because of the COVID impact, and then 1.24 and then 1.49 in 23. So average GST collection has largely been increasing year by year with the exception of financial year 21. Now let's look into the third pillar of post-2014 economic reform in India, and that is the government believes in private sector as an effective participation in the development process. So government in a way is encouraging private sector to take a lead role in the development progress of the country. And the first example of this investment is particularly interesting because if you look at the new public sector enterprise policy, which was released by the government in 2019, it has started using the word privatization instead of disinvestment. Now earlier also we were doing privatization only, but we were giving the name of disinvestment. So technically they are different, but disinvestment is nothing but a privatization in bits and pieces. So we are just privatizing a portion of 10% or 20% of that particular asset of that particular company. But essentially it will lead to privatization only. But the people or the policymaker of the government was not using the word privatization. And for obvious reason, because they never wanted to create a picture that we are selling our family silver. That's the kind of family silver argument is given by the people who criticize the disinvestment of privatization in the public sector assets. But this time, government has used this word privatization when they brought in new public sector enterprise policy and eloquently used this word. Without any shame, you can say use this word just to assert that private sector has an equal role in the development of the country, and you cannot shy away by taking that particular role from them. So what the government did here is that government divided the total public sector assets into strategic and non-strategic. They said in non-strategic will not be having government role. In strategic sector, which was identified by the government, only maximum of 4 public sector companies will be there. 4 public sector companies will be there. Not minimum, maximum of 4 public sector companies will be there, and rest all other assets which are in the non-strategic sector will be privatized. So it was a very kind of revolutionary policy, public sector enterprise policy of 2019, kind of revolutionary policy because it firstly said that or use the word privatization, and secondly it divided the assets in strategic and non-strategic sector, and directly said in non-strategic sector will not be having any government role. So this was a way of the government to give private sector a more than equal role in the development progress of the country. Then there's things like production linked incentive where the government is incentivizing industrial sector, various sectors, foreign sectors have been identified, and they have been incentivized of 4 to 6% return on their incremental sales. And this has increased foreign investment in case of country because this, if you look at PLI scheme, it's both for domestic and foreign company. So not only domestic, both domestic and foreign company can take benefits from PLI scheme for these sectors like automobiles, chemicals, electronic, and many others have been identified. Foreign sectors have been identified for which production linked incentive scheme is applicable, and this is attracting foreign investment because it is open to both domestic and foreign companies. Many other initiatives like national logistics policy, open network for digital commerce, account aggregators, all of them has also increased the private sector role in the economic development of the country. Also, government has opened strategic sector for private participation, and that is also because if you look at what the government is saying here, that in strategic sector, maximum of 4 public sector companies will be there. Means private sector can also come. The other way of seeing it is they are not barring private sector from participating in the strategic sector. Private sector can also come there and invest in strategic sector. So they have opened the route for or the gates for the private sector participation in the strategic sector. Now, one of the results of all these kinds of economic reform is increase in FDI, that is foreign direct investment in India as a percentage of GDP. Now, just look into this chart. In y-axis, percentage of GDP is given. In x-axis, the years are given. Now, if you look at from the financial year 5 to financial year 14, the average FDI as a percentage of GDP in India was just 2.2%. Whereas after 2014, that is from 2015 to 2022, average FDI inflow in India as a percentage of GDP now is 2.6%. So from 2.2% to 2.6%, FDI as a percentage of GDP has increased. And most of this owes to the economic reforms, the kind of economic reforms that are taking place in India post 2014. That is what the economic survey tells us. Okay, now let's look into another pillar of the post 2014 economic reforms, and that pillar targets agricultural growth. And it says that there has been stellar agricultural growth performance of 4.6% in the last 6 years, and that is due to the increased agriculture productivity. And because many steps have been taken by the government in this post 2014 time period, that's why we are seeing increased agriculture productivity and stellar agriculture growth performance in this particular time period. So what are those kinds of reforms? Soil health card for measuring and assessing the soil fertility. Various micro and macronutrients are being measured. What are the levels? What are the optimum levels? And what all we can do to improve those levels through soil health card. The micro irrigation fund. So we have conventional irrigation facilities like tube wells, tank irrigation, flood irrigation, canal irrigation, and also we have micro irrigation facilities like sprinkler drip irrigation. All of these. So government has set up a micro irrigation fund under NABARD to promote these kind of irrigation facilities, and that has resulted in the increased agriculture productivity in the country. Also, organic and natural farming has been promoted by the government, and these organic and natural farming are having huge remunerating market and having the high potential of profit, especially in those countries which are health conscious. Then there are steps like promotion of farmers producer organization, national agriculture marketing, the marketing space, agriculture infrastructure fund of rupees 1 lakh crore is being set up by the government, especially for post-harvest management facilities. In agriculture, especially examples can be cold storage facilities, which is also resulting in the increase in the agriculture productivity. And also support to the agri startups is being given and being enhanced. So, for example, in budget 2023, what the finance minister has declared that we will set up something called Agri Accelerator Fund, AAF, to support agri startups. Now, details are still not there, but this is something which has been announced in the budget 2023, and this is an example for the support to agri startups. So, all of these things are increasing agriculture productivity in India. Now, after looking into these 4 broad pillars of the economic reforms that taking place post 2014, or in the time period 2014-2022 period, now we will see 2 periods of economic shock. And this is the same kind of discussion which I was alluding to earlier. But I was telling you that what the economic survey says is that 1998 to 2002 time period and 2014 to 2022 time period are same in the sense both of them have seen many economic reforms, but both of them were muted when we see them in terms of economic growth witness, in terms of economic growth. So, what is the conclusion that has been drawn from this chapter in this economic survey? It tells us that this period was something which was suffering from economic shocks, and that's why the benefits of the economic reforms in terms of economic growth was somewhat delayed. So, from 1998 to 2002 time period, the benefits came in 2003 to 2008 time period. The same way, the benefits of these reforms, or the reforms in this particular time period, will come, will be delayed, but they will come in the coming years. So, it says that there is a parallel between 1998 to 2002 and 2014-22 in terms of reforms and economic shocks they face. India is well placed to accelerate in growth after these shocks fade away much faster than pre-pandemic years. That is, after these shocks are faded away, India will see and witness high growth years. That is what the economic survey tells us. Now, let's see what the kind of parallels that are drawn between between these two particular time periods. So time period 1998 to 2002, 2014 to 2022. So parallel in terms of the shocks to the economy. Let's first see the parallel in terms of the shocks to the economy. So there was nuclear device testing in 1998. Sanctions were imposed in India. Banking corporate sectors were deleveraging and repairing balance sheet. That was also a kind of shock. Two successive agriculture droughts were there, and we know we are agriculture or agrarian economy. So definitely we will get some kind of shock, some kind of economic growth will be impaired because of the bad performance in agriculture. Technology burst, dot-com bubble, US recession, 9/11. All of these were shocks to the economy in this particular time period, 1998 to 2002. Whereas in 2014-2022 time period, again we will get something called period of banking, non-banking, and non-financial corporate sector balance sheet stress. That is what I was discussing in the first chapter. That is PBS problem, twin balance sheet problem. So we had twin balance sheet problem. Largely these problems were tracing roots to high growth year of 2003 to 2008 because in these high growth years, many irresponsible decisions were taken when loans were being sanctioned to even unviable projects, and they turned into NPA and later on resulted in the twin balance sheet problem. Now, the another shock in this particular time period was unprecedented pandemic shock. We know that COVID pandemic hurt all the economy across the world. Then inflation was there, global commodity price rose rooftop high, and also it was followed by tightening of financial condition, which is now impacting investments. So we saw there were domestic and the global economic shock in both of these particular time periods of 1998 to 2002 and 2014 to 2022. Now let's look at the similarity in terms of the structural reforms that were conducted in this particular time period and are conducted in this particular time period. So interest rate deregulation, privatization, asset recovery for banks through SAR phasing, right, that we saw, FRBM Act, infrastructure was stressed, golden quadrilateral. In fact, Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, and Chennai were linked to a network of highways. And this was the golden quadrilateral in the sense because if you link these four places in the map, you will get a rough image of quadrilateral only. Okay, so infrastructure was stressed, FRBM Act was passed. So these were the kind of structural reforms that took place in the 1998 to 2002 time period. Whereas in this particular time period, economic service stress that we went for unique identity through UIDAI or Aadhaar, financial inclusion through Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana and schemes like such, and many pension insurance schemes. All those were also increasing the financial inclusion in the economy. GST, which is like a formulation, that is also a kind of, or rather, the biggest structural reforms in the indirect tax front in the taxation history of the country. IBC in the resolution of stress asset privatization. We have already discussed new public sector enterprise policy of 2019. Tax rate rationalization and tax administrative reforms. So, for example, we know there is something called direct taxes and there is something called indirect taxes. All of them, or both of them, reforms. So, for example, direct taxes, personal income taxes. We have something called baseless assessment, taxpayer charter, in corporate income tax (CIT). We had reduction in corporate income tax rate, reduction in tax rates, indirect taxes. We brought in GST. That was a major tax reform. Okay, so taxes were reformed, tax rates were rationalized across this space, means both direct and indirect, and that was a major structural reforms in the economy. The decriminalization of offences, we have seen how decriminalization of offences were done, especially in the Companies Act of 2013. Vaccine rollout and setting of platforms like COVID, expenditure management reform. So, for example, now in FRBM law, we are not targeting fiscal deficit as such, but enticing committee has recommended us to target public debt. So, this is also kind of major reforms, especially on expenditure front. And also, one of the other example can be of giving more emphasis to capital expenditure than revenue expenditure, REVEX. Okay, so giving more emphasis to capital expenditure than REVEX, thereby increasing the quality of expenditure. So all of them give us the same kind of conclusion that expenditure management reforms were conducted in post-2014 time period, Atmanirbhar Bharat to increase self-reliance of economy in various sectors, and also taking a base initiative for public digital infrastructure that we have already seen. What are all the kind of examples for strengthening of public digital infrastructure? So many structural reforms were conducted both in 1998 to 2000 and in this particular time period in which we are living, that is 2014 to 2022. Now let's look into the similarities between these two particular time period of this 1998 to 2002 and 2014 to 2022 from the perspective of growth returns. So there were shocks that delayed the growth returns in this particular time period, and once shocks faded away, the structural reforms were being given from 2003. That was something which was seen in this particular time period in the first time period. The same is what is we are witnessing in this particular time period of 2014 to 2022. That is, balance sheet is strengthening in the financial sector. You have seen that how balance sheets are now improving. In the first chapter, we saw that how balance sheets are now improving in the financial sector in both corporate and the banking sector. Corporate sector deleveraged by about 30 percentage points. That is, they have reduced their debt. Deleverage means reduce their debt by 30%. Also, there is emphasis on macroeconomic stability while dealing with the global shock. So, macroeconomic stability is something which is a crucial pillar and something which will be the backdrop of future economic growth. So, for example, if you look at macroeconomic indicators in terms of India, current account deficit, fiscal deficit, inflation, all of them are somewhere within control. Okay, they are not going haywire. So, definitely, they will lay a strong foundation for the future economic growth of the country. Once we are out of these kind of economic shocks or global or pandemic shocks, then we'll be able to see a long-term economic growth, just like we saw in this particular time period of 1998 to 2002 when shocks faded away and we were able to see the growth from 2003 to 2008 time period. Okay, now let's look into the next section of growth magnet for this decade. Now, what the economic survey and this chapter does, what will be the growth magnet for this particular time period 2023 to 2030? That is what will be the growth levers of the economy for increasing growth in the economy. So one will be the first one, efficient credit provisioning. So if you are able to provide credit efficiently, then definitely it will aid the growth process. Digitalization reforms will also help in efficiency gains and increasing economic growth. Geopolitical situation and how we are able to get the benefits of diversified global supply chain, that will also help in increasing the growth potential of the economy, and also rising FDI in India will also aid to the growth process of the economy in this particular decade of 2023 to 2030. So four growth magnets which have been mentioned is efficient credit provisioning, digitalization reforms, how geopolitical situation pans out, and rising FDI in India. These all will be helping us in increasing growth rate in the coming decade of 2023 to 2030. So that was the discussion with respect to chapter 2 of the economic survey, that is medium term growth outlook.
Hello, welcome back to our discussion on this year economic survey, that is the economic survey of the year 2022-2023. Let's start our discussion with chapter 3, which is titled as Fiscal Development, Revenue, Relish. Now here we'll be starting our discussion with respect to the position of government finances, means how government finances have fared in the recent year, especially in the last year that we'll be discussing within this chapter. Now the key message of this chapter is that revenue position of the government is quite robust in the recent year. Okay, now what is saying that government is enjoying this improved revenue position or improved fiscal position. Now that is the meaning of revenue relish, means enjoying the improved revenue position. So let's start our discussion with this chapter. Let's see what all things we are going to discuss within this chapter. So firstly, what I'll do, I'll give you some basics about the budget because the concepts discussed in that particular basic will be used in whole of this chapter. And without refreshing our knowledge with respect to the basics of budget, this chapter will be quite difficult to understand or grasp. So firstly, we'll be discussing the basics of the budget. Then we'll be looking into the improved fiscal position from various fronts of the government, means what this chapter is actually trying us to tell. Then we'll be looking into the deficit position of the government, means how the government is performing or the government finances are performing in terms of fiscal deficit. And finally, we'll be looking into the debt position of the government finances. Okay, so this is a broad way in which we'll be dealing with this chapter. So let's start our discussion. Let's see the fiscal position of the government. Now, before discussing the fiscal position of the government, as I've already told you, we'll be first discussing something about the basics of the budget. Now, in the first chapter of this year economic survey only, in the first chapter only, I told you that budget is nothing but a document which is representing the estimated receipts and expenditure of the ensuing year, of the coming year. So, for example, budget of 2023, this year, it told us about what the receipts of the government is going to be and what the expenditures are going to be for the year 2023 to 24. Okay, so that is the basic of the budget. Means in single line, this is how we can define the budget. But if you look at the budget, it is divided into two major components. Now, what are those major components? They are revenue budget and capital budget. So, revenue budget and capital budget. Now, let's first deal with the revenue budget. Revenue budget is further divided into revenue receipts RR and revenue expenditure. Revenue receipts are further divided into receipts from tax revenue, TR, receipts from tax revenue. Now, most of the time I'm using the short form, but I'll be telling what that short form actually means. So, tax revenue, TR, and non-tax revenue, and TR. Okay, now further, tax revenues are divided into direct taxes and indirect taxes. Okay, now what is revenue receipt? Now, revenue receipts are all those receipts that are coming to the government, under which government is having no further obligation to pay it back. So once the money has come to the account of the government, it is government money. That is what revenue receipt is. Means it is not creating any debt or obligation on the government. So all the revenue receipts are non-debt creating, means they don't create any obligation on the government. These revenue receipts are divided into tax revenue, means all those receipts which are coming from the tax fund, and all those receipts which are coming from non-tax fund. So all those receipts which are not tax in nature, they are non-tax revenue receipts. So examples can be like fees, various fees are imposed by the government, various fines that are imposed by the government. All those are part of example of non-tax revenue receipts. Various tax revenue receipts can be divided into direct tax, indirect tax. We know what are direct and indirect taxes. Direct taxes are all those taxes where the incidence of tax and the impact of tax are on the same entity. Means the person who is paying the tax to the government and the person who is finally bearing the burden of paying the tax will be the same entity or same person. That is direct tax. Example are corporate income tax, personal income tax. So these are two most important examples of direct tax. Whereas indirect tax, indirect tax are all those taxes. It is the person who is paying the money to the government or paying the tax amount to the government. That is the impact of tax. And the person who is finally bearing the burden of the tax. That is where the incidence of tax resides. Now both of them are different person or different entity. Means the impact of tax and the incidence of tax is on different person or different entity. And whenever the impact and incidence is on different person or different entity, that is called indirect tax. Most important example, GST, goods and service tax. So indirect taxes, the impact and incidence are on the same person. The indirect taxes, the incidence and impact are on different person or different entity. Now this is with respect to the revenue budget. Now let's start discussing capital budget. Similar to revenue budget, capital budget is also divided into two parts: capital receipt (CR) and capital expenditure (CE). Now capital receipts are further divided into two major components. One is debt creating capital receipts. Another is non-debt creating capital receipts. That is NDCR. Okay, one is DCR, debt creating capital receipt. Another is non-debt creating capital receipt. Now what's the difference between the debt creating and non-debt creating capital receipt? Now before that, let's first discuss what is the capital receipt. Now if you look at the revenue receipt, I told you that revenue receipt is something where there is no obligation on the part of the government to return it later on. Whereas in capital receipt, in some of these receipts, there will be obligation on the part of the government to return the money back. Whereas in another kind, there will be no obligation. And that is how they are divided. So for example, debt creating capital receipts. So for example, like government bond. The government has issued some bond, of course, to IRA because that was issued by RBI. The government has issued some bond. Then government has to pay back money after the maturity of that particular bond. Okay, so whoever is holding that particular bond will be getting money back from the government after the maturity of that particular bond. So there is an obligation on the government to return that particular amount of money after that bond is matured and whenever that bond is redeemed. Whereas in another case, non-debt creating capital receipts, these are kind of capital receipts, means there is no obligation on the part of the government to return the money back. That is the government money. So for example, recovery of loans. Recovery of loans from the state government. So government gives some loans to the state governments, and if government recovers, central government recovers that loan from the state government, that will form part of non-debt creating capital receipts. Similarly, disinvestment proceeds. We know disinvestment is a usually controversial topic in case of Indian economy. Means the government wants to disinvest, but usually they fail to disinvest to the extent they want to do it. So disinvestment proceeds, that will also form part of non-debt creating capital receipts. So non-debt creating capital receipts are all those kinds of capital receipts which are resulting in
reduction of financial assets. So government has some assets. Loans that are given by the government or given by any bank or given by any entity are classified as assets because they will give us interest income. So that's why they're classified as assets. So whenever these assets are brought down, whenever these assets are being reduced or being sold, they are forming part of non-debt creating capital receipts. So another way of saying or defining non-debt creating capital receipts can be all those receipts which are resulting into the reduction of financial assets. Similarly, this investment, we are selling our assets only in this investment. So that is also bringing down our assets. So non-debt creating capital receipts are all those receipts which are received after selling our financial assets. Whereas debt creating capital receipts are all those capital receipts which are obligations or create debt on the government. So we get the basics about the budget, broad basic, revenue budget, capital budget, and this basic will be very important when we'll be proceeding through this chapter because we'll time and again come back to this basic. And if we have this basic very much in our mind, clear in our mind, then we'll be able to relate things when they will proceed in this particular chapter. So let's start now with a discussion what this chapter tells us. Now this chapter tells us that last year was uncertain. Of course, last many years were uncertain. There was COVID pandemic, and then there was Russia-Ukraine war. The government released the budget of 2022, that is for the year 2022-2023. In February onwards, Russia-Ukraine war started, and whole world, including India, went into the period of uncertainty. Now, since the COVID hit the economy, we have been following, as a government, we have been following expansionary fiscal policy. And we already know the basics of expansionary fiscal policy from the first chapter discussion only. Now, the moot point of the expansionary fiscal policy is always reduction in taxes and increase in expenditure. Increasing expenditure through various tools like increasing subsidies. Now, that is how expansionary fiscal policy are performed or being conducted by the government. So, economy is down, government wants to give some kind of succor or help to the economy, so it will go for expansionary fiscal policy, and through that will increase demand in the economy. And we know GDP, one way of writing GDP is C plus I plus G plus NX. So if investment is down and exports is down during the period of uncertainty and during the period of pandemic or any kind of slowdown in the economic growth across the world and even domestically, then government can support the economy by increasing G, by increasing government expenditure through increase in demand and then increase in production and increase in GDP. So whole this cycle starts moving on, it starts getting picked. So this was something which government was doing, but later on things started improving and government thought that now we should reduce this kind of overly expansionary fiscal policy and we should go towards some kind of normalization. While we are moving towards normalization, we are also witnessing that our fiscal position is getting improved. Okay, so that is what is given in this first slide. So last year was uncertain. Shocks led to increased adoption of expansionary fiscal policy, and we know why. This led to increasing expenditure in terms of subsidies and reduction in taxes. That is what the definition of expansionary fiscal policy is. And then government adopted a gradual withdrawal from fiscal stimulus. Now, this expansionary fiscal policy is also called as fiscal stimulus, means stimulating the economy through fiscal hand. Another hand is of monetary policy. So there are two policies, fiscal policy and monetary policy. Monetary policy mainly related to money, interest rate, and fiscal policy mainly related to taxes and expenditure. And overall, government fiscal position gradually came under control. So overall, the position of the government is gradually coming under control. So how the position of the government is coming under control, that is what we'll see now. Now, if you look at again, it is saying resilient performance is shown in the financial year 2023 from fiscal front. Economic activities have recovered, and that's why we are seeing that there is a huge jump in the revenue, various kinds of tax revenues of the government. Buoyancy in revenues from GST and direct taxes have been there. So both GST and direct taxes have improved. Now, if you look at this figure, you'll see in this particular part, you'll see that growth in centers direct taxes are higher than the corresponding longer term averages during the period April to November. In the period of April to November, what they have done here is that they have taken a long-term averages, long-term time period average, for example, average of financial year 20 financial 19, comparing the same time period of April to November, and then they have compared this particular time period with April to November 2022, that is last year. Okay, and then they have tried to show us that direct taxes have been improving and performing very well if you compare these two particular time periods. So in this particular time period, April to November 2022, we have seen that direct taxes, gross tax revenue, firstly looking at the gross tax revenue. Gross tax revenue is 15.5%, whereas in this average long-term period they have taken of financial year 2013 to 19, it was increasing just by 13.9%. Then direct taxes they have stressed upon that look into the stellar performance of the direct taxes here. 12.9% in this long period average of financial year 13 to 19, whereas 23.9% in this particular year of April to November 2022. Then corporate income tax, 10.3 to 21.1%. Personal income tax, 16.8 to 26.7%. That's why the title was revenue bearish. Means government is really enjoying the improved fiscal position. Taxes are on upside. Now let's look into the customs and excise duty. What they are saying, customs and excise duty have acted as a flexible fiscal policy tool. Now, I told you something about various kinds of taxes, direct tax and indirect taxes. Now, if you look at this customs and excise duty, they are a kind of indirect taxes. Indirect taxes. Now, there are various taxable events, and on the basis of the taxable events, these taxes are classified. Taxable events means where that tax will be imposed, at what particular event the tax will be imposed. So, what I'm telling you, there are various taxable events, and these taxable events are helpful in defining the kind of tax. So, for example, if there is production of good, there is sale of good, there is purchase of good, there is entry of good into local area, there is entry of good into domestic territory of country. Domestic territory of country. So, when the taxable event is production of good, the kind of tax is excise duty. When taxable event is sale of good, the kind of tax is sales tax. When taxable event is purchase of good, it is purchase tax. Entry of good into local area, octroi. Entry of good into domestic territory of the country, customs duty. Okay, and now we have what we have done in our indirect tax reform. We have combined most of these taxes, most of these indirect taxes, and replaced them with GST, goods and service tax. And in GST, taxable event is supply of good. Supply of good. So taxable event here is supply of good, and they have defined what supply can be in various circulars. Now, if you look at what this point is telling, that customs and excise duty have acted as a flexi fiscal policy tool. Now, what they are telling us to this point is that when other sources of tax revenues were low, so for example, GST was low, income tax was low, corporate income tax was low, then these two heads, customs and excise duty, acted as a major source of revenue for the government. So, for example, government get a huge amount of money during pandemic from higher excise duty on crude oil. So government imposed high excise duty on crude oil. If you look at the pricing of crude oil in India, now it's quite complicated. So firstly, crude oil is imported, and we have something called base price. When crude oil is imported, it is imported at base price. On that, there is a freight charges. Okay, now this base price and freight charges will be given to dealer, and dealer will add its commission, dealer commission on that, dealer commission on that. Now this whole base price, freight price, and dealer commission will then be imposed with excise duty by the central government. Excise duty by the central government. Later on this whole amount, the state VAT will impose, value-added tax will be imposed. So this is through this complicated process. Price of petrol and diesel is calculated in India. Now what happened during the COVID time period? Government raised the excise duty. Central government raised the excise duty on petrol and diesel because base price went very low. So government, instead of passing that very low base price to the citizens, to the people who are using this fuel, government increased the excise duty, compensated that by increasing the excise duty and kept the price of the oil in the retail market either at the same price or at a higher price and tried to gain revenue through it. So that's why they're saying that excise duty have acted as a flexible fiscal policy tool, and it will always act as a flexible fiscal policy tool as long as we are following this method of calculation of the price of oil or imported oil. So in a way, it has compensated the loss in other tax revenue front. Now, the other point, it is saying that government has gone for realistic assumption in the budget, and that has also led to the improved fiscal position of the government, or whatever improved fiscal position we are seeing right now in the government is a result of the realistic assumptions of the budget. Now, I told you what is budget. Budget is a document which is presenting us with the estimated receipts and expenditure, but neither these receipts have come nor these expenditures are already made. So we are just estimating them. Okay, so we are just estimating receipts and expenditure. So for example, in a year, receipts are 100 and expenditures are somewhere around 110. Usually, in every government of any country, expenditure will be higher than receipts. Okay, so government budget is not made in a way the household budget is made. So in a household, what we do, we usually first look into whatever sources of income we have, and then on the basis of that income, we will determine what our expenditure will be and also save a part of our income. So usually households act in a surplus manner, whereas government will generally act in a deficit manner. First, they will identify the expenditures, and then they will scramble for the sources of money or sources of income from where all we can earn this money to meet this expenditure that we have decided upon. Okay, so government, let's suppose government is having 110 as expenditure and 100 rupees as receipts, total receipts. Okay, so now suppose government thinks that there will be 10% increase in the total receipts, but though government thinks and is very sure of the 10% increase in the receipt, it is not assuming it while framing the budget of the economy. What it is saying, though there will be 10% increase, but we are assuming just 5% increase, and our receipt will be 105. From 100, 5% increase, 105. Okay. So if at all there will be actual 10% increase, the extra 5 will give us a better position at the end of the year. Whereas they have increased the expenditure by 5 only, and that we get now 115. So estimated expenditure now is 115, whereas estimated receipts, though they are very sure that it will increase by 10%, of course it will increase by 10%, but by framing the budget, they have taken the assumption of only 5%. Okay, so estimated receipts are 105. Now this is what has happened in case of India, especially in the last year. So government conservatively estimated its revenue receipts or total receipts, and that's why when the receipts increased much more than that, they were in a better position. Or this is what that is being explained through this particular line. In that realistic assumption in the budget, and those realistic were conservative estimates. So they have taken conservative estimate in the budget making, and that's why it has brought the government in the improved fiscal position. Now let's look into this figure. It shows composition of tax profile of the union government for financial year, for fiscal year 23, and these are budget estimates. Means what was estimated at the time of the framing of the last year budget. So you'll see corporate income tax, GST, personal income tax, union excise duty, and custom. Maximum money to the government, maximum tax revenue to the government is coming from GST, or estimated to come from GST. Then corporate income tax, personal income tax, 26% each, then union excise duty, and then customs duty. Okay, so this one we have already seen. Now let's look into the next chart where buoyant union government taxes from April to November time period are given. Now, if you look at this particular chart, it shows improved fiscal position of not only April to November 2022, but also April to November 2021. And it tries to tell us and give us information regarding that particular thing only, that in both April to November 2021 and April to November 2022, our revenue position is consistently improving. So various heads are given, gross tax revenue, of which direct taxes and indirect taxes are particularly good. Direct taxes we have already seen, corporation tax, taxes on income, then corporation tax, like personal income tax, customs duty, union excise duty, service tax, GST, all are part of indirect taxes. These are the budget estimates for the fiscal year, financial year 23, and then in absolute amount are not important. You can just look at the percentages. Means year on year, how gross tax revenues have increased. So 50.3% gross tax revenue in the year April to November 2021 have increased 50.3% as compared to previous year, and then 15.5% in the 2022 on the base of 50.3%. Means already 50.3% was there increased amount, and on top of that 15.5%. So that is also very impressive increase. Then again, for different heads, they have direct taxes have increased by 66.3 and 23.9%. Corporation tax, tax on income, then corporation tax, all are positive except the union excise duty, which in this particular year, for this particular time period, is negative territory, and service tax, of course, because service tax has now been substituted under goods and service tax. So definitely there will be dip in the service tax collection now. So overall, key takeaway from this particular chart is that our revenue position have been consistently improving in the last two financial year, last two fiscal year. Let's look at the trends in non-tax revenue. Now, just like tax revenue was there, there is also non-tax revenue, and major heads are interest receipts, dividends and profits, external grants. So if you look at all of them, from financial year 18 to financial year 2023, budget estimates have been given. So they have shown that even non-tax revenue are doing impressively well in case of India. Now, let's look into the expenditure, revenue expenditure, and capital expenditure of the country. If you look at the revenue expenditure, we already know what are revenue expenditure. Revenue expenditure are all those kinds of expenditure which are of daily basis for the government. Daily basis means ongoing operations like wages, salaries, defense services expenditure. All of them are revenue expenditure, means they are not creating any asset. Whereas capital expenditure are all those kinds of expenditure which are creating asset, which are creating infrastructure. Okay, so all the expenditure like on highways, on railways, all that will be included in the capital expenditure. Whereas the expenditure on wages, salaries, pensions, all of them will be included in the revenue expenditure. So revenue expenditure have gone down from 15.6% of GDP in financial year 21 to 13.5% of GDP in financial year 22. This is also showing us the improved revenue position or fiscal sanity that is coming in the government finances. Why? Because drop down in the revenue expenditure means increase in the quality of expenditure. Means you are reducing your expenditure which are not creating assets, whereas you are increasing your expenditure on all those heads which are creating assets. So decrease in the revenue expenditure also means increase in the quality of expenditure. And this has mainly been led by the reduction in subsidies, because during the time of COVID pandemic there was a huge increase in subsidies because we went for expansionary fiscal policy. But after the effects of COVID were getting receded, we started reducing this particular expenditure on subsidies, and thereby our revenue expenditure also started going down. Now the next point, combined fiscal deficit of the state have decreased to 2.8% of GDP in financial year 2022 from 4.1% in financial year 2021. Then that is a huge drawdown. If you look at, means from 4.1% it is reducing to 2.8% in just one financial year. That is also telling us that this improved revenue position and this revenue relish is not only being enjoyed by the central government, but also the state government are enjoying it and are contributing to it by reducing their combined fiscal deficit. Now this fiscal deficit and the concepts regarding fiscal deficit in this financial deficit we'll be discussing when we'll be discussing the deficit position of the government and the government finances. But for the time being, you can take this figure. It has reduced from 4.1 to 2.8% within a year. Now let's look into the major items of revenue expenditure by union government. If you look at revenue expenditure, salaries, pensions, interest payments, major subsidies, civil services, all of them are showing the revenue expenditure. These are the major items of the revenue expenditure, and you will see that from 32.01 it has reduced to 31.95 lakh crore. So that shows that the revenue expenditure is going down even in absolute terms. Okay, even in absolute terms when the effects of inflation is also there. So it should have increased, but it is going down even in absolute terms. That means government is doing very well in reducing its revenue expenditure. Now from this chart only, another key takeaway can be that you can identify that kind of revenue expenditure which is the largest one, and that is interest payment. See, interest payment 9.41 lakh crore is much higher than all other revenue expenditure in all the years. From 18 to 23, you see that interest payment will be much higher, and it is always higher in case of India. So interest payment maximum. Can you see the expenditure from the revenue expenditure point of view? Now let's look into the capital expenditure. Capital expenditure, I have already told you all those kinds of expenditure which are done for the creation of assets, especially infrastructure assets, which will increase the productive potential of the economy, means longer term potential growth of the economy. So they have steadily increased to 2.5% of GDP in financial year 2022 from 1.7% of the GDP, average 1.7% of the last decade of financial year 9 to financial year 20. And in the first chapter of the economic survey, we discussed, and we also discussed one question, the practice question, that capital expenditure the last 5 years have doubled in case of India. Now this point is also telling you the same thing, but the time periods are different. So they are saying it has steadily increased to 2.5% of GDP in financial year 2022 from 1.7%, which was the average of the last decade of financial year 9 to 20. Announcement by the center to boost state capex. Now why the capital expenditure is increasing? Because the central government is giving major push for infrastructure creation, not only at its own level, but also at the level of the states. So central government is providing states with 50-year interest-free loans for various capital expenditure requirement, various capex capital expenditure requirement. And this was in this budget, in budget of 23, that is 23-24, was increased by 1 more year. So interest-free loans is being provided to the states to go for capital expenditure, and emphasis on capital expenditure infrastructure sectors there, like roads, highways, railways, because government thinks that it will be able to increase potential growth of the economy through investment in these particular sectors. Also, the cost of the economy, cost of doing business in the economy will also reduce, competitiveness will increase, and thereby long-term productivity will be there in the economy if we go for higher capital expenditure, especially in these particular infrastructure-intensive sectors. So that is the idea of the capital expenditure. So reduction in the revenue expenditure, increase in the capital expenditure tells us that the quality of expenditure is increasing, revenues are increasing, and whatever expenditures you are doing, the quality is also increasing. So it's a win-win situation for the government. Now let's look into the details of the scheme for spatial assistance to state for capital investment for financial year 23. Means interest-free loans, the scheme which I was mentioning, that interest-free loans are provided to states for various schemes if they are investing in the infrastructure, for they are going for capital expenditure. So for example, PM Gati Shakti, Pradhan Mantri Gram Jyoti Yojana, for digitalization, for laying optical fiber cable, for urban reforms, for distribution modernization, various sectors are there, and various amounts which I allocated, approved, and released have been given. Now this amount is not important. This schemes are important. Means spatial assistance to states that are given for capital expenditure. For them, these are the various schemes under which money is allocated. That is what is important.
Let's look into the deficit position. We have seen the revenue position of the government and the expenditure position of the government, means how the revenues are increasing. Expenditures, if at all, they are either being contained, and whatever expenditures are there, the quality is improving. That is something which is very good for the government finances. Now let's look at the deficit position, because I go to explain to you that the government is not run like a family. Means just like in the family, firstly we'll identify sources of income or adequacy of income, and then only we'll see whether we'll go for the expenditure or not. But when the government has explained, firstly we'll target the expenditure, and then we'll scramble and look for the various sources of income. And if we are not able to find adequate sources, we'll start disinvesting. Okay, so that is how governments across the world are run. Now before starting deficit position, let's get into some of the basics regarding deficits. Okay, now deficit. Now what is the meaning of deficit? If you look at the deficit, I told you there's something called receipts, and there's something called expenditure. Okay, it's something called receipts means government has receipts, and government is also incurring expenditure. I told you that expenditures are usually higher than the receipt, because government is not running a where household is run, where receipts are usually higher than expenditure. That's why you say that households are savers in case of India. Households are savers because their receipts are usually higher than expenditure, whereas the government expenditures are higher than the receipt. And this wedge, this difference between the expenditure and receipt is called deficit. Now, which all expenditure will take and which all receipt will take will tell us about the nature of the deficit or the kind of deficit. So, for example, if total receipts, TR, total receipts, revenue receipts, and capital receipts, we saw in the budget, in the description
question about or when I was telling you about the basics of the budget, there was total receipt, there was revenue account and capital account. Within the revenue capital account was revenue receipt, within the capital account was capital receipt. So if revenue receipts and capital receipts both are combined, that becomes total receipt. So total receipt is revenue receipt plus capital receipt. If you subtract that from total expenditure is revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure. The kind of deficit we'll get will be called budget deficit. Budget deficit. Earlier, in a budget document, we were reporting budget deficit. But later on, we have started reporting fiscal deficit. Now, budget deficit is not reported in budget document. What is reported is fiscal deficit. And how fiscal deficit is different from budget deficit? In fiscal deficit, what we'll do, we will include only those receipts which are non-debt creating. Okay, so this is how the concepts which we discussed earlier are being implemented right now, are being used right now. So in fiscal deficit, we will include only those receipts, only those are. I'm not saying revenue receipt, capital receipt. I'm saying only those receipts which will be non-debt creating. Now, what all receipts are non-debt creating? I explained you there that revenue receipts are non-debt creating. All revenue receipts are non-debt creating. We don't have any obligation to pay back. And the part of capital receipts, which were non-debt creating capital receipts, like recovery of loans, like investment proceeds, are non-debt creating. So if we sum up revenue receipts plus non-debt capital receipts for the fiscal deficit perspective, that will form the receipt, and subtract that from expenditure total expenditure. The amount of the difference or the wedge that we'll get will be fiscal deficit. Now, there's also something called gross fiscal deficit and net fiscal deficit. Gross fiscal deficit means, now let's understand net fiscal deficit. Net fiscal deficit is gross fiscal deficit minus all lendings given by the government, because government also gives loans. So if we minus all of those loans from gross fiscal deficit, then it becomes net fiscal deficit. Okay, so this fiscal deficit is gross fiscal deficit, and net fiscal deficit will arrive by subtracting all lendings given by the government from the gross fiscal deficit. Or you can say gross fiscal deficit is equal to net fiscal deficit. Bring this side to this left side. That is gross fiscal deficit is equal to net fiscal deficit plus all lendings given by the government. Either way you like, the meaning will be same. Okay, then there is something called primary deficit. That is gross fiscal deficit (GFD) minus interest payments on previous deficits or debt, you can say. Now, the difference between deficit and debt, I'll tell you. But you can write here that gross fiscal deficit minus interest payments on all the debt or all the borrowings which we have taken earlier, that will give us primary deficit. So primary deficit in a way will show us only the amount of deficit that is being incurred in this particular year. Okay, because it has subtracted all the interest payments that we were obligated to pay for our previous deficits. So primary deficit is a pure form of fiscal deficit. In a way we can say that because it has subtracted all those kinds of interest payment which we were supposed to pay on a previous deficit or previous debt. Okay, so these are the various kinds of deficit. Budget deficit, we don't use it now. Fiscal deficit, we use it now. Then net fiscal deficit, gross fiscal deficit, you know the difference, and then the primary deficit. Now, these are the various kinds of deficit. Now, if government has to incur the deficit, for example, fiscal deficit itself. Fiscal deficit, another way of looking, this is that fiscal deficit tells us about the amount of borrowing. So fiscal deficit is also equal to the borrowing which the government has to take. So for example, if fiscal deficit is 3% of GDP, that also means government will have to borrow 3% of GDP for this particular year to manage its finances. Now, how government borrow this and how government incur fiscal deficit will be a very significant event because it will be impacting economy differently. So for example, government can go for domestic borrowing and government can also go for external borrowing. External borrowing. That is, government can either borrow domestically in its own currency, for example, in India, INR, or government can go for external borrowing, can borrow in external currency, for example, in dollars. Now, within the domestic territory or domestic borrowing, government can borrow either from having more reserve requirements for bank. So, for example, in money and banking, you must have read that there is something called SLR, statutory liquidity ratio, a portion of the deposit. These banks have to keep as SLR. So that is nothing but a kind of reserve requirement. So if government increases that reserve requirement, because SLR will be kept in eligible government securities, or various kinds of security which are said to be eligible by the Reserve Bank of India, and mostly they are government security only. So if the reserve requirements are increased by the government, or by the RBI, because government wants them to increase, so that is one way in which government can borrow. So these are the various kinds of deficits. Now let's look into the trends in the fiscal and the primary deficit. We already know the basic about the fiscal and the primary deficit. Now let's look into the trends of them. So one is conservative budget estimates provided by the already told how conservative budget estimates were helping in improving the revenue position of the government and improving the fiscal deficit and the primary deficit of the government. We'll see how they have improved that. It has been possible because of better non-debt receipts. So non-debt receipts in India have improved, especially when I say non-debt receipts means all revenue receipts plus non-debt capital receipt NDCR. So revenue receipts and non-debt capital receipts, they say that non-debt capital receipts have been more than 4 lakh crore in the last 8 years. Okay, so they have been improving in the case of India and has thereby resulted in better fiscal deficit and better primary deficit position of the government. Revenue tax, both direct taxes like income tax and indirect tax like GST, customs and excise duties and non-tax revenue position has also improved. We have already seen the chart related to this particular point that how revenue, especially tax position in India, or tax revenue position in India has improved. So both of that, conservative budget estimate and increase in the tax position of the government, especially due to better performance of the non-debt receipt, both NDCR and revenue receipt have aided in the better fiscal deficit and the primary deficit position of the government finances. So let's look into the trends in the union government deficit over the years. On the way to fiscal consolidation is we are going for fiscal consolidation, we are going for robust fiscal performance. That is what this chart is actually telling us. So percentage of GDP in the y-axis and this fiscal deficit with this orange one and this yellow one primary deficit, we'll see that how fiscal deficit, which was 3.5% of GDP in the financial year of 18, dipped to 3.4 in 19, then it started increasing in 20 because COVID was already there or on the doors there, and then it peaked to 9.2% in 21. And later on, from 2022, we started consolidating, we started improving our revenue position. That we have seen how in the last 2 years we have been improving, and 6.7 and then to 6.4 in the budget estimate of 23. Similarly, primary deficit was 0.4 and 0.4 in both financial year 18 and 19 as a percentage of GDP we are talking about. Okay, and then it went to 1.6, peaked to 5.7%, again owing to the COVID pandemic, then consolidating to 3.3% and then to 2.8%. So both fiscal deficit and the primary deficit consolidating now are improving. Okay, so that is the key takeaway. You should know the trend of the fiscal deficit and the primary deficit because these trend-based questions are usually asked in the UPSC prelims examination. So we should know how the fiscal deficit and the primary deficit, especially in terms of trends, how they are behaving, whether they have consistently increased or consistently decreased in the last 4-5 years. That we should know. So let's now look at the debt profile of the government. You have seen the revenue position of the government, you have seen the deficit position of the government. Now we'll look at the debt profile of the government. Again, let's start this discussion by first telling a basic about the debt. And here only I'll tell you what the difference between debt and deficit. Now, earlier we read about deficit. Now we will read about debt. What the economic survey tells us about the debt of the government. Now, the basic difference between the debt and the deficit is deficit is a flow variable. It is for this particular year how much deficit we have incurred. Whereas when these deficits are accumulated over the year, so debt is a stock variable. So deficit is a flow variable. Debt is a stock variable. That is nothing but a deficit of previous years that have only been accumulated and become our debt. So deficit is related to debt. That we are very clear now. Now let's look into the debt. Now there are various kinds of debt. Debt can be broadly classified into internal debt. In case of India, I'm talking about internal debt and external debt. Now again, internal debt is something which is incurred within the domestic activity within the country in INR, in Indian currency. External debt in foreign currency. Okay. Now internal debt is further divided into public debt. Public debt is all those kinds of debt which is contracted against consolidated fund of India, CFI, which is contracted against consolidated fund of India. That is something which is given under Article 292 of the Constitution. Means all those kinds of guarantees, whenever they are against consolidated fund of India, then they become public debt. So this is a way of defining public debt. Okay. Public debt is those kind of debt, or public debt is those debt which is contracted against consolidated fund of India, for which consolidated fund of India is acting as a guarantee or a collateral. Then there is debt on account of public account. So in public account we usually have national small saving fund, provident fund, and other liabilities. Various heads are there. Mainly national small saving fund, provident fund, all small saving schemes, money go into the public account only. Okay. Then we have EBRs, extra budgetary resources. Now this extra budgetary resources is interesting. EBRs, extra budgetary resources. Let me write completely extra budgetary resources. EBR. Now this is interesting in the sense that this was used as a tool by the government till very recently. In the last year, they are somewhere shy of using this tool, but no one knows that when they will again start using this tool. Now this is a tool which is used by the government to raise more money in the market to increase its debt without reporting it into the budget documents. So what usually happens in extra budgetary resources is that government borrows money, not directly, but through its entities like you can say Food Corporation of India, ONGC, or other oil marketing companies. So they will ask these kinds of public sector entities to borrow money on behalf of the government. But what they say that the interest and the principal for these kind of borrowing we will pay through union budget, but we will not report these borrowing as debt in the union budget or while calculating our levels or the magnitude of fiscal deficit. We will not report these borrowing. Okay, these borrowing will be reported in your accounts, in your respective account. For example, if FCI has borrowed, then in their assets or liabilities, these will be reported. It will not be reported into the balance sheet of the government or the budget of the government, but we will be giving the interest and the principal amount we will give you back later on. Okay, through budget only. So this was a way which was used by the government to increase its debt level without reporting it. So people were questioning the government that though you are increasing the debt but not reporting it, the other way of saying this is that your fiscal deficit is not qualitative measure of government finances. So your fiscal deficit is not a qualitative measure of government finances. Why? Because fiscal deficit has excluded these borrowing. So fiscal deficit is not showing the real position or real financial position of the government. That is what the extra budgetary resources are. So if you look at the debt, total debt can be internal debt and external debt. Internal debt can be public debt, public account, debt on public account, or obligation of the government, public account. Extra budgetary resources. Now since the last financial year, government is trying to report transparently all these extra budgetary resources in the budget document only. Okay, and then external debt, which is based in foreign currency. So this is the basic about debt. But there is another concept. If you have to understand the slides which are given in this particular chapter's discussion, and also the reasoning and thinking which is being given or being explained in the economic survey, you have to understand one more concept, and that is the concept of debt sustainability. That is debt sustainability. So we have seen debt is various types, internal, external, and internal debt, public debt, debt on public account, and extra budgetary resources. Mainly, these are the three types of internal debt, and there is external debt. But there is also an issue of debt sustainability, and that is the issue means whether whatever the amount of debt is there on the government account. Okay, means the debt is the government is having, whether that is sustainable or not, whether the government in long term will be able to pay back that debt or not. That is also an issue. Because that should be sustainable. We should not be in a position that we are borrowing that amount that we are not able to, or you will not be able to give it back. Okay, so it should be at somewhere at a logical level. So we have to rationalize levels of debt. So when we look into the debt sustainability, we look into various parameters. So debt sustainability can be measured through various parameters, and these parameters are number one, debt levels. So first one will be debt levels. So for example, what is the level of the debt as a percentage of GDP? If it is very high, that means your debt is not sustainable. If it is low, that means your debt is very sustainable. Okay, so one is debt level. Second is maturity profile. So for example, if your debt is going to get matured the next day, definitely you will be in a very precarious situation, in a risky situation. But if your debt is going to get matured after 10 years or after 30 years, then you will be in a better position. So longer the maturity of the debt, the better the position of the person who has incurred that debt is. Okay. Third is whether you are externally borrowed or internally borrowed. So if you are borrowed externally more, that means you are at risk from exchange rate. So for example, if India borrows 100 billion US dollar, okay, India borrows 100 billion US dollar, and today rupee dollar exchange rate is 80. So India has borrowed at this exchange rate from US 100 billion US dollar. Now suppose at the time of the maturity it is 90 to $1. Exchange rate is 90 to $1. So government of India will have to pay more money to do away with this 100 billion US dollar debt. Okay, so that is the exchange rate risk. That is the exchange rate risk that is associated with the external borrowing. That is why any government tries to reduce external borrowing and go more for internal borrowing or raising of internal debt in its debt profile or total debt. So if external borrowing is less or if internal borrowing is more, that is said to be sustainable. If maturity profile is more elongated, is longer, then that is said to be more sustainable. And if debt levels are at comfortable level as a percentage of GDP, then also that is said to be sustainable. So with this basic in mind, this background information regarding debt, various kinds of debt, and debt sustainability, now let's look into the debt profile of the government. Let's look into this slide. So it is saying that there is increase in debt level of the government, and definitely it was there. There was increase in debt level of the government during the pandemic time, and even today, debt levels are higher than what they used to be before pandemic. But still, if you see, debt levels are consolidating, they are coming down. So our position from the debt perspective also is improving. So internal debt is higher than the external debt in India, and that has reduced the currency risk. So that is the point that I was trying to explain you when I was explaining the debt sustainability, that when there is more external debt, debt becomes unsustainable because there is a kind of currency risk that is involved. But in case of India, and this is a very important point, from the business perspective, internal debt is is internal liability, and less than 5% is external debt. So in India, we are in a comfortable position from the perspective of having higher internal debt as compared to external debt. Average maturity of outstanding debt has increased over the years. That is, maturity has elongated over the years, and if maturity has increased over the years, it also means our debt has become more sustainable. Debt is now more sustainable. Okay, that is also one of the parameters to assess the debt sustainability. So you'll see the elongation of the maturity profile of the outstanding debt in government security. You'll see that how for 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 to 20 years, and 20 years and above, that how the maturity profile have been elongating in case of India, in case of government security. Now, let's look into the third point. Fixed rate debt is higher than the floating interest rate debt, and that has also reduced the rollover risk. So one of the other parameters of assessing the debt sustainability can be whether your fixed rate debt means debt at a fixed interest rate is higher than the debt at a floating interest rate. Floating interest rate. If debt at a fixed rate is higher than the debt at a floating rate, means your debt is more sustainable because you have less of uncertainty. Because you have less of uncertainty in the fixed rate debt. So, for example, if interest rate is today 5%, when you borrow $100 million, and you have borrowed at floating interest rate, and tomorrow suppose it becomes 8%, then definitely your liability has increased. That's why floating interest rate debt do not go hand in hand with the sustainability of the debt. So fixed rate debt, where if your interest rate is 5%, you know for the next 30 years, for which I have taken a loan, I have borrowed money, I have to pay 5% only. This is certainty. That's why it's an important parameter of the debt sustainability. Now, one other important parameter of debt sustainability can be the cost. Okay, whether from this point of view you can see the cost of the debt. So, for example, if the cost of incurring debt is higher than the growth rate in the economy, because we are looking from the economic perspective. So, for example, government has borrowed $100 billion from US only, suppose. Okay, government has borrowed $100 billion. Government is saying that we are going to invest this money in infrastructure. So, in infrastructure, the multiplier in India is 4. So, for example, if you put 1 rupee in infrastructure, you will get rupees 4 as return. Okay, so the multiplier for infrastructure in India is 4. So, government thinks and borrowed $100 billion, and government said that we will be investing this much amount of money in infrastructure. The government knows that infrastructure multiplier is 4. Now, suppose this debt is coming at the cost. Cost means interest rate of just 4%. Suppose it is coming just at the interest rate of 4%, and government thinks that the return we will be getting over the next 10 years by investing this much amount of money will be 8%. That is, our economy by investing this much amount of money in infrastructure will be growing at 8%. So, growth rate in the economy is 8%, whereas the interest cost is just 4%. So, growth rate is higher than the interest cost. So, we can see growth, interest, differential is positive. That is, growth rate minus interest rate is positive. 8% minus 4% is equal to plus 4%, positive 4%. Then, if growth interest differential is positive, then we can say that debt is sustainable, and we should go for such kind of debt. Okay, whenever the growth interest differential is positive, we should go for such kind of debt because the economy is performing well because of the investment that is being done through that particular amount of debt, and the interest rate for that debt is lower than the growth rate in the economy. So that is another factor, another parameter of assessing the sustainability of the debt. Now let's look into this figure. It is telling us that moderate union government debt to GDP ratio after pandemic spike, during pandemic, debt to GDP ratio increased when seen from the perspective of union government only. Okay, here we are not seeing from the perspective of general government. General government is both central and state government. Here we are looking at from the perspective of only union government of the central government. So debt to GDP ratio was somewhere around more than 60% in financial year 4, and then it gives us that it decreased, then increased, then decreased, then increased, then decreased. So it has been inconsistent from financial year 4, fiscal year 2004. It has been inconsistent, and then moving plateaued, then again decreased, and then spiked during the time of COVID pandemic, and then now it is getting consolidated from 9.2% of GDP. It is now reducing to 56.7% of GDP, and this will come down over time as there is improved fiscal consolidation or improved fiscal position of the government. So debt to GDP ratio from the union government perspective will also come down over time. Now we will look at the last figure, which is related to debt only. So this figure you see is mentioned as well in the economic survey only. General government liabilities to GDP ratio come of their peak again in financial year 21, financial year 21, for financial year 2021. General government debt peak. Later on, it reduced. That is what they are trying to show through this figure. Now this figure mainly relates to general government debt. Earlier one was with respect to union government only or central government only. Now we are discussing the debt or the liabilities of both the center plus state government, and that is only the general government. General government. Okay. So from financial year 15 or fiscal year 15 till fiscal year 2023, they have given us the data as a percentage of GDP. They have shown how yellow one outstanding liabilities of general government are behaving, there's blue one how gross fiscal deficit has been behaving, and there's green one how gross revenue deficit have been behaving. Now I have not told you the concept of revenue deficit. Revenue deficit is nothing but revenue receipts minus revenue expenditure. Okay. So if you subtract revenue expenditure from revenue receipts, you will get the revenue deficit. So it tells us that if you look at this debt position of outstanding liabilities of the general government, it was 66.6% in fiscal year 15. From that it increased 68.5%, then it peaked to 89.6%, almost 90% of the GDP, and later on it reduced, and then it has slightly increased to 86.5%. Okay, so general government liabilities peaked during the COVID time, and the reason is the same because COVID pandemic was there. Pandemic hit the economy. Economy was not able to perform very well. In fact, economy contracted. Revenue sources were hit, whereas government was forced to go for expansion fiscal policy. If revenue is hit, expenditures are increasing through expansion fiscal policy. Definitely debt will increase, and that is what we are seeing in financial year 21, where the debt levels reached to 90% of the GDP for the general government. Again, gross fiscal deficit. We are solving gross fiscal deficit and net fiscal deficit concept, and the difference between these two concepts. So gross fiscal deficit you see is also peaking during this time, and then it is again coming back or consolidating or improving. Then gross revenue deficit is also peaking during this time, and then it is again consolidating and improving. Okay, so you should have in your mind these broad trends because they can be important for the prelims examination. Okay, so this was the discussion with respect to the fiscal position of the government. So we are seeing various fiscal development in the government. We are seeing how revenue behaved. We are seeing how revenues were increased or augmented during this particular time, especially in the last 2 years after we were able to recover from the COVID pandemic. How expenditures are improving in terms of quality, how deficits are behaving various kinds of deficit, and how our debt profile is positioned at. Okay, so we have seen the various kinds of fiscal parameters. We have assessed the performance of the fiscal parameters from various angles. So that was the discussion with respect to this chapter. So we'll meet again in another video with the next chapter, that is chapter 4. of the economic survey. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome back to our discussion on Economic Survey 2022-23. Now we'll be starting our discussion with chapter 4. Now let's look into the title of the chapter 4. Now chapter 4 is titled as Monetary Management and Financial Intermediation. So in this particular chapter, we'll be discussing the topics like the performance of the monetary policy in the last 1 or 2 years, the performance of the banking sector, the performance of non-banking sector, the performance of insolvency resolution in case of India. Now banking sector, non-banking sector, and their performance is very much interlinked with the performance of insolvency resolution. And the performance of banking, non-banking, insolvency resolution very much tells us about the performance of the monetary policy. So all of these are interlinked. Then we'll be also looking into the performance of the capital market, both primary and secondary, how they perform. And finally, we'll be looking into the sectoral performance of insurance sector and pension sector. So this is how we'll be dealing with this particular chapter, and we'll be looking at the important information that is given around these many topics or these many sectors which I have told you mentioned. So let's start with the first slide. Let's see what are the monetary conditions, or what are the monetary conditions at the time of the last financial year. Now, you already know the basic, you already know the context, you already know the story that was prevailing in the last 1 or 2 years. So two most important events were one, COVID pandemic, and another Russian-Ukraine war. So COVID pandemic was there. Due to pandemic, there was a technical lockdown. Economic activity abruptly came to a standstill, and growth slowdown was there. So whenever growth goes down, central banks, all governments go for expansionary policy. So government go for expansionary fiscal policy, which we've already seen in the last chapter, and central banks will go for expansionary monetary policy, which we'll be looking into in this chapter. So expansionary monetary policy was adopted across the world. They went for increasing money supply in the economy, they went for reducing interest rate. That is the meaning of expansionary monetary policy. Means whenever you increase money supply, reduce interest rate, that is the practical meaning of expansionary monetary policy. So this was something which was in the RBI also. So RBI went for expansionary monetary policy, and when RBI went for expansionary monetary policy, what they found that this was leading to inflation. Now, there are two most important things which RBI has to target as per the monetary policy framework agreement, which is signed between the government and the RBI. It says that RBI has a primary mandate to target inflation, but has also to be cognizant of the growth concerns. So they cannot negate growth concerns. So any central bank and RBI have to target inflation, contain inflation, and also to be aware of growth. So by targeting inflation, they cannot sacrifice growth. They have to take both of them together. Now, both inflation and growth are antagonistic. Means they are both in a way somewhere anti to each other. So, for example, when there was a growth slowdown in Indian economy also, during COVID pandemic, so what was the response of the RBI? The response was to reduce interest rates or increase money supply. So as to tackle the growth slowdown in the economy, because if you go for reduction in interest rate or increase in the money supply, more money will be available in the economy. The cost of doing business will go down. People will, or business participants will increase investment. If investment will increase, more productive activity will take place, and more economic growth will take place. So following expansionary monetary policy, reduction in interest rate or increase in money supply will lead to increasing growth. But we also know that if money supply will increase in the economy, it will also stoke inflation. It will stoke inflation, or it will lead to inflation. So concerning or being concerned about growth also means giving some of a push to inflation. So both of them are anti to each other. And RBI's main mandate is to balance these both concerns. Now, RBI during COVID pandemic went for expansionary monetary policy, and also inflation was there over time. And over time, we saw that COVID pandemics and its effect were subdued, and we were able to get into the recovery phase. Now they are saying we have completely recovered. So we were able to get some sort of recovery. And later on top of that, there was Russia-Ukraine war. And Russia-Ukraine war also acted as a fuel to this inflation by increasing commodity prices. So it complemented the already increased inflation in the economy. So now RBI thought that we need to change that strategy, and we'll have to tackle inflation at a much faster pace. We'll have to put inflation as a first priority rather than growth, because growth is already coming. We are already on the phase of recovery. So now we have to focus inflation mode. So RBI started the process of increasing interest rates or reduction in money supply. So whatever money supply they already provided in the economy, the excess money supply, they started to suck it. They started to remove it. So that was something which RBI adopted as a strategy. And this is nothing but I have already told you, the process of monetary tightening. Tightening means you are increasing the interest rate. You are reducing the liquidity in the economy. You are reducing the money supply in the economy. That is called monetary tightening. Okay. So RBI went for monetary tightening. Now we know that RBI has various tools of monetary policy, and these tools we have studied are categorized into quantitative tool or qualitative tool. So quantitative tool like CRR, cash reserve ratio, is percentage of your net demand time liability, percentage of net demand time liability of commercial bank, which they have to keep with RBI in form of cash. Then SLR, a certain percentage of their net demand time liability, which they have to invest in the securities which are being given as eligible securities. That is SLR. Then there is repo rate, which is a policy rate. That means every other rate is linked to the repo rate. So repo rate is the rate at which the RBI gives money to the central bank, or the rate at which RBI injects liquidity in the system. That's another way of saying repo rate. That's another way of explaining repo rate. The rate at which RBI injects liquidity into the system, because it is the rate at which the RBI is giving money or lending money to the commercial bank. That is the repo rate. And the reverse of this is reverse repo rate. That is the rate at which the commercial banks park their excess liquidity with the RBI. Or you can also say the rate at which commercial bank lends money to the RBI. But usually RBI don't borrow money from commercial bank. It is the commercial banks which are having excess liquidity, they park it with the RBI instead of lending it. That is what the practical aspect of reverse repo rate is. Okay, so this is repo rate, this is reverse repo rate, this is CRR, this is SLR. Then there is something called MSF. That is marginal standing facility. Now it is a panel rate. It is a rate which is higher than the repo rate. So it is a rate at which commercial bank takes money from the RBI, but they take money from the RBI only when their collateral, their banking collateral have been exhausted. So whenever someone gives money to you or you borrow money from someone, they will always ask for some collateral. So it is also the same case with the RBI and banks. So whenever they are lending money to each other, they have a provision of putting something, some securities as pledge, pledging some securities as collateral. Okay, now if they have the security enough, they can borrow money from the RBI at repo rate. If the securities are already exhausted, then they can take money from the RBI at a much higher rate than the repo rate through the MSF window. That is marginal standing facility window, and that can be only 3% of their net demand time
liability. And what are the securities? Securities are required for MSF also. But what are the securities that are required for MSF marginal standing facility? The securities that will be required will be the SLR securities. Means they can put the SLR securities. That is statutory liquidity ratio securities as a pledge while taking money under MSF window. Now, this whole thing I'm telling you because it has context. Now the context is that we were somewhere that where the RBI decided that it will be changing our strategy and will be now sucking the excess liquidity. But when RBI will be sucking the excess liquidity, for that, the practical aspect of that is means commercial bank will be keeping their excess money with the RBI now. But for that, RBI needs some securities to put as a pledge or to put as a collateral. But there is so much excess liquidity in the economy that RBI is short of the collateral. RBI is short of the securities that it can put as a collateral. So RBI needs something, some instrument which can be used without collateral. So what I told you that if RBI has to inject liquidity, it will use repo rate. If RBI has to suck liquidity, then it will use reverse repo rate because reverse repo rate is the rate at which banks keep their surplus liquidity with the RBI. But for reverse repo rate and repo rate, we need collaterals. We need securities. Even for MSF, we need securities. So these tools RBI cannot use. MSF and repo rate anyway is for injecting liquidity, and we have to suck liquidity, so we can use reverse repo rate. But for reverse repo rate, RBI needs securities to put as pledge, to put as collateral. But RBI does not have that many securities to be put as collateral because there is too much liquidity, and for sucking that much liquidity, we need large number of securities, which RBI is not having. So what RBI did? RBI used something called standing deposit facility. The standing deposit facility is nothing but conceptually, at some level, it is reverse repo rate only because it is also used for sucking the liquidity out of the system, sucking the liquidity out of the economy. But the thing is, here they will not be using any collateral, so it is free from collateral, and that's why RBI uses standing deposit facility this time. Now, standing deposit facility is not something which came during this time only. It is something which came in 2018 budget only. So 2018 budget, there was provision that was made for the standing deposit facility in the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. But this was used first time during the COVID pandemic and during the time when RBI wanted to suck excess liquidity. Okay, so that is the concept of standing deposit facility. So I hope that thing is clear, the story is clear. We have different quantitative multi-policy tools. These multi-policy tools usually work on the basis of collateral. RBI wanted to suck excess liquidity. RBI was not having that much collateral, that many securities, and therefore they went for standing deposit facility. Okay, now let's look into the slide. So inflation proved to be sticky, then transient. So initially, central banks, including RBI, was under the illusion that inflation will be a temporary phenomenon. But later on, we found that we provided too much of liquidity to the system, and then there was a Russia-Ukraine war because of this commodity prices spike, and then it translated into a broad-based inflation in the whole economy, and therefore inflation proved to be rather sticky, then temporary or transient. So they decided that we have to take some action, and this led to monetary tightening from most major central banks, including the Reserve Bank of India, which is the Central Bank of India. They used something called standing deposit facility, which was introduced as a tool in 2018, but this time was used to absorb both short-term and long-term liquidity from the system. And between May 2022 and December 2022, and over 5 meetings, the MPC implemented multi-policy committee implemented a cumulative hike of 225 basis points. That is 225 basis points means 2.25% increase in interest rate in the policy repo rate, the SDF, MSF, and the bank rate. So all of them were increased because repo rate was increased, and every other rate is linked to the repo rate. Okay, every other rate is linked to the repo rate because repo rate is a declared policy rate in case of India, and every other rate will be linked to the repo rate. So they increased it by 225 basis points between May and December. So this is how they opted for monetary tightening or contractual monetary policy to contain inflation. Now we have already looked into the monetary conditions of the economy. Now let's look into the banking sector. How banking sector performed in the last 1 year. So what they are saying that banking sector performance has improved. So improved banking sector performance has been there. Gross NPA has come down to 5% from 8.2% in 2020. Rather, this 5% is 7-year low. Now, gross NPA, I told you that means if you have to assess the performance of banking sector, non-banking sector, then on what parameters you can do? The parameters can be whether it is lending enough or not, because banks and non-banks or any financial institution have the major aim or major mandate to lend in the economy. So whether they are able to give credit in the economy or not, whether the credit is turning into NPA or not, if it is turning NPA, then it is within the manageable limit or not. And even if the NPA is within the manageable limit, or even if not within the manageable limit, then whatever NPA is there, whether that particular institution, if bank, then good, if not bank, or if non-bank, then whether that particular institution has capital enough to absorb those losses or not without busting. Okay. So firstly, whether enough credit is there or not, then NPAs are within manageable limit or not. If NPAs are not within manageable limit or even within manageable limit, then whether they have capital or money with them to absorb losses from NPA. So these are the 3 parameters which we have to see whether we have to assess the performance of the banking sector or non-banking sector like NBFC. And this is what we are looking into. That's why we are saying that gross NPA has come down to 5%, and this is something which is telling us about the improved banking sector performance. So gross NPA has come down. Now NPA, if you look at, there is something called asset, or rather, if you look at the balance sheet of bank, then there are assets and there are liabilities. In any commercial bank, deposit is a liability because they have to pay back debt. Okay, it is a commercial bank, and you have money in that commercial bank. Your money is a deposit, and that is a liability of that bank because you can come to the bank knocking that, yes, I need my money back. So that is a liability. Whereas loans, for example, act as an asset for the bank because in loans they earn interest income, and anything which is giving you income will be your asset. Now, whenever this loan is not performing, whenever the principal or interest payment or both are not coming back to the bank in this loan for 90 days, it becomes NPA. So asset can be NPA when for a minimum of 90 days your loan is not performing either on the basis of interest or on the basis of principal. Otherwise, this asset can be a standard asset. Now, the standard asset is something in which either principal or the interest is coming, means regularly coming, then it will be a regular asset, or interest or income is not coming but for less than 90 days, then it will be a stressed asset. Okay, so asset is there, standard asset, NPA for more than 90 days, your interest or income is not coming. Within the standard asset, there can be regular asset which is performing very well, no problem, and there is stressed asset which is almost leading to NPA but still not NPA. Okay, so this is the broad categorization. Now there is something called gross NPA, which is given here, and net NPA. Now gross NPA is total NPA. So for example, suppose total NPA is 100 crore for a bank, but out of its income or profit, they have put 20 crore and reduced this gross NPA to 80 crore because they think 20 crore out of this gross NPA is that but which is never going to come back. NPA that can be categorized into substandard asset, doubtful asset, and then lost asset. Now they think commercial bank thinks that 20 crore is lost asset, it's never going to come back. So that will form part of gross NPA. But if the commercial bank put 20 crore, means whatever the lost asset value was there, of that particular value, they have put out of their income or profit into this gross NPA and have reduced the value of gross NPA to 80 crore, then that becomes net NPA. Okay. So net NPA is gross NPA minus whatever provisions commercial bank has made for lost assets. So gross NPA has come down to 5% from 8.2% in 2020. Definitely net NPA would have come down further. Okay, so net NPA usually is less than gross NPA. Now this recovery is seen across sectors, means across various sectors. Agriculture, industry, services, the recovery is seen recovery in terms of reduction in the NPA levels. And non-food credit is growing double digits since April 2022. If you look at across sectors, so agriculture, gross NPA is 23%, industry 37%, services constitute NPAs, means out of total NPA 28% is coming from services, and out of total NPA 11.7% is coming from personal loan. Again, you'll say that in September 2022, it is much lower than it was in March 2021. So across sectors also, it is improving. Now after looking into the NPA levels and NPA performance, means how we are performing better in NPA levels. Now let's look into the performance of banking sector in terms of credit. So credit growth has picked up driving the virtuous cycle of investment growth, because if credit increases, investment increases, then productive activity increases or growth increases. So that is the virtuous cycle. Means if growth is there, then again employment will be there. People will have more income. People will demand more. The industry is putting that they have to increase their industrial capacity, and they will again come back to have higher credit. Then again this cycle will keep on going. So that is what they are saying, that credit growth has picked up driving the virtuous cycle of investment growth. Now this is the virtuous cycle of investment and growth. Capital adequacy ratio is also higher than the required norm. Means the capital that is there with the bank to absorb the losses from possible NPAs is much higher than what is required according to the norms. And norms are being set up under Basel guidelines or Basel norms. We have read something Basel 1, 2, and 3. Right now Basel 2 is under implementation, and we are going to implement Basel 3. And according to Basel guidelines, whatever capital adequacy is required for a sound banking sector, a banking sector is at a much higher level of capital adequacy ratio than whatever is required. Now let's look at the performance of banking sector in terms of credit first. So credit can be food credit and non-food credit. So this is how the data is coming from the Reserve Bank of India. So they categorize credit broadly under food and non-food. Now food credit is the credit that is given by the banks to agencies like Food Corporation of India. We know Food Corporation of India has very important paramount role in ensuring food security in the country. And to ensure this food security, they need some money, and they take credit from the commercial bank to go for their activities like procurement and distribution, and whatever credit is taken by them is categorized by the RBI under food credit category. And rest all the credit is non-food credit. It is a minor part of the total credit, and major part is non-food credit. Now if you look at the non-food credit growth, it is in double digits since April 2022. So y6% year on year, and x-axis months are given. So if you see that firstly it was somewhere around 13% non-food credit growth in April of 19, then it started going down and then plateaued, and then it started picking up from April 21. It started picking up a kind of uptick was seen in December 21, and after December 21 straight it was very steep increase, very steep high. So credit growth is increasing in case of India, non-food credit growth is increasing in case of India, though it has tapered a little, but again it is expected that it will go towards northern direction, that is it will increase only, and that also shows the improved banking sector performance. If you look at the broad-based growth in sectoral non-food credit, you'll see that sectorally also it is improving as compared to what we were in financial year 13. So financial year 13 to financial year 23, they have compared the sectoral growth in non-food credit, but they are coming to the conclusion is that whether it's agriculture, activity, or industry, or services, or personal, across the sectors, we are looking at the improved performance of non-food credit. So banking sector has performed well in terms of NPAs. Banking sector has performed well in terms of increased non-food credit across sector and overall also. And banking sector is performing well in terms of capital adequacy ratio. So let's look at the performance of banks in terms of capital adequacy ratio. If you look at the capital adequacy ratio, the idea of capital adequacy ratio is whether you have enough capital to sustain the possible losses out of your NPAs. Okay, so you have something called assets and you have something called capital. So if your assets are arranged in such a way that they are weighted according to their risk, weighted according to their risk. So for example, you have 3 assets, 3 loans. A commercial bank has made 3 loans, 100 rupees each. And there's a possibility that the loan 1, let's say loan 1, 2, 3. So loan we know are the assets for the commercial bank. Let's say the possibility of loan 1 of going NPA is 20%, that is 0.2. Of loan 2 is 0.1. Of loan 3 is 50%, that is 0.5. So what we'll do, we'll weigh these assets according to the risk. So there's a 20% risk that loan 1 can fail, 10% risk that loan 2 can fail, 50% risk that loan 3 can fail. So we will weight these assets according to the risk. We'll put that risk weighted assets. When we weight these assets according to the risk, they are called risk weighted assets. We'll put these risk weighted assets as denominator, and in numerator we'll put capital. Capital that is the money that is available to the bank to sustain the possible losses of these loans. That is, if there is these loans getting into the NPA, then whether banks have enough money to sustain these losses without going into the bankruptcy itself. Okay, that is what the idea of capital adequacy ratio is. This is the broad idea of capital adequacy ratio. Now, what the speaker is telling us is that capital adequacy ratio is well above the required norm. Means in India, the required norm is 12%. And this is something which is coming from Basel that I have already discussed. Now, in India, it is right now much above than this required norm. That is much above the 12% level across the banks, public sector banks, private sector banks, foreign banks, or civil commercial bank. And that is also telling us something about the robust performance of the banking sector. So we have seen banking sector is performing well in terms of credit growth, in terms of capital adequacy ratio, and in terms of lower NPAs. So banking sector overall, survey notes, is performing very well. Now let's look into the non-banking sector, especially NBFC, non-banking finance companies. Firstly, let's look at some basic. Means how banks are different from non-banks, or how non-banking financial companies are different from banks. Now, firstly, look into the name of this non-banking financial company. So definitely they are non-banking in nature, banking in nature means they do not have banking license. Second criteria means how they differ from banks is they cannot accept demand deposits. So deposits they can accept, but deposit which can be called by the depositor on demand, they cannot accept that. So deposit can be deposit can be demand deposit, DD, or time deposit. So time deposit they can accept, but demand deposit they cannot accept. They cannot issue checks. In fact, they are not part of payment and settlement system. Payment and settlement system. They are not part of payment and settlement system like banks are. Also, one other difference of non-bank or non-banking finance companies from bank is that banks are regulated under Banking Regulation Act, whereas non-banking, these are non-banking finance companies. So they are regulated under Companies Act, or they are registered under Companies Act. Now, if you look at these banks, banks are mainly regulated by RBI in India, but non-banks are regulated by multitude of agencies. Means there are some non-banking finance companies which are regulated by RBI. There are some non-banking finance companies which are regulated by SEBI. There are some non-banking financial companies which are regulated by PFRDA, Pension Fund Regulatory Authority. There are some which are regulated by Insurance Regulatory Authority of India. There are some which are regulated by Ministry of Corporate Affairs and CA. There are some which are regulated by state governments. So there is no homogeneity in terms of regulation in non-banking financial companies. So this is how broadly non-banking financial companies are different from banks. Now, the economic survey notes that these non-banking finance companies are performing very well. Now, it is important for our economy. These are performing well because if you look at banks in India, not everyone can go to bank, and banks are general institutions, whereas non-banking finance companies are very specialized institutions. So, for example, for housing sector, there are housing finance companies. For insurance sector, there are insurance companies. So, they are very specialized institutions. They know the nitty-gritties of those specialized sectors. So, if these non-banking finance companies are performing well, we can also assume that these sectors will also be performing well. So, if you look at the economic survey notes, that similar performance is seen in non-banking finance company sector also. Means NBFC sector is also performing as good as banking sector was performing. Their credit by NBFC and credit to NBFC both have increased. If you look at NBFC and banks, they are quite interlinked. If NBFCs are not performing well, it will later on reduce the performance of banks also. If banks are not performing well, it will somewhere impact the performance of NBFC also. And why so? Because NBFC are mainly relying on credit from banks. So if banks are not performing well, banks are not lending enough. So definitely the performance of NBFC will go down because later on NBFC then further lend to other economic participants. So they take lending from banks and further lend to other economic participants. And similarly, if NBFC's balance sheets are somewhere stressed, like it happened in 2018 when IL&FS financial crisis was there, infrastructure, leasing, and financial services, this was it. NBFC, and one of the largest NBFC, and its balance sheet was stressed. In fact, it was very close to busting. So it all spread, all contagion effects spread to banks, and banks were very stressed at that particular point in time. That if at all something bad happens to IL&FS, then definitely our performance will also get a hit. So this is how banks and NBFCs are interlinked. So if NBFCs are performing well, then we can assume that banks will also perform well, or at least NBFC should not perform very bad for banks to perform well. Now they are saying that credit by NBFC and credit to NBFC both have increased. Now let's look into this figure, which tells us something about credit by NBFC and credit to NBFC. Now, in y-axis, when we are looking into the credit by NBFC, which is given in orange bar graphs, this will be looking into from the perspective of rupees lakh crore. Means in rupees lakh crore, how much it has been increasing, and you'll see aggregate credit by NBFC has been consistently increasing. Credit by NBFC has been consistently increasing since financial year 13. Whereas credit to NBFC as a percentage of GDP, which is given in this right hand side, you'll see it has been increasing, but it has not been consistent. It has not been consistent, but still it's far improved than financial year 18. When we saw IL&FS financial crisis, infrastructure, leasing, and financial services crisis. Okay, so it has improved from that point in time, but still not performing as good as it should. So, for example, you'll see that in 20, it was at a peak. That is, as a percentage of GDP, credit to NBFC was higher in financial year 20, but later on it has reduced. So, when we see the NBFC performance in terms of aggregate credit that is disbursed by NBFC in rupees lakh crore, it is increasing. But the credit that is coming to NBFC has decreased in the recent years. Okay, that is the conclusion. So, definitely it's improved NBFC performance, but not absolute improvement is there. Okay, absolute improvement is not there because credit to NBFC has reduced in recent years. Now, after looking into the aggregate credit by NBFC and aggregate credit to NBFC, now let's look into the NPAs in NBFC. Now, what they are saying that gross NPAs have also gone down across sectors. So, across sectors, they are saying gross NPAs have reduced in NBFC. So, let's look into this figure, declining GNPA ratio, improving asset quality of NBFCs across sectors. So, in agriculture, industry, services, personal loans, others, and gross, you see that they have been consistently decreasing. And gross NPA in NBFC has consistently decreased from September 21 to March 22 to September 2022. So, here, absolute improvement is there when we see in terms of gross NPA and NBFC performance with respect to the gross NPA. Now, let's look what the economic survey tells about the insolvency resolution. Now, what is this insolvency resolution? Now, there are two words. One is insolvency and another is bankruptcy. Now, what is the meaning of these words like insolvency and bankruptcy? Suppose there is a particular project for which an industry has taken a loan. Suppose the project is A, and there is a bank which has given a loan to this particular project which belongs to this industry. Now, if this project is so big that if this project fails, then there will not be enough liquidity with this particular industrialist to pay back to the bank. Then we can say that industrialist has become insolvent. Insolvent means that industrialist or its financial position is not solvent enough to pay back money to the bank. Okay, so this industrialist is not having enough liquidity, enough money to pay back the bank. That is called the situation of insolvency. Means there is no solvent or solvent situation prevailing in this particular project. Whereas when this insolvency is declared by some institution or some authority, then it becomes bankruptcy. And if it is coming to the situation of bankruptcy, then they will have to either resolve this project, either revive this project by removing this particular industrialist who was owning this project earlier, or liquidate this project. So either resolve the project or asset, because that project is asset for bank. Either resolve that project, go for resolution, or go for liquidation. Resolution or reviving, anybody can use. Either revive that project or liquidate that project means sell all the assets. It's completely sell that project, shut down, wind down that project. Now, the first priority for any efficient resolution process is for reviving the project. That is the first priority. Means firstly, we should revive or try to find out option for reviving the project, because that will also bring benefits to the bank. So you will see that how the projects are linked to the bank, and it's based in context of India. So, for example, we know Indian financial sector is banking dominant, and within bank also public sector bank dominant. So most of the projects, especially the projects of long term or infrastructure projects, so mostly private sector bank shy for giving loan to these projects. So they will usually not be very willing to give loan to these projects which have higher risk, because infrastructure sector projects are for longer term, and whenever projects for longer term, it also bring in added risk. So they will usually shy away from giving loan to these particular projects. And then come public sector bank, PSBs, they are willing to give loans to these projects, because anyway they know that if at all project fails, if at all NPA increases, then also we have someone whose invisible hand is there, and that is the government, which can revive our financial situation later on. Means government will somehow bring capital and recapitalize these public sector banks, even if NPAs go high because of the increase in NPAs level, because of failure of any such project, any infrastructure project, or any project of long term nature. So they know that, and that's why they usually take risk. For good or bad reason, they take risk in lending to these kinds of projects. So you know that how the performance of this project is linked to the performance of banks. So banks also want that first thing should be reviving. Bank or any creditor, we want first we should try to revive the project, and if at all we are not able to revive the project, if at all the economic situation has changed so much that this project has lost its viability completely, then go for liquidation, sell off the assets. Okay, now what I was saying, that any insolvency resolution or any efficient insolvency resolution will always put priority on reviving of the projects and not on liquidation. In fact, what they have told us in this economic survey is that IBC has performed better than all pre-IBC insolvency resolution mechanisms. In fact, there were many insolvency resolution mechanisms, pre-IBC also, pre-insolvency bankruptcy code also. In fact, 1985, we started with something called SIC Industrial Companies Act, SIPA, under which we set up something called Board of Industrial Financial Reconstruction for resolution of insolvency resolution of public sector enterprises. Then in 1993, we had something called reduction of debt due to bank and financial institution, reduction of debt due to banks and financial institution, RDD, BFI, under which we set something called DRT, Debt Recovery Tribunal. Then in 2000, early 2002, we set up SARFAESI. We had SARFAESI Act, under which we brought ARC, Asset Reconstruction Company. Then in 2015, we brought in Insolvency Bankruptcy Code. In fact, in between these two bank 2002 and 2015, there are many other schemes like corporate debt restructuring, strategic debt restructuring, SOA scheme by RBI. So many others were there, but they were not performing very well. In IBC, what the economic survey tells us, IBC is performing very well as compared to all other pre-IBC schemes. In fact, if you look at Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, it's a very comprehensive approach to deal with insolvencies and bankruptcies. So it deals with corporate insolvency, also it deals with individual or partnership firms and their insolvencies. And it is a very elaborate process. Means if you any creditor, debtor, any stakeholder in that particular project in which they think that project will not be able to perform, they can go to the adjudicating authority, they can give the application for insolvency. If that authority thinks that yes, there is a valid concern, they can set up resolution professionals, these resolution professional agencies, then later on will set committee on creditors. This committee on creditor by some mechanism will come to the conclusion that whether we need to revive the project or we need to go for liquidation project. So let's look into what the economic survey tells us. It tells that of the total case of corporate insolvency resolution process, 67% have been closed. So this rate has been 67%. Sectorally also, 52% of ongoing corporate insolvency resolution process belong to the industry, followed by the service sector. So you look at the composition of CIR, your corporate insolvency resolution process, all the cases that are pending. Then industry comprises the highest, 52%, and it is followed by service sector. Within the industry, 74% are from manufacturing sector. So this kind of question tells, so out of the total cases, out of the total corporate insolvency cases, they can say that services have the highest share. No, it is industry. Within industry is manufacturing. After industry is service sector. The total amount recovered by commercial banks under IBC has been the highest compared to other channels such as local SARFAESI Act and Debt Recovery Tribunal in this period. So that point is showing that IBC is performing very well as compared to the IBC mechanism. So let's look into some data. This data is not important. There's the idea what this data is trying to tell us. So CIRP, corporate insolvency resolution process, 5893 cases were dismissed. Out of that, 3946 are already closed. 1947 cases are ongoing, and whichever cases are closed, 3946, some were settled at review level, some were settled by withdrawal, some were settled by liquidation, and some were settled through resolution plans. Okay, so liquidation has been higher than resolution in case of IBC mechanism, and out of total cases that have been closed. So liquidation is greater than resolution. That is not something which is good for the economy, especially for the insolvency resolution process. So in that sense, you can say it's not that efficient. But in terms of amount recovered, just look in terms of amount recovered. So 2017 data, 2018, 19, 20, 20, 21, 21, 22. This 5-year data is given. In fact, in 2017, 18, it was at a very nascent stage. It was just getting implemented. So we should actually look at the data from 2018, 19. Even if you look at 2017, 18, you'll see that for most of the years, IBC was performing better in terms of amount recovered by scheduled commercial bank. IBC was better than pre-IBC regimes. So 2017, 18, just 4926 crore, but from 2018, 19, 66,440 crore. You can look at the figures, other figures, figures to other mechanisms, local other DRT, SARFAESI. Then in 2019, 20, more than 1 lakh crore. 2020, 21, 27,311 crore. And then 21, 22, 47,421 crore, almost 70 to 80% more than the next one. That is Sarfazi Act, money recovered through Sarfazi Act. That is just 27,349 crore. So for most of the years, IBC has performed well than the pre-IBC schemes in terms of amount that is recovered by Scheduled Commercial Bank through various channels. Okay, so this shows that IBC is performing well, and insolvency resolution in India is also performing well. Let's look into the performance of the capital market in the recent year. In capital market, we have two kinds of divisions, primary and secondary. So if this is company C, it needs more capital. Suppose it is not having any shareholding. It is being owned by an individual. It wants to get into the market first time. It needs more capital. So it will go into the primary market first and go through a process called initial public offering, where it will be first time issuing the shares, and that is called initial public offering. Now, if it already has shares, suppose 10% of shares have already been sold. Now, if it wants more capital, then it will go through a process of FPO, follow-on public offer. Okay, so that is the difference between IPO and FPO. IPO is when first time the company is listed in the market. FPO is when the company is raising capital in the subsequent cycles. Okay, so first time it is IPO initial public offer, later it is FPO, follow-on public offer. And this IPO takes place in primary market, FPO also takes place in primary market. But once shares are traded, then these trading takes place in secondary market. And secondary market examples are NSEs, BSEs, New York Stock Exchange. All these are examples of secondary market where the trading is taking place. So there is something called primary market and secondary market, and we'll be looking into the performance of the economy in the capital market in both primary and secondary market. So when we are looking into the performance in the primary market, the performance can be gauged by parameters like how many companies have gone for IPO, what is the level of resources they have raised from the market when they are going for IPOs, and what is the composition, whether large companies are only going for IPOs or even small companies, small and medium enterprises are also going for IPO. Small and medium enterprises are also going for IPO means that is a good signal for the economy, means small companies will now be getting bigger ones. Okay, that is good for the economy, that is good for the economic growth of the country. And similarly, assessing the performance in the secondary market. Now let's first start with the primary market. So number of firms opting to list on the bourses and stock exchanges increased by 37%, though the amount raised declined to almost half. So number of firms which are listed or which were listed in the last 1 year were increased by 37%, but the amount they raised reduced to half. Okay, it's an important fact. So number of firms listing increased by 37%, the amount raised by them decreased by half. Number of SME, small and medium enterprises, coming with IPO almost doubled, but the total funds raised by them were almost 3 times. So overall, the fund raised through the IPO process reduced to half, but within that, the small and medium enterprises and the fund raised by them has been tripled. So what we can conclude from this? The conclusion can be that most of the funding raised through IPOs was by small and medium enterprises, and it's a good sign for the economic growth. Underactivity in public debt issuance more than compensated by private debt placement. So public debt reduced or was not very active, but private debt placements have increased, means that reduction in the public debt issuance was compensated by private debt placements. So let's look into the data, what the data tells us. So if you look at the equity section and then debt section, there can be two ways to raise resources. If companies wants to raise resources, they can either go for equity or they can go for debt. With equity, they can go for primary market, IPO, or they can also go for FPO. IPO is already conducted. So look into the equity section, IPO, right issues to IPs, preferential allotments, different sections have given, and look into debt, public debt, and private placement. So broad pointers will be the same. Let's ignore all these things. Let's just go for IPO and within equity. You'll see IPOs, number of issues in April number 21 and April number 2022 data is given. IPOs were 76 in 21. It was 104 in 22. Amount was 89,000, almost close to 90,000 crore in April number 21. Whereas in April number 22, it was 48,000, almost half. That is the point I was stressing, that though IPOs have increased, the amount raised has reduced by half. Whereas if you look at the debt section, you'll see public debt has reduced from 9,132 crore to 6,624 crore. Whereas private debt placement has increased, so it is compensated by the private debt placement. Okay, so this was a good year overall in the Indian capital market, and mainly because more IPOs were there. And within that IPO, the resources though were reduced to half, but the resources raised by small and medium enterprises were tripled. Now let's look into the performance of secondary market, please. Within the capital market, how secondary markets have performed. Now to look into the performance of the secondary market, to assess the performance of the secondary market, the best parameter is to look into the volatility. Volatility, that whether the prices of shares which are already listed in the secondary market are showing consistent performance, consistent increase, or they're quite volatile. So for example, if there is some stock exchange like this, where share prices are moving like this or like this, it shows that there is some kind of volatility, but that is quite muted, that's quite subdued. But if you have some stock market, some stock exchange, where the share prices are moving like this, then we can say or conclude that this is quite volatile. This is not something which is showing us that the stock market or secondary market is performing very well, or in fact, it is not performing well at all. Okay, so that shows the volatility in the share the volatility in the stock market. Now let's see what economic survey tells us about the performance of secondary market of India. So in secondary market, economic survey tells us India VIX. VIX is volatility index. Now it is an index which shows volatility in the Indian stock market, in the Indian secondary market. In India, it was first released by National Stock Exchange in 2011, whereas it was first released internationally by US by CBOE of US, Chicago Board Option Exchange. Okay, so it shows that whether or shows the level of volatility in the stock market for the next 30 days. Now, what the economic survey is telling us that India VIX is showing declining trend means volatility in India is declining. Volatility in India is getting muted. That is showing us the good performance of secondary market within the capital market because volatility is going down in the Indian secondary market. FPI says have moved out foreign portfolio investment. So we have something called foreign portfolio investment, foreign direct investment. Foreign portfolio investment is something as investment that is a kind of hot money which comes in the stock market, gets some gains, realize some gains, and then move out. So they do not have conceptually, they do not have any kind of long-term idea of investment. So they are not coming for long-term investment in any country. They are coming just to earn their profits. Whereas FDI are coming for long-term. They are quite stable, or at least relatively stable than FPI. Now this is one way to see the difference between FPI and FDI. Of course, FDI has a completely different definition. Okay, they go for something 10% limit and more than 10% is different from FDI. So that is not what we are looking into right now. Just what my idea is to tell you that there is something called FPI and FDI. FPI have moved out in this year in both equity and debt. In both equity and debt, FPI have moved. Just like we have foreign portfolio investment, money that is coming from outside. We also have domestic institutional investors. So whatever money that was moving out in both the equity and debt market by FPI, that was in some way compensated by domestic institutional investors. That is what is being told by the economic survey. Domestic institutional investors and mutual funds have countervailed the exit of FPI, especially in equity market. Especially in equity market. So when money was moving out through FPI route from the equity market, DII came and institutional investors invested there and tried to somehow calm down the secondary markets. So let's see volatility index VIX in case of India, and you'll see that India VIX is given and then Chicago Board Option Exchange VIX is given, and internationally you see that this volatility is much higher as compared to what is witnessed in case of India. India's volatility from April 21 to December 2022 is lower than the volatility shown by CBOE VIX, that is Chicago Board Option Exchange volatility index. Also, this volatility is coming down in case of India, and that's why they are saying the secondary market has performed well in case of India. Now let's look at the discussion of International Financial Services Center. Now, International Financial Services Center, or we can say IFSC. Now, what is the concept of International Financial Services Center? If you look at this concept and the latest updates regarding IFSC, it's been given in the box in the economic survey only, in this particular chapter only. So let's discuss the concept. Now, International Financial Services Center IFSC is nothing but a center where all kinds of financial and economic activities can take place. Now, usually they are set up beyond the regulation of the domestic regulators. So, for example, if in India it is financial services regulator RCB, PFRDA, or RBI, or IRDAI. So, in the International Financial Services Center, there will be only one body which will be having all kinds of powers of these sectoral regulators, and that body will be regulating all kinds of financial activities in that particular financial center. Also, in that International Financial Services Center, most of the trading will take place in foreign currencies. Foreign currencies. If you look at the context of India, International Financial Services Center, or the provision of IFSC was provided in the Special Economic Zone Act only. It provided that we can set up any International Financial Services Center, and the first International Financial Services Center is GIFT City, Gujarat International Financial Tech City, GIFT IFSC Center. So they have given a discussion with respect to the GIFT IFSC in the economic survey. So let's look into various points. So IFSC provides specialized financial services to non-residents and residents in a currency other than domestic currency. So usually the financial dealings takes place in a currency other than domestic currency. Foreign currency mostly, if you're using foreign currency, mostly it will be US dollars only because of the dominance of the US dollar in the international financial market. It has concentration of financial institutions, various financial institutions, not one. It's just not a capital market. Rather, banks are there, stock markets are there, insurance firms are there, fund managers are there, fintech firms, in fact, universities, colleges, hospitals, many things are there. In this particular city, many universities, colleges, residential building, all of these things are there, and all of these will be regulated by one authority, that is International Financial Services Center, or the IFSC, that has been set up by the government through an act of the Parliament. That will be a regulator for this, for all the International Financial Services Center in India, of which first one is GIFT City. So what is the point? One of the key takeaway can be that GIFT City is the first one and will not be the only IFSC in India. There can be many other IFSC also. So Special Economic Zone Act 2005 provides for the establishment of an IFSC in India that I have already told you. And GIFT City is India's first IFSC. International Financial Services Center Authority was established to develop and regulate IFSC in the country. And IFSC has assumed the power of 4 domestic sector regulators, RBI, SEBI, KDI, and Pension Fund Regulatory Development Authority of India. So we are planning to have some kind of financial sector like of New York, or Mauritius, or Tokyo. So a financial sector which is very lightly regulated, or at least regulated to the international standard. So, for example, international financial sectors are very lightly regulated, they are not heavily regulated like the capital markets or financial market in India. Now, we have read that 1991 reforms in India were mainly product and capital market reforms, and within that, they were mainly product then capital market. So, capital market or financial market in India are still very heavily regulated. But this IFSC, International Financial Services Center, or GIFT City, which is just the first example of IFSC in India, will be very lightly regulated. And in fact, it can act as a template of relaxed regulations. Means we want to bring reforms in the capital financial market in our country. But because of some kind of fears that if at all we bring complete freedom in the capital financial market, then there can be some kind of mishappening that can happen in the financial and capital market. We are somewhere being restricted in bringing these reforms because of those kinds of fear. So we can start by bringing these reforms in this GIFT City, and let's see that how these kind of reforms will be panning out in the near future, and then we can bring these kind of reforms in the domestic capital financial market also. So that's why I'm saying it can act as a template of relaxed regulations, especially in the capital financial market in case of India. So that was the concept of International Financial Services Center. Not everything or every net of information that is given in the economic survey related to International Financial Services Center is important, but at least you can go through that concept from the main core economic survey also. Then, lastly, we'll be discussing insurance and the pension sector and the development sector penetration in the insurance and the pension sector. Let's see first what they tell about insurance sector. So, insurance penetration and insurance density both have improved in case of India. Now, these are the two most important parameters to understand the depth of the insurance market in any country. Depth of insurance market. Now, how to calculate insurance penetration? What is the meaning of insurance penetration? So, whenever we buy insurance, we pay some premium to insure either us, means when we are taking life insurance, or some vehicle, when we are taking some vehicle insurance, non-life insurance, or house. So, we have to pay some kind of premium for that. So, total premium, when divided by total GDP of the country, when we divide total premium by total GDP of the country, we get something called insurance penetration. Okay, and whenever we divide total premium by total population of the country, we get something called insurance density. And higher the insurance density and higher the insurance penetration, the better performing insurance market are there in that particular country. And what the economic survey notes is that insurance penetration and insurance density both have improved in case of India. And mainly they are saying that this improvement is being led by both government schemes and data insurance stability development authority of India, which is the insurance sector regulator in case of India. It is being led by both government schemes and insurance sectors. If you look at the kind of schemes government has started in case of India for insurance sector, so there are many schemes like Ayushman Bharat Yojana for secondary or tertiary care, especially for people who are below poverty line. But for some states, they are open to all. So the scheme provides health coverage of rupees 5 lakh per beneficiary family. So 5 lakh per family per annum. It is provided to poor and vulnerable families, many poor and vulnerable families which are identified by some deprivation of education criteria, and BPL is one of the criteria. But as I told you, some states are providing it open to all, means everyone in the state will be beneficiary of Ayushman Bharat. Then Pradhan Mantri Sureksha Bima Yojana is another scheme, insurance scheme that is started by the central government. Another scheme, this coverage of 2 lakh for accidental death and complete disability is there, and 1 lakh partial disability coverage is there. So it is mainly an accidental coverage scheme. Then Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, a coverage of these 2 lakh is credited to the saving bank account of the holder in case the death of the insured is there. So in case of death of the insured person, 2 lakh will be given to the next kin to the account of that particular person only. Then Pradhan Mantri Vaya Bandhana Yojana is there. Under this scheme, old age income security is provided to senior citizens through the provision of assured pension linked to the sufficient amount based on the government guarantee to LIC. So higher interest rates are provided to senior citizens under this scheme, and this is being subsidized by the government. So this is also a kind of insurance scheme only. Then Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, which is for crop insurance. So this chart is given in the economic survey, and you can read the achievements of this chart. The key takeaway in the crux is that because of these many schemes by the central government, and also because of the efforts of the regulator, Insurance Regulatory Authority of India, we have been able to increase insurance penetration, insurance density in case of India. The next one, and the last topic, is related to pension sector. It says the pension sector also performed very well during the pandemic. In fact, it says the schemes like Atal Pension Yojana, API, and new pension scheme, whether it's enrollment or electronic pension direct account number or integration of these schemes with DigiLocker and Aadhaar, all have resulted in the robust performance of the pension sector. In fact, if you look at the pension sector is very much in news these days, and we should prepare well with respect to pension sector, both in place and means, because the question can come. So, for example, if you look at any person's life, I'll give you the basic about the pension sector. Any person's life is divided into 3 stages. Look at this is the line depicting the life of a person. This is the first stage, this is the second stage, and then this is the third stage. So, one, we are not working because we are either child or we are studying. So, we are not in working age. This is a significant part of our life. We are working, and this is the third stage in which we are retired. Mainly more than 60 years. Okay, a person is more than 60 years. Okay, generally, this is the norm in India right now. It can change because life expectancy is increasing continuously. So, later on, we can change. Okay, but still, even today, it is 60 years normally. So, after 60 years, most of the people get retired and they are not working. In the working age, we are having sources of income, and from that source of income, we are saving a part. A part of income is saved so that we can keep our life standard at least constant even after we got retired. Now, the kind of income we get after retirement, which is coming out of our savings in the working age, can be called pension. Okay, just for the understanding, can be called pension. Now, this saving, I have taken an example that we are saving from our income. Now, this is generally happening either across the world or even in India in case of informal sector. People are saving out of their income, whether in informal sector or corporate sector. People are saving out of their income for their post-retirement life. But what was happening in case of government employee in case of India? We had something called old pension scheme, OPS. Earlier, we had something called old pension scheme. And what was happening in case of government employees? That the savings, that what I was telling you, the savings for post-retirement life was done not by the people or the government employees, but by the state or by the government. So government promised government employees that whatever your salary will be, we have something called salary, within salary, we have basic salary, and then there is dearness allowance to compensate for the inflation effect, and that dearness allowance keep on increasing regularly with increasing inflation. Okay, so we have something called basic salary, and then dearness allowance to compensate for inflation, for rising price levels. So salary generally can be basic salary plus tier. Most basic description of salary is there. Okay, so what the government told the government employees, so promised government employee in the old pension scheme, OPS I'm talking about, old pension scheme, that 50% of your salary, whenever you retire, suppose a person joined at the age of 30 years and retires at the age of 60 years. So whatever his salary will be there, basic salary will be there at the time of retirement. Suppose his basic salary is 1 lakh. So 50% of that basic salary will be given to you as your pension for whole of your life. After you retire, for whole of your life, 50% of your basic salary will be given as your pension, and to compensate for that, so there is something called pension, which will be 50% of basic salary when you will retire at that particular point in time, whatever basic salary will be there, 50% of your salary will be for the pension, plus there will be something called dearness relief. So dearness relief will be similar to dearness allowance to compensate for the inflation effects. So for regular government employee, means those who are working, it is called dearness allowance, and for those who are retired, it is called dearness relief. So your pension will be pension plus dearness relief, and pension at the time of retirement will be 50% of basic salary, whatever basic salary will be at that particular point in time when you will retire. So we take an example of 1 lakh. If that person's basic salary is 1 lakh, so 50,000, he or she will be getting his pension. Now, what was happening over time? The government promised it, but what was happening over time was that life expectancy, in case of India, life expectancy was increasing. People in government services were increasing number. Also, the cost of bearing the expenditure was on taxpayer. So we say government is providing the pension, but the government is not providing the pension out of its pocket. Someone is bearing that expenditure. And who is bearing that expenditure? Ultimately, taxpayers are bearing that expenditure. Taxpayers are subsidizing the government employees, which is a very minuscule portion of all the working employees. More than 90% are already in the unorganized sector. Out of somewhere around 10% who are in the formal sector, only 2 to 3% are in the government services. So these 2-3% people are enjoying a very lucrative pension, and that is being subsidized by general taxpayers. So that was one reason. Life expectancy was increasing. That was also leading to the increase in expenditure because you have to provide pension for a longer period of time. Also, people in government services were increasing, so you have to provide pension to more and more people. So all of these were leading to huge costs. So government in 2004 discontinued with this old pension scheme. So all those employees who were joined after 2004 in the government services were given the option to join with something called NPS, new pension scheme. Old pension scheme was not there after 2004, except for defense employees. Okay, so they were given the option to go for new pension scheme. Now, new pension scheme was new in the sense that now for your post-retirement life, not only government but even you have to contribute. So if this scheme, old pension scheme, was called defined benefit scheme, means benefits were defined, means whatever you will be getting after retirement, those benefits are defined. Those benefits are counted as 50% of basic salary plus general salary you will be getting over time. Okay, so that is defined benefit scheme. But this was new pension scheme was defined contribution scheme. Defined contribution scheme means contribution is defined. So suppose again, if a person has a 1 lakh basic salary right now, okay, that person has joined the government service. Let's take example of government service because later on you'll see and NPS, though it started in 2004 for the government employees, in 2009 it became open for corporates, and in 2011 it became open even for unorganized sector. Later for unorganized sector we brought in something called adult pension also. Okay, but in 2011 it was open for unorganized sector. Now it is open to all. New pension scheme is now open to all. But let's take the example of government employee only. Then we can better able to appreciate means how it is different from the old pension scheme, because in case of old pension scheme we have taken an example of government employee because it was for government employee only. Now let's say 1 lakh as a basic salary. So 1 lakh as a basic salary. What the government is saying in case of new pension scheme that if a government employee is having 1 lakh as a basic salary and he has joined after 2004 in the government services, then 14% of basic salary per month we will be contributing. 10% of basic salary per month that particular person will be contributing. So it will be somewhere around 14,000, and then it will be somewhere around, or it will be 10,000, and it comes to 24,000. So 24,000 per month will be contributed apart by the government and apart by the employee, and this 24,000 will be going into NPS fund, and the interest rate will be there in this NPS fund. It will be compounding over your working age lifetime. So for example, 30 years you have joined, 60 years you retire. So across these 30 years, various months, various contributions will be there. There will be some kind of interest rate, and this will be accumulating over time. And suppose at your age of retirement, this corpus becomes somewhere around 5 crores. Suppose. So what this NPS scheme now tells us that 60% you can directly withdraw, a maximum of 60% you can directly withdraw at the time of retirement, and the rest 40% will go again in some kind of investment annuities. And from this 40% you'll be given a monthly pension. A monthly pension. So in OPS, which was a defined benefit scheme, 50% of basic salary, whatever basic salary will be at the time of retirement, plus general salary you'll be getting over time. Whereas in NPS, your pension will be contributed by you plus the government. It's a defined contribution scheme. That money over your working age life will be going into a fund, NPS fund. Interest rate will be there. It will be accumulated over time. The corpus at the time of retirement, 60% of that you can withdraw, maximum 60% of that you can withdraw at the time of retirement. Rest 40% will be mandatorily going for annuities, and from that you'll be getting your pension. So government is promoting this NPS scheme, and this NPS scheme is a huge success since it is being open for all the corporates and unorganized sector. In fact, if you look at the asset under management in both NPS and APY, it's now close to 9 lakh crore, and it is increasing at double-digit growth rate year after year. So it is a huge success, and it has given a huge fillip to the pension sector. So whenever you are studying pension sector, it's very important for us to study out old pension scheme, new pension scheme, because this debate is news, because many states are now reverting back to the old pension scheme, and around 5 states have already reverted to old pension scheme, and mostly economists across the spectrum are saying this is not very good policy because of political consideration. Only because of political consideration you are going for old pension scheme, and it is going to erode the financial stability of the country at a later time period. Okay, so that was the discussion with respect to the pension sector, and that was the discussion with respect to chapter 4. Now we are done with chapter 4. We'll again start with chapter 5. Till then, goodbye. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome back to our discussion on Economic Survey 2022-23. Let's start our discussion with chapter number 5, which is titled as Prices and Inflation. So what all things are we discussing here? So basically we'll be discussing some bit of concepts regarding inflation, what is inflation. Then we'll see how the inflation has been there in the global economy in the last 1 or 2 years. Then we'll see the domestic situation, especially with respect to inflation, how inflation trajectory has been there with respect to wholesale price index and consumer price index. These are the two indices on the basis of which we measure the inflation in India. We'll see the trends in the last 1 year. Then we'll be looking at the various factors which were leading to inflation in the last 1 year, 1 or 2 years. And we'll also see the government response to how to tackle the problem of inflation in India. Means how government respond to the measures that were taken by the government, especially with respect to the food inflation, because food inflation is something, or increase in the prices in the food was something which was driving the inflation in India in the last 1 or 2 years. Finally, we'll also see a parallel that is being drawn in the 1970s inflation that happened in the 1970s and inflation that was seen in the last 1 or 2 years. So there's a box in chapter number 5 of this economic survey only, where they are drawing the parallel between 1970s inflation and the latest inflation that is being witnessed in the global economy. So we'll see what is the
issue there. So let's start a discussion. Let's first look into the first slide, the inflation. So what is inflation? Now inflation can be simply defined as general increase in the prices in the economy. So we go into the market, we buy various goods and consume various services. When most of the goods and services are witnessing an increase in the prices, then we can say that this is a phenomenon of inflation. Now, if there is a phenomenon of inflation, then it also has one sister, which is called deflation. So if most of the prices of most of the commodities in the economy are decreasing, then we can say we are witnessing something called deflation. Now, this third one, which is called disinflation. Disinflation. So inflation is there, but at a decreasing rate. So for example, in 1 year, inflation is at a rate of 10%. Another year, inflation is at a rate of 8%. And the third year, inflation is at a rate of 6%. So all of these years are witnessing increase in the prices in the economy, general increase in the prices in the economy at the rate of 10%, 8%, 6%. So inflation is there, but inflation is there with decreasing rate. So 10% in first year, 8%, second year, and 6%. Third year. So with declining rate, inflation is being witnessed in the economy in 3 consequent years. So that is what something called phenomenon of disinflation. So there is inflation, there is deflation, and there is disinflation. Now inflation can take place in the economy both from supply side and demand side. And in our context, inflation has taken place from both the sides. So we know the story. The story is first COVID, then Russia Ukraine war. So when COVID was there, what happened? Most of the supply of the commodities were hit, or there was supply side shortage of the commodities, and that led to the supply side inflation. Then later on, government responded by increasing government expenditure. We saw in chapter number 3 in the fiscal policy, the government responded by increasing aggregate demand by increasing government expenditure because most of the other things, investments and exports, were down. So government increased aggregate demand by increasing government expenditure. It led to demand side inflation. Then central bank responded by pumping liquidity in the economy by increasing money supply. It also led to demand side inflation. So firstly, supply side inflation was there because of shortage of commodity or snacks in the supply chain of these commodities, and then later on there was demand side inflation. So both of them have led to inflation in the economies across the world and even in India. So let's start with this basic. Let's first look into what the economic survey does about the global inflation, then we'll come to the domestic inflation. So let's see the first point. They say inflation increasing both advanced economies and emerging market developing economies. Now this categorization of advanced economies and emerging market developing economy is mainly given by IMF. If you look at the World Bank, they categorize economies on the basis of low income, middle income, upper middle income, lower middle income, and then high income economies. Okay, so that is the categorization which is used by them. Whereas IMF uses the categorization of advanced economies, emerging market developing economies, and low income countries. So what economic outlook, which is published twice in a year by IMF, tells us something about the global inflation. They say the perils of inflation were witnessed in both emerging market developing economies, that is EMDs, and advanced economies. But EMDs, emerging market developing economies, or developing economies in general, witnessed higher inflation as compared to the advanced economies. So you can look into this figure, and when they give us the data regarding consumer price inflation, so they compare from year 2020 till 2023, and they measure inflation in y-axis, and you can see that red one tells us about the inflation, trends of inflation in the emerging market developing economies, and it is across the board from 2010 to 2023 higher than the blue one, which is depicting us the inflation levels that was prevailing in all these years in the advanced economies. This is one way to say that inflation was higher in EMDs or developing economies as compared to the advanced economies. But there is another way also. So you can see in 2010, inflation was just 1.5% in advanced economies, and you can see the peak in advanced economies that is 7.2%. So as compared to 2010, inflation in their economies have almost become 5 times, peaking at 7.2. Whereas in developing economies, inflation was just 5.7% to begin with, and then they peaked at 9.9%. So it just doubled. Whereas in advanced economies, it became more than 5 times. And that's why you see that most of the increase in the interest rates, or major increase in the interest rate, were done by Federal Reserve. It's the central bank of US, along with central bank of Germany or Bank of England. So most of these advanced economies were increasing interest rate at a much higher rate than what was witnessed in developing economies like India, because they were also knowing that inflation in their countries have almost become 5 times as compared to 2010, or in the recent history, inflation was highest in their economies. In fact, in US, it was highest as what was witnessed in the last 4 decades. So in the last 4 decades, that was inflation was not seen in US. But the economic survey knows, and they go to the data from the IMF, that inflation in the advanced economies have remained lower as compared to emerging market developing economies. But I've given you another analysis where we can see that within the advanced economies, inflation was much higher than what was seen historically in their particular economies. Okay. So if you look at the causes of inflation now, I told you inflation was driven both by supply side and later on liquidity infusion by both the government and the central bank from demand side also. So both supply side and demand side factors were leading to inflation in the economies across the world. Also, Russia-Ukraine war compounded the problem, because Russia-Ukraine war led to increase in the commodity prices, and especially for countries like India, which are dependent on imports, especially crucial imports like oil. If oil prices increases, then definitely we are going to witness very high inflation in the economy. Thirdly, shortfall in the crop harvest due to excessive rain, that is climate change, is also leading to inflation in economies across the world and even in the case of India. So for example, you see that there is something called winter, then spring, and then summer. But what is happening due to climate change? There is no spring that is happening in the case of India, and even if it is there, it is for a very short time period. And directly from winters, we are seeing huge spike in the temperature. Directly we are transitioning to summers. So for example, wheat, which is sown in winters, grow in spring, and harvested in summer, in the month of April, what we are witnessing is that spring is something which is absent, and because of the climate change and because of huge spikes in the temperature right after winter, it is leading to loss of production and productivity in wheat crop or cereal crop, and that is also leading to inflation by driving food inflation. Okay, so climate change is also leading to, or is one of the major factor causing inflation across the world, and even in the case of India. In India, inflation is mainly driven by global spillovers, so global factors were there. Global factors like Russia-Ukraine war, COVID was also a global challenge that led to inflation, but also it is being aided by food inflation. So food inflation is something which is driving the overall general inflation in India, mainly vegetables, cereals, we have discussed, crop harvest, edible oil, we are mainly dependent on imports. 60% of edible oil requirement is being imported. Milk, spices, We'll discuss CPI right now. Now, what are the other factors that were linked to inflation? Inflation was also seen in inputs like fuel, steel, cotton, plastic, and chemical products, and largely due to Russia-Ukraine war, which led to the increase in the price of basic commodities. So government responded by various fiscal administrative measures. Central bank responded by various monetary measures. And inflation in India, they are saying inflation in India or the war against inflation in India was successful, and we were able to cool down inflation because of various measures which we discussed in financial year 2022 with respect to financial year 2021. So we were able to contain inflation. That is what economic survey is noting. Now let's look at the domestic retail inflation. Let's go into the detail of the inflation. Now if you look at the retail inflation in India is measured through consumer price index. Now there are various categories of consumer price index: rural, urban, combined, for agricultural labor, for rural labor. So industrial workers, various measures are there. Now basically consumer price index combined, which is just a combination of rural and urban, is called headline inflation, and this is something which is targeted. Headline inflation. This is something which is targeted in India by Monetary Policy Committee of the RBI. So whenever we say that inflation should be within a band of 4 plus minus 2, and this is something which is targeted by RBI, Monetary Policy Committee of RBI. What we mean by that is that consumer price index combined should be within the range of 4 plus minus 2. So consumer price index combined is targeted, and this is headline inflation. From the headline inflation, if you remove the component which are volatile, for example food and fuel, they are volatile and temporary effects. That is, they are volatile and cause temporary effects in the inflation level. So if you remove them, we come to something called core inflation. So there is something called headline inflation, and there is something called core inflation. In fact, if you have to measure inflation in any economy, you cannot measure inflation by measuring the increase in the prices of all the commodities. You have to take some reference. So some group of commodities you have to take. So suppose this is a basket which has been taken as a reference. There are various commodities, and their price level is something which will be assessing, measuring, and then we'll see whether there is inflation in the economy or not, and what is the level of inflation. Suppose this is a basket, and this basket is at retail level because we are measuring consumer price index, which is an inflation that is witnessed at the retail level. Now, what happens in India? This basket is designed and the survey is conducted, and inflation numbers are given by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. There is something called National Statistics Organization and the MOSPI, and they do all these exercises. Now, what happens in India is that they divide for CPI, they divide various commodities into 6 groups. So into 6 groups, they will divide various commodities for CPI, for the sake of measuring CPI, and that will be food and beverages, housing, clothing and footwear, pan, tobacco and intoxicants, fuel and light, and then miscellaneous. So these are 6 groups under which these various commodities are categorized, and then we measure the increase in prices or decrease in prices, and then we say whether there is inflation, and what is the level of inflation or deflation. Okay, so let's stop this discussion here only, and let's look into the PPT. So what they say, they have high domestic retail inflation, and causes are high food inflation, which is driven by food and beverage category. So this food and beverage category, within consumer price index, we have 6 groups, and within that food and beverage categories, which is around 45% weightage within the consumer price index, is something which is driving inflation in the recent period. Also, there was global spillovers due to pressure, energy, trade, and chemicals. That is something which will be found here, fuel and light. Then housing price increase, textile price increase, that also led to inflation. Housing, textile means clothing. Then they are saying pharmaceutical sector, that also witnessed increase in prices. In fact, pharmaceutical sector increase in prices was something which was very natural. So we have a huge country, around 1.4 billion population, and we have a huge demand for drugs, for medicine. But for production of medicine, we are dependent on import of bulk drug, demand for drugs, driven by food and beverage category. So this food and beverage category, within consumer price index, we have 6 groups, and within that food and beverage categories, which is around 45% weightage within the consumer price index, is something which is driving inflation in the recent period. Also, there was global spillovers due to pressure, energy, trade, and chemicals. That is something which will be found here, fuel and light. Then housing price increase, textile price increase, that also led to inflation. Housing, textile means clothing. Then they are saying pharmaceutical sector, that also witnessed increase in prices. In fact, pharmaceutical sector increase in prices was something which was very natural. So we have a huge country, around 1.4 billion population, and we have a huge demand for drugs, for medicine. But for production of medicine, we are dependent on import of bulk drug, import of raw material, or what is called bulk drug, and that too from countries like China. So the raw material for the drug industry are called some API or active pharmaceutical ingredient or ASF. So API, key pharmaceutical ingredient, API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, and ASF, key supply material, and we are largely dependent on imports for all these, and that too from China. So during COVID time, there was supply chain disturbances, and we faced shortages of these bulk drug or raw material, and that led to the pharmaceutical increase in the prices or inflation in the pharmaceutical sector. Then high inflation is also seen in oil and fats. Fuel and light has also witnessed inflation, and transport and communication is something which is interesting. Transport and communication has also led to inflation and led to CPI inflation, consumer price index inflation in the recent past. Now what they are generally saying then, most of the category, most of the commodity groups witnessed inflation, witnessed increase in price, and this was largely driven by high food inflation. Now transport and communication I was discussing. If you look at these 6 categories, this 6th one, which is called miscellaneous, and this miscellaneous mainly has all the components which are from services. So most of the services are categorized under miscellaneous categories, and one of that is transport and communication. Now there was an interesting note in the last economic survey, where apart from headline inflation, core inflation, they also brought a concept of something called refined inflation. Refined inflation. Now, I was telling under miscellaneous, most of the items are related to service sector, and within that one is transport and communication. Now, how it is linked to refined inflation? So for core inflation, what we were doing, we were removing all those components which are having temporary effect on inflation, and those were food and fuel. But 2 major fuel components are petrol and diesel, which are used for vehicle transportation. But these were not included under fuel and light category of those all 6 broad categories. So those all 6 broad categories which I wrote here, under fuel and light, petrol and diesel were not included. Petrol and diesel for vehicle transportation were not included. Rather, they are included under transport and communication categories of miscellaneous group. So while calculating core inflation, we are removing fuel and light, we are removing the effect of food inflation, but we are not removing the component transport and communication, which actually contains the effect of inflation which is coming from petrol and diesel for vehicle transportation. So what they did in the last economic survey, they brought in something called refined inflation, where they also removed the petrol and diesel for vehicle transportation by removing the transport and communication component from the core inflation. So for core inflation, from headline inflation, we got by removing food and fuel component, that is food and beverage category, and fuel and light category will not be included while calculating core inflation, whereas while calculating headline inflation, everything in the CPI basket, all those things will be included. Whereas when we are calculating refined inflation, now from core inflation, even transport and communication category will be excluded. Okay, that is what is refined inflation. Okay, so let's look into this box where they are giving us various groups and subgroups of consumer price index, and they have given us consumer price index combined. Base year is 20. So consumer price index combined, consumer price index as a base year as of today is 2012. Okay, now food and beverage category, then pan, tobacco and intoxicant, clothing, footwear, housing, fuel and light, and miscellaneous. Under miscellaneous, most of them are services. So health, transport, communication, education, amusement, and education. Now, if you look at within food and beverages, there are various food categories like cereals and products, meat and fish, egg, milk and products, oil and fats, fruits, vegetables, pulses and products. You don't have to remember all of them, but at least you should have an idea of what all goods are included under which categories within CPI. And similarly, you will see for WPI also. At least you should have a broad idea of what all is included and excluded in the CPI and WPI. Okay, sugar and confectionery and spices. So there are 10 food items within the food and beverage categories only. In pan, tobacco, intoxicant, clothing, footwear, housing, and in the miscellaneous, we have various services. Now, there they have given rates, so 45.9% for food and beverage category, then 2.4% for pan, tobacco, intoxicant, 6.5% weightage within CPI is given to clothing, footwear, around 10% for housing, around 7% for fuel and light, and around 28% for miscellaneous. So, the highest weightage in CPI is for food and beverage category. So, if there is inflation in the food prices, then definitely you can expect that CPI will also increase. Secondly, if there will be services inflation, if the inflation in the services category, because it has a weightage of around 30%, 28.3%, then also we can safely conclude that there is a chance for CPI to increase. So, CPI mainly can increase by increasing food category, or by witnessing inflation in food category, or by witnessing inflation under services category. Now, here they have given the performance, how inflation has performed in the food category in 21 and in 22, so, and then in 23. So, in 23 it has increased as compared to 21 from 4.2% to 7%. Similarly, pan, tobacco, intoxicant they have given, clothing, footwear they have given, within fuel and light category they have given, and then under miscellaneous. Under miscellaneous, you see service inflation 6.6, 6.7, 6.3, so it is more than 6% consistently for last 3 years. Okay, so we don't need to remember the number, but the key takeaway can be you can at least have some sense of broad idea that within CPI, food and beverage category is something which is having the highest weightage, followed by miscellaneous category. And in the past, in the recent past, inflation, especially consumer price index inflation, is mainly driven in the economy because of increase in food and beverage category, increase in the prices in food and beverage category. And if we calculate an index of all the 10 items of food and beverage category only, then we get something called consumer food price index. Okay, so that is how we draw consumer food price index from consumer price index. Now you can see how retail inflation is driven by food and beverage flow. That is how food inflation is leading to the overall retail inflation. So you can see under x-axis various 6 groups of consumer price index are given. In y-axis, their contribution in terms of percentage to consumer price index, or the inflation that is measured to consumer price index is given. And you can also see in financial year 21, 22, and 23 how they have been contributing to the consumer price index inflation. And you can see that food and beverage category has the largest contribution. So definitely it has largest weightage of 45.9% consumer price index. But the inflation, CPI inflation, is also been driven mainly by food inflation, followed by services inflation. Okay, now after looking into the high domestic retail inflation, let's look into the drivers of food inflation. So again, you can see drivers of food inflation financial year 23. I told you that within food and beverage category, there are 10 items. 10 food and beverage items. So you see out of them how food items are driving up inflation and how they are contributing to food inflation. Okay, so y-axis contribution is given, and x-axis various food items have been mentioned, and you can see that how cereals and products are leading to the food inflation. What is their contribution in 21, 22, and 23? Then what is the contribution of milk and products? What is the contribution of vegetables? You can see vegetables in financial year 22. So a huge negative leap. So there was a deflation that was witnessed in the vegetable prices in financial year 22. Then in meat and fish, in oil and fat especially, you can see this one. Oil and fat in financial year 22 saw huge inflation, huge spike in the prices. Then spices, pulses, and products, fruits. So this is a disaggregated view of food inflation. It's not that important. And the only key takeaway that you can have from this particular figure is this one. It's vegetable prices witnessing huge deflation during financial year 22. That is the only key takeaway that you can take from this graph. Now, apart from this, there is another figure which is telling us something about food inflation only, and that comes from edible oil. How edible oil to food inflation, which in turn is contributing to consumer price index inflation in India. So you can see how for edible oils we are depending on imports. In x-axis, various years have been given from 2016, 17 to 2021, 22. In the y-axis, quantity and value of import of edible oil. So if you can see this blue bars are telling us about the quantity in lakh tons of edible oil, and there is no consistent increase or decrease in the import of the quantity of edible oil. Also, there is no consistent increase or decrease of edible oil in terms of value in 1,000 crores. So 80,000 crore in the year 2016-17, then more than 140,000 crore in the year 21-22. So firstly it decreased and then it increased. So in the last 5 years, edible oil imports, whether in terms of quantity or in terms of value, is not witnessing any consistent increase or decrease. That is the key takeaway from this figure. That can be an important one from the business perspective. Now, after food inflation, let's look at the measures to contain food inflation. So what were the measures that were taken by the government to contain this food inflation? Food inflation is that much a big problem. It is driving up CPI inflation in India, and CPI combined is something which is targeted by the Reserve Bank of India. So definitely, if food inflation is not contained, Reserve Bank of India is not successful in its inflation targeting. So government should also take some efforts, or should also make some efforts to contain food inflation. Now, what all efforts can any government can take to contain food inflation? If they have to contain food inflation, definitely that means there is a shortage in supply, and they have to increase the supply. Now, how they can increase the supply? They can increase the supply either by increasing production of food, various categories of food. They can increase imports by reducing various kinds of duties and taxes. They can decrease exports by discouraging them by levying various kinds of export duties. So various kinds of taxes they can levy for exporting these food products so that they remain within the domestic frontiers of the country and they are not exported. But if you look at the first one, production of food is something which is not easy. Means you cannot increase the production of food overnight. So definitely government usually take measures of increasing imports or decreasing export. So you will always see in the news that government has discouraged exports by levying certain duty or certain percentage of duty on rice or on wheat. Or government is encouraging imports by reducing the duties. Okay, so these kinds of measures are something which are taken by the government in the recent past. And you will see for all the food categories, they have taken these kinds of measures only. So for example, for cereals, prohibition of exports of wheat products because you are seeing wheat inflation, cereal inflation, imposition of export duty 200% on rice because there was shortage of rice. Then PM Garib Kalyan Yojana was launched to increase the supply especially to vulnerable section. So they were given additional 5 kg of cereals, that too free of cost. So they were already getting 5 kg per person per month. So all variety household categories which are there under National Food Security Act 2013, they get 5 kg per person per month of cereals. So additionally they were getting 5 kg and that too free of cost. So this component of 5 kg was subsidized, whereas this component was free of cost. And also they restricted wheat exports. So you see that most of the time they are either restricting exports or encouraging imports, or they are increasing supply to the vulnerable sections so as to reduce the effect of food inflation for cereal category. Then for pulses, there is the same thing. Apart from increasing imports, they also release more pulses through government buffer stocks. So maintaining buffer stock for price stabilization in the last 3 years, that helped the government in reducing inflation in the pulses category. They calibrated release pulses from the buffer stock. Zero import duty was on masood to increase the imports or increase the supply of masood in the domestic market so as to cool down inflation. And 1.5 million tons of chana was given by the union to stay at discounted rate for distribution in the welfare scheme. So same kind of measures, promoting imports and discouraging exports, releasing food grains or pulses or various food items from the buffer stocks, or by providing supply to vulnerable sections. So same kind of measures will be seen across the food categories. For edible oil, again, exemptions of custom duties and agriculture infrastructure development cess on crude, soybean and sunflower oil for year 2022, 3 and 23, 24. And also there is a long-term step of National Mission on Edible Oil Palm so as to increase the supply of edible oil in the domestic market and also to reduce our dependence on edible oil from imports. But this is something which will show result in the long term. It's not something which is not a short-term measure to contain inflation in India. Now after looking into the consumer price index and its trends and food inflation and various measures taken by the government to contain food inflation in the various food categories, now let's look at the domestic wholesale price inflation and the trends in the domestic wholesale price inflation. Now wholesale price inflation in India is measured through wholesale price index (WPI). It is something which is released by Office of Economic Advisor of Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade (DPIIT). Within that there is an office attached Office of Economic Advisor and they release wholesale price index. Just like CPI, they also have a reference basket under which various goods are there. So services are not part of wholesale price index. That is the difference between WPI and CPI. Of course, there are differences in the various weightages to various categories also. So broad categories were there, just like 6 broad categories were there in consumer price index. Here there are 3 categories, and these are primary items, which has food items, non-food items, include petrol and LPG. So within primary items, these are the 3 items. Then manufactured goods, and then fuel and power. So these are the 3 broad categories within the WPI basket. And in all these categories, manufactured goods have highest weightage, followed by primary items. So manufactured goods have weightage of around 65%, followed by primary item. Now let's look into how domestic wholesale price inflation has behaved in the recent past. So they say that it remained low during the pandemic time and started to gain momentum in the post-pandemic period. So during the pandemic time, wholesale price inflation was at a lower level and it only started kicking up after pandemic started receding, or effects of pandemic started receding. And few of the reasons why wholesale price index started picking up after pandemic were Russia-Ukraine conflict, because it led to increasing commodity prices, and those commodity prices increase was first reflected at the wholesale level. Second, global supply chain got its snacks. Again, at the wholesale level, prices were impacted first. Food inflation was not only troubling the consumer at the consumer level, but that was also troubling to the wholesalers at the wholesale level. And inflation into the various input prices, which was leading to cost pressures and leading to supply side inflation. Supply side inflation. This is something which is also called as cost push inflation. Whenever there is inflation in input prices, it is also called cost push inflation. Now let's look into the domestic wholesale price inflation WPI basket. Now, in the WPI basket, I have already told you there are three broad categories. These are primary articles, fuel and power, manufactured product, and they have also given us a weightage. So manufactured product have a weightage of 64.2% when we calculate WPI, then 22.6% of primary articles, followed by fuel and power 30.2%. So maximum weightage within WPI is of manufactured product. Manufactured products category, followed by primary items, which includes all food, non-food, crude and natural gas, followed by fuel and power. Okay, so the key takeaway from this table means these numbers are not key takeaway. You can easily note these numbers. Key takeaway is the categories, various items which are involved in the categories, and that WPI inflation was also something which was higher in the recent past, and WPI inflation in fact is mainly being driven by the manufactured product category only. So the largest contribution in the recent past to the WPI inflation is the inflation in manufactured product category only, and one of the reasons is because it is having the highest weightage. Now you can see the contribution of manufactured product category to WPI inflation in the recent past, in the recent last 3 years, financial year 21, financial year 22, financial year 23. So in the y-axis again, contribution in terms of percentage by various categories of or subcategories of WPI are given. There are three subcategories: primary article, fuel and power, manufactured product, and you can see that manufactured products are contributing most. They are maximum. Means they are contributing most to the WPI inflation in all 3 years. In all 3 years, 21, 22, and 23. Now, after going through WPI, CPI, looking into the various factors which are leading to the inflation in WPI, CPI, let's look into the issue of convergence in CPI and WPI. Now, just look into this particular graph. If you look at this figure, the red one tells us about the trends in WPI, and the blue one tells us about the trends in CPI combined. And from April 21 till December 22, they are taking monthly data. So you can see that WPI is much higher than the CPI for most of the time. They are converging only here, and CPI is at a much lower rate than the WPI. Normally, CPI should be higher than WPI. At least this was the trend which was seen in most of the years in our economic history. The CPI was higher than WPI. That's a very recent phenomenon that we are seeing, that WPI is higher than the CPI. Means inflation at the wholesale level is higher than the inflation at the consumer end. And there was a reason. Reason was again COVID pandemic and then Russia-Ukraine war. Because of these two events, the global commodity prices increases, prices of basic metals, prices of crude oil, they all went for a high, and this led to the increase of prices at wholesale level. Because if you look at the impact of prices, first it will be witnessed at the wholesale level only, and then only it will be translated to the retail level. So there is some kind of lag effect. There is some kind of time duration that should be elapsed before the increase in the prices at the wholesale level are reflected in the increase in the price at retail level, and that was something which was happening, and that was leading to the large increase in the wholesale price index for most of the time in the recent year, whereas a very muted increase in the CPI. Later on, CPI index also started increasing, CPI inflation also started increasing because the impact of the increase in the price at wholesale level started getting reflected at the consumer level, so it started increasing, whereas the rise in the commodity price, rise in the basic metal prices at the wholesale level started decreasing, so WPI started decreasing, CPI started increasing, and then they started converging. So let's see what they have given. Headline WPI and CPI has seen divergence in the recent past. We have seen divergence was there. It was followed by short convergence and then again divergence and finally leading to convergence. And reasons were decrease in WPI inflation. So later on, at WPI level, at wholesale level, inflation started getting muted due to cooling inflation of crude oil, iron, aluminum, cotton, etc. WPI inflation started getting down, so it started reducing. Whereas increase in CPI inflation was witnessed due to rise in the price of services, and also these increase were getting reflected now at the consumer level. So WPI inflation started getting down, whereas CPI inflation started increasing, and then there was convergence that was witnessed in both WPI and CPI. So that is the issue of convergence of WPI and CPI. Now let's look into the last topic, where they have compared the current inflation with the inflation of 1970s. Now we'll see how the current inflation is different from the inflation of 1970s. In 1970s, inflation was mainly caused by oil price shock or 1973 oil crisis, and the reason was Arab-Israel war. Arab-Israel war. In this Arab-Israel war, US supported Israel, and because of US support to Israel, other countries or oil-producing Arab countries imposed oil embargo on US, and this led to the increase in oil prices, translating into the global inflation. This led to the global inflation because oil prices increased, and most of the countries in the world are oil importing countries, and even India faced oil price shock or oil price inflation at that particular point in time. So let's see what they are telling us about the inflation of 1970s and the current inflation. So both contributed to rising commodity prices worldwide and had spillover effects on the prices of other goods and services. Both of these inflation led to the rising commodity prices, and both of them had spillover effects, means effect on other goods and services. However, there are differences. So the source of commodity prices increase and the spillover effect on other goods and services, or the prices of other goods and services, are something which are similar in both 1970s inflation and in current inflation. But what are the differences? So they tell that proportionately smaller oil prices in the recent times in 1970s. So as compared to the oil price increase of 1970s, recent times has witnessed a muted increase in the oil prices. First difference. Second difference, 1970s prices was confined to oil prices. It was mainly confined to oil prices only, and all inflationary impacts were mainly sourced to oil prices, and that was mainly due to Arab-Israel war. But the recent crisis has a broader range. So it's not simply oil prices, it is not simply inflation which was led by oil prices. There are many other factors that have led to the inflation in the recent past, and all those factors we have already discussed. Then commodity supply disruptions have played a smaller role in the recent inflation. Commodity supply disruption, mainly oil supply disruption. So it has not played that big role in the recent episode of inflation as compared to the 1970s. That was another difference that they have quoted. Then more robust institutional frameworks are in place today mainly to contain inflation. So most of the central banks are now very active, in fact proactive in containing inflation. Both government and central banks have playing a very active role in containing inflation, whereas this was not something which was seen in the 1970s. So this was a major shock, major surprise to central banks and government to how to tackle with this sort of inflation. But because of their experiences over the last many years and many decades, this time they were able to tackle it properly. In fact, even in case of India, central banks were able to play a very successful role in containing or taming inflation. The last point is, recent global inflation is followed by several years of low inflation, but this was not the case in 1970s. 1970s inflation had a history of very high inflation. So high inflation was followed by higher inflation, whereas in the recent past, we had a period of low and moderate inflation, and then we went for higher inflation. So these are the differences they are drawing out from comparing the inflation of the current time with the inflation of 1970s. So this is how we'll be able to conclude our chapter on prices inflation. We'll start with the chapter number 6 in the next video. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome back to our discussion on Economic Survey 2022-23.
Let's start a discussion with chapter number 6, which is titled as Social Infrastructure and Employment. Now, to know about what all kind of discussion will be in this chapter, let's understand the meaning of social infrastructure and get the idea of what kind of discussion we can expect within this chapter. So, infrastructure broadly can be divided into two types. That is economic infrastructure, and another can be social infrastructure. So, economic and social infra. Now, economic infrastructure is something which is hard infrastructure. For example, infrastructure like roads or investments in railways or investment in big projects like dams or other irrigation projects. All these are examples of hard infrastructure which have a direct relation with the production. So, if you invest more money in this infrastructure, you will see a direct increase in the production capacity or the production of the economy or overall GDP of the economy. It is something which is hard, which can be felt, which can be touched. Whereas the other one is social infrastructure. Now, social infrastructure is something which cannot be touched, which cannot be felt, which is something which is more intangible and have indirect relation with the production and direct relation with the productivity of people. So, for example, investment in health, investment in education, or money spent on sanitation facilities, or in training of people, or skill development, or creating employment, or increasing human development, or improving the quality of life of people. Quality of life of people in both rural or urban areas or overall in the country. All these come under the category of social infrastructure or infrastructure to support these kind of activities come under the category of social infrastructure. So they do not have direct relation with the production, but indirect, and they will increase the production and productive capacity of people in longer term. So results will not be immediate, rather they will take time. And also, once they are there, once the results are visible, they will be there for longer term. So this is the difference between the economic and social infrastructure. Now here we are not discussing economic infrastructure, rather we are discussing social infrastructure. So all of these things means issues related to health, issues related to education, issues related to skills, employment, quality of life of people. All of these things we will be discussing within this chapter, and all of these things have been discussed by the economic survey in this chapter. So let's start the discussion. Let's first look into the most important thing, that is the amount of money that is spent by the government in these kind of social sectors or the social sector expenditure. Now what the economic survey notes here is that social sector expenditure by the general government means both central and states. So social sector expenditure by the general government has been consistently increasing in India since 2017-18. That is the first notable point from this slide. Second, 26.6% of total expenditure is going for social sector in financial year 23. That is 1/4 of the total expenditure is spent on social services. Now let's look at the hard number to support this kind of important notice by the economic survey. Now this figure shows us trends in social service sector expenditure by the general government both combined center and state. Now 4 kinds of information are there, and these information are for the year 2017-18 to 2020-23, means of 5 years. And that tells us about something about total expenditure in lakh crore, means in absolute terms. Expenditure on social services again in lakh crore, that means in absolute terms. Expenditure on social services as a percentage of GDP, and this is the most quantitative one. So if at all you have to argue in exams, then you can argue in terms of this one, third one, means expenditure as a percentage of GDP. You will see what kind of trends have been witnessed in this parameter. Then expenditure on social service as a percentage of total expenditure. So let's start with the first, total expenditure in lakh crore. So from 2017-18 till 2020-23, you will see total expenditure in lakh crore, blue color, it's been consistently increasing. From 45.2 lakh crore, it has increased to more than 80 lakh crore in 2020-23. Then expenditure social services again in lakh crore in absolute terms, you will see it has increased from 11.4 lakh crore in 2017-18 to 21.3 lakh crore in 2020-23. Then expenditure social services as a percentage of GDP, you will see that it has increased from 6.7% of GDP in 2017-18 to 8.3% of GDP in 2020-23. So it's a huge achievement for India that its expenditure as a percentage of GDP in social sectors is increasing, and it's increased to 8.3% from 6.7% 5 years ago. Then expenditure social services as a percentage of total expenditure means if suppose this is total expenditure TE and this is social sector expenditure SE. So how much of social sector expenditure is done as a percentage of total expenditure that you will see here. So of today in financial year 23. So these are the important information that can be extracted from this figure. And the most important one is this, that as a percentage of GDP, our social sector expenditure is somewhere around 8%. Now, let's look into the disaggregated expenditure. Means on different sectors, how we are spending money. So two most important social sectors are health and education. Let's keep a note of that. Let's look into the expenditure on health and education as absolute and also in percentage terms. So total expenditure, if you see, you're seeing that is around 80 lakh crore in 2022-23. And expenditure on social service is around 21 lakh crore. That is around 25%. Now the precise 26.6% of total expenditure that we have seen just now. And of which education, if you see, is around 7 lakh crore. Whereas health is around 5 lakh crore. Now let's look into this figure as a percentage of GDP. As a percentage of GDP, expenditure on social service is around 8.3, means we are seeing around 8% of GDP is spent on social sector. Then of which education is just 2.9%. Whereas what is recommended is 6% of GDP. Whereas for health, it is 2.1%. And as per the national health policy, it is recommended as 2.5% of GDP. So you can see that these are the important figures. If you look at the health and education, in health, we are spending just 2.1% of GDP, whereas in education, we are spending just 2.9% of GDP. So this is the only important information from this particular table. Now, after looking at the social sector expenditure, now let's look into the first topic of this chapter. That is the topic of human development. Now, before looking into these points, let's get a brief about what is human development. Now, there's something called growth, and there's something called development. Growth is something which is quantitative in nature, whereas development is something which brings quality to our life. So whenever development brings quality to the life of people, it is called human development. Whereas growth, if you see, so for example, if in the economy only 100 units of goods have been produced in 1 year, next year 110 units of goods is being produced. So this is a 10% increase. We can simply say that the economy has grown. There's a growth in the economy, and this growth is of 10%. But who has benefited from this growth? When we start looking at those kinds of questions, that who has benefited from this growth, and whether these benefits have been properly dispersed to different sections of people, and whether these benefits are coming to the vulnerable sections, or whether they are improving the quality of life, whether this 10% growth rate in the economy from 1 year to the next year is improving the quality of life of most of the people or not. When we start looking into these kinds of questions, then we start saying that we are looking at something called development dimension. So growth is quantitative in nature, whereas development is qualitative in nature. And the main point is development is growth plus. That is, development is not bereft of growth. For development, growth is something which is necessary. We need growth for development. But for development, growth is not something which is sufficient. Okay, now let's look into the human development, and let's first look into how human development is measured. So three broad indicators or general indicators that are used to measure human development are human development index, multi-dimensional poverty index, and gender inequality index. And the performance of India in all of these three indices is given in the economic survey this time. Now let's look into what is human development index. Let's briefly look into this human development index, how it is calculated. Then we'll see how India has performed in human development index. Now, human development index is calculated on the basis of three dimensions: long healthy life, knowledge, and decent standard of living. And then there are different indicators. For example, long healthy life is measured by life expectancy at birth. And on that basis, we get something called dimension index for long healthy life, which is called life expectancy index. Knowledge is measured by expected years of schooling and mean years of schooling. And on that basis, we get something called education index. A decent standard of living is measured through monetary terms, means GNI, gross national income per capita in dollars. And on that basis, we get something called GNI index. On the basis of these three dimension indices, we get something called human development index. So we'll calculate geometric mean of all these three dimension indices, and we'll get something called human development index. Now let's look into the performance of India in the human development index. We have seen how human development index is calculated. We have basics very clear in our mind now. Now let's look into the performance. HDI value for India, they are saying is more than South Asia's average. Now comparing India with South Asia's average is something which is not very healthy way of comparing India's performance in human development index, but still they have given the comparison of HDI value for India from South Asia, and they say HDI value for India in 2021 as per the latest report is 0.633. So HDI values ranges between 0 and 1, and more is closer to 1 means better than India has performed. So for India, it is 0.633, whereas for South Asia, it is 0.632. So, comparing with South Asia, it's not something giving us very impressive comparisons. Firstly, it's not a very good reference. And secondly, we have only this much incremental increase as compared to the South Asia's average. So, this is very, I would say, a very little progress as compared to the country which is as ambitious as India. Now, the second one they are saying, and they are telling us about the performance of gender inequality index. Now, let's look into the calculation of gender inequality index also first, and then we'll see how India has performed in gender inequality index. So, if you look at the gender inequality index, there are again three dimensions of gender inequality index. One is health, and basically it focuses on female health only. Then, empowerment. And third, they focus on labor market. Now for health, they have indicators like maternal mortality ratio, MMR, and adolescent birth rate. For empowerment, they have indicators like population of male and female having at least secondary education. Another indicator is again population of male or female having representation in parliamentary seats. Means they will look into the representation in parliamentary seats of both male and female. Then labor market, they will look into the labor force participation of male and labor force participation of females. Then on the basis of health, we have MMR and adolescent birth rate, and for female, we have population of female having at least secondary education and population of female having representation in parliamentary seats and labor force participation of female. With respect to male, we have things like population of male having at least secondary education, population of male which is represented in parliamentary seat or representation of male in parliamentary seat or in parliament, and labor force participation of male. So for labor force participation of male, from that we'll get male labor index. From this we'll get female labor index. From this we get health index. From population of male having at least secondary education and population of male or representation of male in parliamentary seats, we get male empowerment index. Similarly, from population of female having at least secondary education and population of female in parliamentary seat or representation of female in parliamentary seats, we get female empowerment index. Now combining health index, female empowerment index, and female labor index, we get gender female index. And similarly, from male empowerment index and male labor index, we get gender male index. And from these two, we get something called gender inequality index. So this is how gender inequality index is calculated. Now this is important because this calculation or the kind of indicators they have can be asked in the prelims examination. And gender inequality index is somewhere means it ranges between 0 and 1. The more closer it is to 0 means there is equality in genders, whereas the more closer it is to 1 means there is inequality in gender. And if it is 0 means there is perfect equality. If it is 1 means there is perfect inequality. Now after looking into the construction of gender inequality index, how it is calculated and extracted in various dimensions and various indicators, let's look into the performance of India in gender inequality index. Now with respect to gender inequality index, the survey notes the gender inequality index for India in 2021 was 0.490. Whereas if you look at the world average, it is 0.465. So we are very close to world average. Whereas for South Asia, it is 0.508. So here also we have performed well then South Asian region. Now another thing they note is that India has also performed well in multidimensional poverty index in recent time. Now this is something which is interesting because if you see India's performance in MPI multidimensional poverty index for the last 5 years, India has shown impressive results. And these results are not on account of some official Indian government data. Rather, it is on account of UNDP reports. So UNDP every year comes with something called Human Development Report, in which all these indices, Human Development Index, MPI multidimensional poverty index, gender inequality index, and many other indices are given for each country, for world, for different regions. And these data show that India has been performing very well when we see performance of India from multidimensional poverty index. So let's see first how multidimensional poverty index is calculated. Means we'll just have a brief of that, and then we'll see India's performance. So this is UNDP's global multidimensional poverty index. But before that, let's see how it is calculated. So again, there are 3 dimensions of multidimensional poverty. These are health, education, and living standard. Now, the interesting thing here is that unlike HDI, multidimensional poverty index has no income component. So it is fully qualitative in nature, fully looking at the quality of life of the people. So health is something which is measured by nutrition and child mortality. On the basis of that, we get health dimension, the years of schooling, then school attendance, which are in education. The living standard is something which is being calculated through cooking fuel, sanitation facilities in that particular household, drinking water facilities, electricity connection, housing, and various kinds of assets. So on that basis, we get something called multidimensional poverty index. The value of the multidimensional poverty index is also between 0 and 1. And how it is categorized, you'll see it's from 0 to 0.2, 0.2 to 0.33, 0.33 to 0.5, and more than 0.5. So any country which is falling between 0.2 to 0.33 can be seen as vulnerable to multidimensional poverty. Means they can fall into multidimensional poverty soon. Countries having value between 0.33 to 0.5, value of multidimensional poverty index. So value in this index, any country having value between 0.33 to 0.5 means country is suffering from multidimensional poverty. Whereas countries having value more than 0.5 means they are suffering from extreme multidimensional poverty, extreme levels of multidimensional poverty. Whereas countries having value between 0 to 0.2 are not suffering from multidimensional poverty, either vulnerable or suffering or extreme. No kind of multidimensional poverty is prevalent in these countries which are having value between 0 to 0.2. So multidimensional poverty index has value between 0 to 1. And we have seen how it is categorized countries, whether they are suffering or vulnerable or suffering from extreme levels of multidimensional poverty. So what conclusion we get is if it is 0 means it is better. If it is moving closer to 1, the number of multidimensional poverty index is moving closer to 1 means it is becoming worse. Now let's look into the performance of India in multidimensional poverty index. We have already seen how it is calculated. Let's look into the performance. So multidimensional poverty index denotes measures multidimensionally poor people both in percentage and absolute numbers. MPI both in percentage and absolute number is declining for India. Now if you look at the percentage of people in multidimensional poverty, this is something which is having a source of UNDP reports. So on the basis of UNDP report, these numbers are calculated and then put into economic survey. So percentage of people in multidimensional poverty in India from 2005, 6, 2015, 16 and from 2019, 2021, you'll see they are consistently coming down. 55.1% in 2005, 2006. 2015, 2016, it came to almost half, 27.7. And then in 2019, 21, it is 16.4%. So 16.4% of people in India are suffering from multidimensional poverty as of today. It's still huge as compared to the population of India. But compared to the 2005, 6, which was around 60%, it's impressive performance. Now, number of multidimensionally poor people in crores. In 2005, 6, it was 65 crores. 2015, 16, 37 crores. 2019, 21, it is 23 crores. So in absolute terms also, we are coming down. Though in absolute terms, as a population, we are increasing. But multidimensional poor are coming down in absolute terms. So it is more qualitative in nature. That in absolute terms also, we are coming down when we see poverty in India from multidimensional perspective. So as per the 2022 report, 16.4% of the population are multidimensionally poor in India. 16.4. But if you look at the absolute numbers, it's still more than 200 million. So still we have a long way to go to eradicate multidimensional poverty. Additionally, 18.7% are vulnerable to multidimensional poverty. Now let's look at the various indicators within multidimensional poverty index. On various indicators or various forms of deprivation, how we are performing in those deprivations. So let's look into these deprivations. So there are 10 deprivations. Deprivation of nutrition, child mortality, years of schooling, school attendance, cooking fuel, sanitation, drinking water, electricity, housing, and income assets. You will see, as compared to 2016, 2019, 2020 data shows that in all of these deprivations, we have performed better because in absolute terms, number of poor people suffering from these deprivations have decreased between these two time periods. So in terms of nutrition, from 21.1% in 2016, they have decreased to 11.8% in 2019, 21. And you can see this decrease is seen across the deprivations. Conclusion is, our performance in multidimensional poverty index is impressive across the board. Comprehensively, we are performing very better in multidimensional poverty index. And this is something which we are asking this time because this is something which at first look is very hard to digest. But when we start looking at the numbers, it's something which we have to accept. Now let's look into another topic, which is transformation of aspirational district program. Now this is also something which is related to the improvement of the quality of life of people. But improvement of the quality of life of people in the most backward districts of the country. So in 2018, this program, aspirational district program, was launched by the Prime Minister of India. And through this program, they wanted to identify the most backward districts and then going for some kind of interventions in these backward districts. So for example, 117 most backward districts have been identified as of today under this aspirational district program. And then under various social sectors. So for example, health, and nutrition, education, financial inclusion and skill development, agriculture and irrigation, and basic infrastructure. Under these 5 categories, various interventions have been made by the central, state, and the local government so as to improve the quality of the life of the people in these areas. And if you look at the principles which are guiding this particular program, the principles are convergence, collaboration, and competition. Convergence means convergence of various schemes, whether it's at the center or the state. These schemes will be converged and then will be implemented in these districts. Collaboration of people and officials from both center and state, and then competition among the districts. So various rankings on various indicators is released on real-time basis by the NITI Aayog. So there is a sense of competition amongst the district, and each of the districts or district officials are working hard to improve the rankings of the district by honestly implementing programs related to these sectors. And if you look at the performance of these districts, in fact, these districts are performing in some of the indicators better than their states. So let's look into the slides. Let's see what the kind of information is given. So it is something which was launched in 2018 to raise the living standards of the citizens and ensure inclusive growth in the most backward districts of the country. The broad contours of the programs, or you can say principles of the program, are convergence of various schemes, both at the center and the states, collaboration of different people who are involved in implementation of these schemes. For example, central officers, state officers, and district level officers, and along with private sector and public. Then competition between districts and amongst districts. Achievement is the living standards of all districts under the aspirational district program have improved. So as compared to the previous performance, living standards have improved. In fact, in some of the districts that I was alluding to earlier, in 10 indicators of health, aspirational districts, 73 aspirational districts have performed better than their state average. In terms of financial inclusion, all the aspirational districts are performing better than their state average. So people in these aspirational districts, as a percentage of the total population, have more access to banking account as compared to the state average. Improvement is seen across indicators: health, nutrition, education, financial inclusion, basic infrastructure. In fact, this program is so successful that now it is acting as a template for good governance. And government is designing many other programs. So, for example, Mission Utkarsh, where central ministries will be identifying 10 to 15 districts which are not performing very well, and then applying the same kind of principle, convergence, collaboration, and competition to improve their performance. Also, there is something called aspirational block program, where central government is now planning and incentivizing states to identify some of the most backward blocks, and then apply the same kind of principles, same kind of methodology of aspirational district programs to improve the quality of life of the people in these 500 blocks. So it is also acting as a template of good governance. So this was something which was with this particular aspirational district program, it's been adequately covered in the economic survey this time. Now let's look into the other topic which is being covered in this chapter, and that is Aadhaar. Unique ID, UID. Aadhaar, we know, is a project which gives us something called 12-digit unique ID on the basis of our demographic information and biometric information. So let's look into what is present in the economic survey with respect to this project Aadhaar. It says it provides digital identity to the citizens of India and ensures authentication, an essential tool for social delivery by the state. Now, how it is acting as an essential tool? By reducing leakages, by reducing corruption, by efficiently targeting people in various kinds of social sector schemes, and thereby improving the quality of life of people, because whatever is due to them is directly reaching to their doorsteps directly through bank accounts. So there is no leakages in their welfare benefits. Key usages, if you look at for Aadhaar, usage in DBT type benefit transfers, Aadhaar enabled payment system. So they have also catalyzed the payment system. General Aadhaar and mobile trinity is being used excessively and impressively by the government for direct benefit transfer only. Then One Nation One Ration card scheme again have Aadhaar secret accounts. PM Kisan Samman Nidhi again directly reaching the bank account of the people. PM Kisan Samman Nidhi is providing 6,000 rupees to identify farmer's family in this 3 installments for rupees 2,000 each in a year. So this is also something which is identifying these people through Aadhaar database. And then COVID face authentication during COVID times, yes, we saw that there was something called COVID intelligence network, which was giving us various slots of when we have to go for first dose, second dose. So all that was seeded with Aadhaar number only, and that's why it was efficiently working and keeping a note of all kinds of people who have been vaccinated or not. So this is something which is being covered in the economic survey with respect to Aadhaar, and how Aadhaar has revolutionized various sectors within the country. Now, after looking into this, after looking into the aspirational district program and Aadhaar, now let's look into the another topic which is being adequately emphasized, and in fact more than emphasized, I would say, within this economic survey, and that is the topic of employment. So within this topic, you'll see what are the various employment ratios within a country and how we are performing, whether we are performing well or not in the employment sector. Now, before getting into this topic, let's have a basic clear. Now, suppose this is a population. Now, within this population, we have many people who are either not willing to work or not seeking work because of many reasons. So, for example, there may be students, there may be housewives, or sometimes households. There may be old age people, or people because of disability, they can't do any sort of work. Or they can be people who are otherwise educated, but they have a comfortable life and did not find any need to work. So, not seeking or willing to work. So, all those kinds of categories, apart from many other categories, we can categorize them into something called non-workers. So, they are not working and neither they are seeking any sort of work. Now, there are some people who are either willing to work or seeking work. And if these two categories combined, if they are also willing to work and actively seeking work, then we can say they are something which are called or fall into labor force. So, all those people who are willing to work and actively seeking work will be called labor force of that particular population. So, this is total population. In that population, this is labor force and this is non-workers. Now, out of this labor force, those people who are willing to work and actively seeking work, some people may have got some work, so they are workers or workforce. So, out of the total labor force, the proportion of people who have actually got work will be called workforce, whereas the pool of people who are willing to work and actively seeking work, means that is the labor force willing to work and actively seeking work, but have not got any kind of work, are still waiting. They will unemployed people. So they are unemployed people. So these people who are not willing or seeking to work, they are not within the category of unemployed. Then you have to find out unemployed people, unemployment rate. You will keep labor force as a base. So if you have to calculate unemployment rate will be unemployed people as a percentage of labor force and not as a percentage of total population. Okay, so we have got the concept of labor force, we have got the concept of workforce, and we have got the concept of unemployment rate. So there are various kinds of unemployment that we are not going to discuss here. Now, apart from this, if you have to calculate unemployment rate or get a picture of employment of a particular country, we know we have to see labor market. And labor market, we can see from two dimensions of labor demand, and then from labor supply. So for coming to the conclusion in economics, we always look into the demand and supply. For any market, we look into the demand and supply. Because we are looking into the labor market, we have to look into the labor demand and labor supply. Now, labor supply will come from household people like me and you. We will go and do work and present us that okay, we can provide our labor, and in lieu of labor, we will take some wages or income. Whereas labor demand is from factories or companies. Now, for getting the picture of labor demand and labor supply, in India, government is doing this kind of service. So there is a whole history of this kind of service, but we will discuss only what is happening right now. So, for example, labor supply. Labor supply is seen from service called periodic labor force survey. These periodic labor force surveys are done on quarterly and yearly basis. Yearly they are done for rural areas, and quarterly they are done for urban areas. For urban areas, annual figures are calculated by averaging these quarterly figures. Whereas labor demand picture we get from various surveys which are done by Labour Bureau and Ministry of Statistics and Programming Implementation. So this periodic labor force survey is also done by Ministry of Statistics and Programming Implementation, whereas Ministry of Statistics and Programming Implementation also presents labor demand picture by surveying various kind of firms and establishment, means how much demand do you ask these firms and establishment, how much demand of labor you have for this particular year. And that survey, which is done by the most people into the demand picture of labor, is called annual survey of industries. Whereas another survey is done by Labour Bureau, which is called AKEES, All India Quarterly Establishment Based Employment Survey. This All India Quarterly Establishment Based Employment Survey, you can easily get that it is done quarterly, frequency is quarterly, and this is done in two ways. Firstly, quarterly employment survey, and second is called area frame establishment survey. Quarterly employment survey is done for formal sector, where the job picture or employment picture of 9 non-farm sectors is seen. 9 non-farm sectors. Now I'm telling all these things with a purpose, because all of this information you'll find helpful when you see and read different data that is being presented within this economic survey, within these slides. Whereas area frame establishment survey is done for unorganized or informal sector, unorganized and informal sector. Okay, so we have got something called labor force. We have seen how labor force is different from non-workers. We have seen how we calculate workforce from the labor force, unemployment rate from the labor force. We have seen that if you have to get a proper picture of the labor market, we have to look into the labor demand, we have to look into the labor supply, and how government of India gets a proper picture and disseminates this kind of information regarding proper picture of the labor market through this kind of service. From the labor supply side, which are household service, they will go for periodic labor force survey. Periodic labor force survey is done both for rural areas and urban areas, annually in rural areas and quarterly in urban areas. Whereas labor demand picture, basically, we'll have two major surveys. One is done by Labour Bureau, which is called as All India Quarterly Establishment Based Employment Survey, AKEES in short, which is further divided into quarterly employment survey for non-farm 9 major sectors. So, organized, non-farm 9 major sectors, they will look at the labor demand there. And area frame establishment survey, which is for unorganized or informal sectors. Okay, this picture is clear. Now, if they are going for surveys, especially from the labor supply side and surveys like periodic labor force survey, okay, they definitely will ask some question. They will ask whether you are employed or unemployed, and they will also take some reference period. So if you are employed or unemployed, then for how much time you were employed or unemployed. So these kind of questions are being asked. So how these questions are designed and what kind of methodology should be used in these surveys, this was something which was given by Dantawala committee. And they said that these kind of information should be presented broadly in 3 forms. Firstly, UPS, second is CWS, and third is CDS. UPS is usual principal status, CWS is current weekly status, and CDS is current daily status. So we were saying that we have to calculate workforce or unemployed people from the labor force. But how these decisions are practically implemented or taken in the ground means whether a person should be categorized as in the labor force or out of the labor force, or if he's within the labor force, then whether he or she is employed or unemployed. So how these decisions are being implemented at the ground level, this is done through these kind of approaches. So in UPS approach, the reference period is 365 days. Surveyor will ask the respondent that in the last 365 days, or you can say in the last 1 year, for how many months you were willing and actively seeking for work. And if the respondent reply that for the last 1 year, or in the last 1 year, I was actively seeking and willing to work for 8 months, which is actually more than 6 months, which is more than half of the year. So if for more than half of the year, that particular respondent was willing and actively seeking for work, and actually if he says 8 months, then he will be categorized as in labor force. So you can say that person is in labor force, because for more than half of the year, he was willing and actively seeking work. Then they'll ask the next question, that in the last 1 year, for how many months you actually got the work? And he says, in the last 1 year, for 7 months actually, I got the work. So for 8 months, I was actually willing and seeking to work. Whereas for 7 months, I got the work. So for more than half of a year, more than 6 months, he was working. So he will be categorized in workforce now. Okay, so according to usual principal status approach, if for more than 6 months, you are actually willing and actively seeking work, you will be categorized as a part of the labor force. And if you are willing and actively seeking for work for more than half of the year, and you also get work for more than half of the year, you will be categorized as a part of workforce. Whereas within usual principal status, we also make other category which is called usual status, principal status, willing and actively seeking work for more than 6 months, either you are part of the labor force, but you got work just for 2 months, for less than 6 months, then you will be categorized as worker and employed as per subsidiary status and not as per principal status. Okay, as principal status, you have to be employed for more than 6 months, but as per subsidiary status, you have to be employed for less than 6 months. So let's say example of 2 months. So he says, for the last more than 6 months, I was willing and actively seeking work, but I got the job only for 2 months. Then you are employed, but not as per principal status, but as per subsidiary status. So many times when government release data regarding employment picture, they will release data on the basis of the combination of principal status and subsidiary status. So they will write as usual status, principal status plus subsidiary status. Okay, and in this, the reference period is 65 days. They've already seen in both usual status, principal status, and subsidiary status, we have 365 days as reference period. The difference is that if you are getting a job for less than 6 months, you will be categorized as employed under subsidiary status. If you are getting a job for more than 6 months, you will be categorized as employed under principal status. If you combine both of these, you will get information regarding usual status, both principal status and subsidiary status. Most of the time, information is like this: usual status, principal status, plus subsidiary status, and in this kind of notation, US, PS plus SS. Okay, now there is something called current PG status. CWS. In current PG status, the question is like, for the last 1 week, were you employed for at least 1 hour in any day? If you say yes, he is considered as employed. Whereas in current PG status, they will take information of each day of the last week, and then we come to the conclusion whether the person is employed or not, part of the labor force or not. Okay. So these are 3 broad approaches, and within usual status we have principal status and subsidiary status also. These are 3 broad approaches which are used by surveyors to identify whether a particular person is a part of labor force, and if he's part of labor force, then whether he's part of workforce also or not. Now with this background in mind, now let's look into the kind of observations survey has made with respect to the employment sector. Firstly, they say broad-based employment has improved in India and can be observed in data covering both the supply side and demand side of the labor market. So they will present us and we will also present you with the data of both the supply and demand side of the labor market. But what they are saying, on the basis of the data from both the supply and demand side, employment situation in India has improved. Unemployment rates have fallen from 5.8% in 2019 to 4.2% in 2020 and 2021 as per usual status, principal status, and subsidiary status. So this data is as per this status. Then they are saying there is a rise in rural female labor force participation rate from 19.7% in 2019 to 27.7% in 2021. This is something which is showing us that gender dimension within labor market has improved. Now, what is this female labor force participation rate? Now, you can recall in the last slide I told you something like there are non-workers, and there are this labor force. Now, this labor force as a percentage of population, total population, this labor force as a percentage of total population delivers something called labor force participation rate. And if we calculate labor force participation rate for only males, we get MLFPR, male labor force participation rate, and for female, we get female labor force participation rate, FLFPR. Okay, and we can also divide them on the basis of rural or urban, either male or female. Okay, so that is the labor force participation rate. So what they are saying, there is a rise in the rural female labor force participation rate from 19.7% in 2019 to 27.7% in 2021. Also, they are saying we have recovered from the COVID impacts in the labor market. So recovery of the labor market beyond pre-COVID levels, both in rural and urban areas, both of them have recovered from the impact of COVID. Okay, now let's look into some data. Now, if you look at the data, looking at the employment trends as per the usual status, and within usual status, we are looking at principal status plus subsidiary status for person of all ages. I hope now you can make sense of this notation: usual status, principal status plus subsidiary status. They have given us data for rural, urban, and rural plus urban, and it is based on annual periodic labor force survey. So for rural, we have annual survey. For urban, for annual figure, we'll just average out the quarterly figures. Okay, and this is information from 2018 to 2021, and periodic labor force survey is statistics and programming implementation. That is what the source is. Fine. So let's look into rural, urban, and rural and urban, male, female, and total person. We'll look into the labor force participation rate, worker population ratio, and unemployment rate. We got the concept of labor force participation rate and unemployment rate. What is worker population ratio? Worker population ratio is nothing but workers divided by population. So that is the worker population ratio. Now see how the trends are. Now in 2020-21, in rural area, labor force participation rate was 57.1. In 2019-20 it was 56.3. In 2018-19 it was 55.1. So in rural area, labor force participation rate has consistently increased in the last 3 years. The data we have for the last 3 years, so in the last 3 years, it has consistently increased. Work participation rate or worker population ratio in 2019, 2020 and 2021 was also increased. Unemployment rate has consistently decreased in the last 3 years. Now this data is according to male. Similarly, if you see female, so labor force participation rate has consistently increased in rural area. Worker population ratio has consistently increased in rural areas. Unemployment rate has consistently decreased. So definitely for both male and female, these indicators have improved. So overall also they will improve only. And unemployment rate you see has consistently fallen in rural area in the last 3 years. Now for urban, you can go for a similar kind of trend analysis. But most important for us is to look into this rural and urban, that is all India picture. Now, if you look at from the all India perspective, that too, the total percent means how overall in India unemployment rate is behaving, how overall India labor force participation rate is behaving, how overall India work population ratio is behaving. So if you look at overall all India picture, so labor force participation rate has increased consistently in the last 3 years. Means whatever data we have for the last 3 years, so definitely we can make conclusion of last 3 years only. For 18, 19, 20, 20, 21. Worker population ratio has consistently increased and unemployment rate has consistently decreased. That's why they are making observation that we have improved situation in the labor market in the last 3 survey data. Okay, now let's look into the other things with respect to the employment situation only. And that is telling us about the broad status of employment. So there are 3 broad status of employment, and that is self-employed category, regular wage salary, and casual labor. So these are the 3 broad status. And what they are saying, the share of self-employed increase and that of regular wage salary worker decline in 2021 vis-a-vis 2019-20. And this is driven by trend in both rural and urban area. In both rural and urban area, you see that people who are involved are actively categorizing them whenever surveyor is coming to their doorsteps. So they are telling that we are self-employed. Atmanirbharta is increasing in India. Whereas people who are involved in wage or salary workers are decreasing, self-employed is increasing. Net additions to each EPFO payroll is strictly moving up. So one way of reading EPFO is Employment Provident Fund Organization, means organization is responsible for collecting the provident fund of various employees, especially non-government employees. Now, if you see, there are two ways to read this particular point. One way is that because EPFO payroll is strictly moving up, that means employment is increasing, employment picture is improving in case of India. Now, another and more, I would say, negative way of reading it is that employment is not increasing, but only people who were working in informal sector previously, are now getting formalized because of various kind of benefits that have been provided by the government for the formal sector. So it's just a transition of people who were earlier involved in informal sector, working in informal sector, to the formal sector. Okay, so employment as a whole is not improving, it's just formalization is taking place, and that's why there's more registration in EPFO office, and that's why we can say that EPFO payroll is moving up, and thereby we are bringing this kind of misleading conclusion that employment is increasing. Employment is not increasing, rather we are just transitioning from informal economy to formal economy. This can be another kind of conclusion. So one kind of conclusion is simply looking from that perspective, employment is increasing. Second is a transition from informal sector to formal sector. But even if this is a transition from informal sector to formal sector, then also it is a win-win situation. It's a win-win situation. How? Because these people who will be now registered under EPFO will be the beneficiary of social security. They will be registered. Government has the data. And also, they will also get some sort of social security after retirement. So definitely they are coming under social security net. So in this way also, this is a win-win situation. So whether you agree that employment is increasing or not, or whether you just say that it's just a transition from the informal to formal economy, both of these, or either of these, can be a big achievement for the country. Now in first point, they were referring to something called broad status employment. I told you, broad status employment in India is either for self-employed or regular or casual labor. Let's look at the data. What the data shows. Now they have given us the data of trends in broad employment status. Persons means both male and female, both rural and urban. So all the picture is presented here. Now on this all in the picture, as per the broad employment status, you'll see that most of the people in India categorize themselves as self-employed, followed by the people who are categorizing themselves as casual labor, and then followed by the people who are saying that we are regular or salary workers, we are getting some kind of wage or some kind of salary or as our income. Now you see that self-employed people in India are increasing. People who are casual labor is decreasing. Whereas people who are regular wage or salary workers have decreased as compared to last year, but there is no consistent trend. But you can argue that because casual labor is decreasing consistently since last 4 years, people who are casual labor is decreasing. Whereas people who are regular wage or salary workers have decreased as compared to last year, but there is no consistent trend. But you can argue that because casual labor is decreasing consistently since last 4 years, so you can say that casualization of labor force is decreasing in India. Whereas people in self-employed category is increasing in case of India. These two conclusions can be safely made from this figure. Now let's look into the measurement issues in female labor force participation. Now this is very interesting and has been covered in one of the boxes of the economic survey. Now the point they are making here is that female labor force participation rate in India is underestimated. And what are the reasons they are presenting? They are saying that whenever any survey goes for survey, especially in rural areas, and ask people whether you're self-employed or regular salary workers or casual labor, they ask only one question. And most of the time, females reply by telling that firstly they are housewife, they are involved in domestic work, and then they reply that they are also involved in collecting of firewood or fuel wood, involved in agriculture, and other sorts of activity which can be categorized under self-employed. But the economic survey tells us that these surveys do not ask second question. They just ask first question, that what kind of work you are involved. And if females say that they are involved in domestic work, they don't categorize them as self-employed, which actually they are. Rather, they categorize them as out of labor force. Out of labor force. So in a way, we are underestimating labor force participation, especially female labor force participation rate in India. The economic survey notes that because females in India are having a double burden. They are involved in activities which can also be categorized under self-employed, but they are also involved in domestic work. But they report domestic work first, and that's why they do not fall within the labor force officially. So what the economic survey tells us that if we correct this anomaly, if we correct this kind of discrepancy, then we can have a higher female labor force participation rate in India, and that higher female labor force participation rate in India is something called, economic survey is giving that name to that labor force participation rate as AFLFPR. That is augmented female labor force participation rate. Okay, so this is something we'll see here. So what they are saying that the common narrative of Indian women's low female labor force participation rate misses the reality of working females integral to the economy of the household and the country. So working females have double work, they have to work in household and they also have to work outside, especially in rural area. Most of the activities which females work can be categorized as self-employed, but they are not categorized so because of the kind and nature of survey and the way these surveys are being done, the way the surveyor asks question from the female respondent. Then three main measurement issues have been highlighted in the economic survey. First is overly broad categories. Now we have very broad categories of self-employed, casual laborers, or working on wages or salaries. This can be disaggregated a bit. Second, reliance on a single question to categorize labor force status. So they only ask single question and they will not ask the second question. Thirdly, they are saying this narrow approach of limiting productive work labor force participation rate is something which should be done away with. But they are saying that equating labor force or labor force participation rate only from the kind of work which you have done, which has some productive value, or which is something which can be marketable, or having market value, or monetary value, market or monetary value, is something which should be done away because there are many kind of contribution, multiple kind of contribution which females, especially housewives, are making to the economy. If not directly, then indirectly. Males are able to participate in the labor force only because females are taking care of the household. So their contribution should also be somewhere reflected in the labor force participation rate or labor force. Now let's look into the augmented female labor force participation rate on the basis of these kind of arguments whatever we have made. So what is the level of augmented female labor force participation rate we will get for various years? So from 1999 till 2020-21, they have presented us with some kind of data for some of the years. And they said that in 2020-21, female labor force participation rate in India was 32.5, both rural and urban. See, both rural and urban. It was 32.5. Whereas if we involve the both domestic work and self-employed category of female workers also in the labor force, females who are doing both domestic work plus involved in some kind of self-employed category. Now in surveys, these people who are doing both kind of work are not being included in the labor force. for all these years, they have presented us with the figure. So what will be the actual female labor force participation rate and what can be the augmented female labor force participation rate. Okay, so that is the concept with respect to the augmented female labor force participation. Now, if you see, this whole discussion which we are having till now was from the supply side of the labor market. Now, the kind of discussions we will have now will from the demand side of the labor market. We will look into the status of the factories or firms which are generating jobs and how the services are being done there. Okay, so we have already seen demand side of employment, which is something which is being captured by quarterly employment survey. This was something which was already made clear when we discussed the basis of the labor market. And I told you there is something called All India Quarterly Establishment Based Employment Survey, which has two parts: quarterly employment survey and area frame establishment survey. This is for non-organized sector, and this is for formal sector, especially 9 major non-farm sectors, which are of course organized sector. Okay, formal sector or organized sector, but non-farm. So agriculture is not included here. Okay, agriculture is not included here. So quarterly employment survey already discussed. That is like overview. It was establishment there for more workers, that is organized sector, in 9 major sectors: manufacturing, construction, trade, transport, education, health, accommodation, restaurant, IT, BPO, and financial services. Now, if you look at this figure, the left side tells us about the estimated number of workers according to QES, quarterly employment survey, in the financial year 2022. So for various quarters, they have given us estimated number of workers, and you see that for various quarters, the number of workers is increasing consistently. Quarterly figures are not that important from examination perspective. Now, then they in the right side give us sectoral share of total employment, and that too according to QES. Again, they are giving us the data of quarter 4 of financial year 2022. Now, this quarter 4 data will be something which will be very similar to the annual data also. So sectoral shares of total employment do not change that easily. So they remain almost same at least for a year, even if the data is from quarter. So for example, they are telling us that it is manufacturing in which most of the people are involved in quarter 4. So in quarter 4, 318 lakhs of workers were involved in these 9 major sectors. And out of 318 lakhs, most of them are involved in manufacturing. Now that is the only key takeaway from this. You don't have to go into many details. Just make a note that in the 9 major non-farm sector which are assessed according to quarterly employment survey, manufacturing generates the largest number of jobs. Okay, that is important. Now let's look into another survey which again giving us a picture of demand side of employment, and that is the annual survey of industries. It is also conducted by MOSPI and covers organized manufacturing data from the factories registered under the Factories Act 1948. So all those enterprises which are registered under the Factories Act 1948 will be surveyed by the annual survey of industries. Now this survey tells us a very important observation. In fact, this observation was presented in many surveys, many previous surveys or many previous annual survey of industries, and it tells us that a skewed distribution of a large number of factories with low employment size and a few factories with higher employment size. Now let's read this statement again. It tells us there is a skewed distribution of a large number of factories with low employment sizes and a few factories with higher employment sizes. What it essentially means is that there are a large number of factories in India. So if there are total 100 factories in India, then out of 100, there are a large number of factories, or most of the factories in India, are employing very few people. Very few people. So there are a large number of factories out of the total factories which are employing very few people. And then there are a small number of factories, or very few factories, small number of factories, which are employing large number of people. Number of people or workers. The idea is that there are large number of factories which are not generating much jobs. Most of the jobs in India are generated in very few factories. We are talking about organized sector. So that's telling us most of the jobs in India are generated in very few factories. Whereas there are many factories in India which are not generating many jobs, but they are there. So one of the key takeaway can be that because there are large number of factories in India which are not able to generate many jobs, so one of the reasons